A monstrous bear with razor claws lunged at a man and the poor guy shrieked, begging him not to come closer, to stay right where he was while the main character watched it all unfold from a safe distance. Kusaka tells himself that up until this moment, he was just a regular guy and now he has to help the man. The escape route is done, he won't get another chance. The bear is completely occupied, so it has no idea he's here. And the worst part? Kusaka can't stop calling himself terrible because deep down, he knows he's the one who needs saving too. The main character always stared up at firefighters like real-life legends because they saved people like heroes, and he dreamed of becoming one too. Vase, even if he'd already thrown that dream away. Kusaka snapped back to his senses and immediately started peppering people with questions about this place because after crushing overtime, he was already stuck on the last train heading home. A pop-up window slammed into view, announcing he'd been summoned to another world, and right there, it offered him 3 wild choices for who he could become. The main character stared at that question like it was totally weird. Maybe someone was messing with him or he'd fallen asleep. Then he started scratching his chin because the nerves were hitting hard. He doesn't even believe he can survive some legendary destiny, and he knows he's no sage, not even close. If he pledges himself to the Demon Lord, he'll earn the hatred of everyone around him, and yeah, it screams death flag from the start. The protagonist felt sick about that ending, so he backed off fast and decided he shouldn't pick either option. Kusaka's nerves started screaming as the system flashed his choice, the hidden option to choose nothing, and if he actually picks it, the hidden option will unlock extraordinary abilities. His transfer to another world kicked off with Mariamana Acha, and right after that, Kusaka Kobe was blessed by spirits and gods while Ishi was completely lost, not understanding a thing as they dragged us along to wait a little for Mariamana. After what felt like forever, he cracked his eyes open. Sky blue and green leaves everywhere. He slapped a hand over his face because the sun was so brutally bright it burned his eyes. Still frozen in place, the main character finally snapped into focus, figuring out what was happening and how he got stuck there. He spun his head, brushed the leaves with his own hands, and felt his stomach drop. There was no way this was a dream. Then he stared ahead and saw birds cutting through the sky, real as anything, and his eyes narrowed until he couldn't hold it in anymore. Tell me, is this really another world? He shoved his hand into his jacket pockets and started patting around for his smartphone, wallet, handkerchief, and napkins, only to find the pockets empty besides that. So what was he even supposed to do in this forest now? Right in front of him, another info window snapped into view, blasting his full status at him. Name, age, gender, race, level, and every single skill. He was stunned and blurted, "So what's my status?" Because in his mind, no matter how you slice it, it all circles back to mana, and right now that mana number reads 1000. Kusaka felt it was way too much like a game, and that twist made his curiosity burn even hotter. The main character mulled over just how much his skills were carrying him, then made up his mind. He checked every single one. To activate full power and install skill faster, it gives him the freedom to use his skills. He agreed without hesitation. A jolt of electricity slammed through him, and he couldn't even process what just happened. The system chimed in that the installation was done, then thanked him for sticking around. Kusaka suddenly feels something flooding into his head, and right then he can't wait to test that item box. He smashed his hand onto the target he picked, only for it to turn out to be a tree, and then he snapped into choosing the next storage spot. The tree he'd first unleashed his power on slowly started to vanish. Then a glowing magical seal blinked into existence beneath it and vanished for good. A familiar information window popped up in front of him again. Item box, right there, and the list of available gear was waiting. Except now there was a single cypress tree sitting in it, and he couldn't help thinking, that's insanely convenient. Next, the dismantling of Hadiha begins like this. Guy can chew on demon corpses for food or rip them apart for materials. He tore that tree apart piece by piece and somehow walked away with 5 cypress logs. Next, it's all about the power to create, so he started asking himself, do I really have a talent that could be this exciting? With this, he can turn 1 cypress log into 5 cypress sticks, and honestly, it blew my mind. Then the main character gritted his teeth. Time to finally use that creation skill, and yanked the items out of the box he just received. In his hand, a cypress stick sat like a weapon, one that the system instantly unpacked with every secret it held. Kusaka figured it was just a stick until it turned out to be something incredible. That sharp system beep hit, and the message flashed your crafting skill had jumped to rank 2 because the new recipes you brewed had piled up experience points. He realized that every time he added an ingredient from a specific recipe, the game would hand him experience points and boost his rank right along with it. Like the system was doing him a favor. Then it hit him he could switch modes, and just like that, the info window vanished, snapping him into full understanding. He's staring at every move his head can make, so he has to stay razor careful meanwhile. A bunch of information windows are already floating in front of him. Kusaka wrestled with the idea for a second, then made up his mind he'd forge an axe, and just like that, a brand new weapon landed in his hands. He grinned, surprised he even had the appraisal skill. And then he told himself he had to test the axe because he'd never used a weapon a day in his life. So he decided to test his brand new skill, Exterity. And with one hard swing, he slammed his axe into a nearby stone boulder, unleashing a punch that hit like thunder. The boulder split clean in half like it was paper, and the protagonist just stood there in shock because he'd shattered it with nothing but a wooden axe. He's got tons of skills he still needs to master, and if he can, he's going to soak up everything this world has to offer. He pushed to level up his creation skill as high as it could go, and with the day still blindingly bright, the protagonist rubbed his forehead, staring into the grind like it was staring back. After a while, he cleared every tree standing close to him, and with that grind, he shot his creation skill up to rank 5. He figured out 3 key rules while crafting items. New recipes earn him experience points, and once that bar maxes out, he jumps to the next rank. But if he makes something he already added, it won't give him a single EXP. After crafting 8 items, he finally clocked the twist, each one hit with a different power. Like the cypress chair carrying a scary weakness skill, and the protagonist couldn't shake it. How on earth can a chair be that dangerous? Kusaka thought this was great, and he pushed to find a settlement before sunset. He refused to spend the night on the street, and then he tore through the forest. After a while, he finally admitted, "I've been on my feet forever, and I'm still not tired." Then he blinked, confused and excited at the same time. Could it really be the transmission skill that's ranked 99? Thanks to his transmission skill, all 5 senses sharpened to razor edges. Especially his hearing and sight right then. He caught a scream tearing through the air. The moment the shouting hit his ears, he bolted straight for the noise, mind racing with one question: who was yelling and why he had to get there fast. When he finally reached the source of the noise, he spotted a cart nearby and a man crouched on the ground beside it, trying to slip away from an armored bear that had attacked him and was practically begging for a fight. That's a deadly bear, don't even think about fighting it, and it doesn't look like it knows how to attack yet. Still, the man lunged in with a tiny dagger, hands trembling like crazy, but the bear hasn't clocked him. So if it's going to bolt, this is the moment. Kusaka stared at the thought of dying and tried to breathe through it, then asked himself if it was even okay to feel that way. Back then, he dreamed of becoming a fireman. Those guys working on the job hit him so hard with inspiration. He helped people without flinching at danger, wearing a stone-cold look, and he desperately wanted to be just like them. But what he's trying right now feels like the exact opposite. And the moment he realizes it, nerves start hammering in his chest. If he doesn't sprint right now, that person is going to die, no question. He has to act, period. And sure, Kusaka threw away his dream of becoming a hero, but he didn't lose his skills. He knew this was the moment. He lunged for the man's rescue, snatched the axe, and charged straight at the bear, screaming his rage at the top of his lungs. Kusaka flicked into action with pure agility and slashed the bear down, ending it with one deadly strike. Kusaka stared in shock at the main character's terrifying sight. Then the bear's head crashed down right near him. He realized he didn't want to be a hero. He just wanted to be the kind of person who could actually help. And right after that, he snapped, "Hey, are you okay?" The man slammed a hand to his chest and blurted that he was grateful to the main character for helping him. Chrome, the merchant right in front of you. Ku told the merchant, "My name's Ku." But inside his head, he swore to be straight with him. He just needed directions to where people lived so he wouldn't look suspicious. Kusaka cradled the bear's severed head in his hands, still gripping the axe, and with a wide grin he said, "See that I'm a carpenter." Nerves hit the man hard. He shook his head and said no, then blurted out that he honestly didn't even look like a carpenter. Then he leaned in and grilled the protagonist. Did he carve this wooden axe himself? And honestly, it's wild that he can drop an armored bear with one single blow. The man noticed Kusaka didn't get it, so he pressed, asking if the main character truly had no clue what he was talking about. That armored bear is a one-of-a-kind, and nightmare one night is all it takes to tear a small village apart. He's built like a tank, and even his armor feels untouchable. Most attacks bounce off him without leaving so much as a scratch. At that very moment, the main character replayed it in his head. He'd smacked him with nothing but a plain wooden axe. Then he blurted out like, "Wait, did I really just pull off something that insane?" He nodded without hesitation and said, "Still, the sun's about to drop and I've got to get back to the city fast, plus I've got my own mansion there, so if you want, you can stay with me." The protagonist asked if everything he owned was still in that cart, and Chrome snapped back that during the attack the mercenaries and their horses had bolted, then admitted he had no way to carry them back, and Kusaka immediately saw his chance to step in and help. He grinned at the man and told him to shove everything into his item box, and Chrome was left reeling at the offer. Then the man blurted out what he wanted to watch, asked if anything was wrong, and the main character grinned and shot back that everything was perfectly fine. Kusaka pressed his hand on the man's carriage and fired off his storage skill. Whoosh! It vanished in an instant. The man froze in shock, then snapped to the protagonist's name. Chrome demanded, "Where do you come from?" And the main character shot back, "Just an ordinary carpenter?" Then Chrome grinned and said, "So if you're ordinary, the whole world must be ruled by carpenters. Kusaka snapped his hands around and launched into his story. Yeah, he'd lived up in the mountains and trained there, so the guy picked up the wrong meaning. After some time, they finally kicked off their journey to the city of Annan. Then, when they made it back, the main character started digging up a mountain of new info. Turns out there are two kinds of skills, talent and intelligence talent, and brain power you're born with. No training can grow them, and here's the brutal rule. Every person is capped at just 3 skills. These folks have no idea what any of this means, especially what a level even is, and when they start slaughtering monsters, their growth and power jump way beyond what anyone expects. The main character's power is way beyond normal, so he starts doubting himself, asking if he's truly that strong, and then bam, an idea hits him. He snapped around to the man and asked, "So you can meet monsters like that armored bear? Why aren't you hiring people?" The merchant just shook his head and said it rarely ever happens. Chrome bragged that he hired adventurers, but the moment they spotted the armored bear, terror hit and they bolted without a second thought. The main character was fuming. He was convinced those men had ditched the client, and that whole situation felt like some ugly, soul-crushing nightmare. The man said he always hires top-rated adventurers, but this time they bolted the second. Things got tough. He'd take it up with the guild leader later. The protagonist couldn't believe the guild would let reckless people tag along with others until Chrome suddenly snapped his attention and told him they'd arrived in the city. Kusaka was grinning like he'd just struck gold, convinced he'd landed in a whole new world, and he couldn't stop wondering if elves or even half-humans lived here because his excitement was through the roof. Right then, they spotted a crowd by the gate guys leaning in, yelling that an armored bear was there and that they were getting wiped out in a desperate fight. One of the guys snapped that Chrome-san panicked, and the armored bear tore him down. Then the dark-haired man clenched his fist and said, "If only I'd had the strength to protect him." The protagonist rubbed his chin and realized the adventurers had bolted just to save themselves. Now they were playing dumb. Right then, one of the soldiers spotted Chrome and Sandro and shouted his name. The adventurers spotted the man and demanded, "Wait, are you really alive?" He nodded hard and said the main character had saved him. Then the adventurer clenched his jaw, thinking the man was just trying to sneak him into the city. Kusaka clocked the perfect moment, yanked the bear's head out, and declared, "I'm a carpenter, and I just crushed the armored bear." The entire crowd recoiled from him. One soldier even swore it didn't look like a lie at all, while the main character just let out a satisfied chuckle. Then the same soldier snapped around to the adventurers and said they'd reported the merchant was dead right away. He demanded what they meant, and the men froze before they could even answer. Chrome snapped that they wouldn't fight the armored bear, so they ditched it mid-battle and bolted for their lives. The soldier admitted he got why it felt like a lie, then snapped to the adventurers, "You left a man to die, and if you're planning to keep us in prison, you'll have to interrogate us first." At that exact moment, the dark-haired man ripped himself out of the soldier's grip, surged toward the merchant with his sword, and snapped that none of this was supposed to be happening to him because it was all his fault. The protagonist stared down the man, then snapped a chair into place to block the adventurer's swing, only for the adventurer to growl, "Move out of my way." Right then, Kusaka yanked the sword right out of the man's hands and smashed him with a chair. Right. The adventurer crumpled onto the floor, and the protagonist realized, so that's what this weakness effect really is. The men blared, "Nah, it's not bad." And the paper said he was B rank with serious sword skills too. Next thing you know, they hoisted the main character into the air and bragged non-stop about how awesome he was. Soon enough, Chrome and Kusaka were bouncing through the city streets in a carriage, and Kusaka just kept grinding his teeth. He'd been interrogated all night, and yeah, that was exactly what he got for tangling with one of the adventurers. It took a long time, but he finally made it. And now he can't stop worrying if the guild's going to be okay because one soldier just warned him. Things have been going terribly in there lately. Now Chrome's got Sand backing him up, and he finally gets to stay here in peace. When the man finishes thanking him, he orders him to rest for today. They were headed straight for his mansion, and suddenly the whole "where will we sleep tonight" problem vanished. Then the merchant shouted that they'd arrived, so the protagonist froze, stunned. Straight ahead loomed a giant mansion, and Kusaka immediately got it. This merchant was loaded. The moment they stepped inside, a swarm of servants flooded in to greet them. Chrome leaned in and asked, "Are you sure you don't want to come inside?" And the main character scratched his head like, "Wait, are you serious? Can I actually come in?" After a while, they rolled out a table packed with luxurious food. Then they ushered him to a guest room straight out of a high-end hotel. And once he collapsed onto the sofa, he couldn't shake the feeling he didn't want to return to his world. Even if he makes it back to Japan, he's stuck behind a desk and office job, that's it. And honestly, he's got zero regrets no love ever came. And to top it off, his parents are already gone. This world, wow, Ada, it's way better than where we were. Maybe we should actually travel around the world, but for now, we've got to find somewhere to crash tomorrow. Next morning, he burst into loud cries and demanded Chrome, "Are you sure I can really stay on my land for a whole month?" Chrome shot back that it was thanks for saving his life. The man shrugged that living in the mountains is brutal, then leaned in and asked if he truly didn't want to take a vacation in this city since it was his company's property. They promised top-tier service, and Kusaka was moved by every word. Chrome-san isn't just some merchant, he runs the massive Scarlet Company. And he even plays it safe by introducing himself as a simple salesman so he won't disrupt the talk, but from the way he's talking, it's clear he's aiming to hand the reins to his son. He swore the gods themselves had dragged them together, then begged to be thanked before he retired, naming Hanashrin Khan and Levin Buber, and the main character brushed it off like it was just his own talent. But deep down, he knew it wasn't all his doing. At the prom, she turned to him and promised that he'd get solid advice from an older man, and the real twist was, this one had the raw skill to draw with his hand, and the other had flawless execution that made the difference scream. Too many people can't aim their skills at something good, but the protagonist does, uses them himself, and even saves his own life. He has every right to be proud. Kusaka felt those words hit him hard, thanked the man on the spot, and promised he'd never forget it. Then the man leaned in and said, "If you want to see the world, you'd better join the Adventure Guild." Prom bragged that his skills would rocket him to a top rank, and once he registered, he'd hand the protagonist a guild card. He agreed, saying he'd do it, but then admitted he'd heard that exact same pitch somewhere before. After a bit of time, the protagonist finally decided to sort his gear and skills, and the system immediately hit him with a question. "Want to wear the new equipment?" He nodded yes, and the system snapped into action, changing everything on the spot. The very next day, Kusaka strode into the guild and the whole place went dead silent the moment they spotted him. People whispered, "Is that an armored bear, Masabi Mao?" While another guy leaned in and said, "That's the one who wiped out the adventurer at the gate." They asked what the bear killer was doing here. Maybe he'd come for someone. And if that was true, the slaughter would have already started. Meanwhile, the main character caught himself thinking, maybe this is where a budding adventurer is born. Then he strode up to the table only to make the guy behind him freeze in shock. Then the man snapped that he wasn't feeling well, and just like that, another girl stepped in. A sweet smile lit up her face as she welcomed the protagonist to the Onan City Adventure Guild secretary Milia herself. She told Kusaka his armor looked badass, then leaned in and asked if there was anything she could do to help. After the main character declared he wanted to register as an adventurer, he leaned in and asked, "So is that even possible?" The girl, still stunned, snapped, "Are you sure you really want to sign up?" She then said he was just well prepared, guessed he was some seasoned adventurer from another country, and he shot back that he wasn't, he was a total newbie. Mulia shoved a form into his hands and told him, "Fill this out first, then you're taking the practical test." The main character stared at the papers and realized they looked almost the same in both worlds, one in the other world and one back in Japan. Then he finished writing and shoved the documents into the girl's hands. She flipped through them, eyes narrowing, and asked if he was messing with her when he said he was bad in battle. Kusaka shot back that he meant it. He'd rather dodge a fight than hunt one, and Milia agreed. Then he had to pass a hands-on practical test, and she leaned in to ask, "Want to do it right now?" When she said that, it hit him, so he paused, then asked, "Okay, what am I supposed to do on the practical test?" The girl said he'd spar with an instructor today, but instead, his exam will be run by a former A-rank adventurer. And he brags that he's tougher than an armored bear, so yeah, this is probably going to hurt. The protagonist shot a glance over his shoulder, wondering why the other adventurers wouldn't stop tailing him. The crowd started buzzing about the coming test, and someone even tried to lay down a money bet like this was entertainment. Melius told her straight up that he doesn't even need to beat the instructor because what's the worst that can happen? He's got nothing to lose, and if he steps in, she's convinced he'll come out on top. He swore he'd never drop his guard, then slammed his way into the moment by summoning a massive hammer. His determination was blazing. Kusaka figured he'd never stop loving this cypress hammer. It's over 100 kilograms, but the force behind it hits so hard he barely even feels the weight. The main character swung a hammer, boom, and the shockwave ripped through the air all the way to the shocked crowd watching. Everyone figured he'd swing that brutal hammer with ease like a total pro, just as the bear killer reputation promised. But if I'm being honest, it feels like the instructor might bite the dust today. After a while, a man strode onto the field, slapped his glasses on the table, and then sized up the main character. Sure, he looked tough for his age, but this guy vowed to prove there's always someone out there who's stronger. Kusaka was convinced he looked like a past adventurer, and he swore he was strong enough he refused to let defeat take him. Milia said that since they were both here, it was time to kick things off, and the protagonist immediately wondered how they were supposed to begin. Then the man smirked, called it an exam, and motioned for him to come closer. Kusaka shut his eyes, said he got it. Then before the man could blink, he bolted forward and told him he'd accept the offer. The protagonist swung the hammer like a thunderclap, but the ex-adventurer slipped the hit. Still, he kept smashing stuff to pieces, and the man kept spinning out of every swing. Kusaka tried to dodge those huge hits with barely any movement. That's what being a rank is all about. If he keeps this up, he won't even land a touch. He went for another strike, but the man slipped just out of reach again. The old adventurer swore his assaults were massive, but sure enough, blind spot still slipped through, so dodging that crushing hammer was brutal. Then the protagonist snapped to a new game plan and the man's jaw dropped in shock. Kusaka swung in hard and snapped the man's sword clean in half and the whole crowd went dead silent in pure shock. A chunk of the sword ripped off and flew sideways, but the main character never let go. He still clutched that massive hammer in both hands. Then, right then, Milia burst in and snapped, "That's enough!" She grabbed Kusaki's hand, declared him the winner, and the crowd went utterly silent, so stunned she couldn't even find words. Then they started bragging about how he beat the instructor, and how this guy was a full-on bear killer. Yeah, that's exactly why the fight was so insane. The instructor closed in and told him it was his loss, then turned to the protagonist and praised how brilliantly he fought. So the protagonist thanked him and asked if that bothered him, and the instructor shook his head. No. The man said this was the skill's special trick, turning it into a whole box of items, and that the world was huge. He thanked him for showing it, then shot his hand out and Kusaka grabbed it and shook back. The instructor patted him on the shoulder, congratulated him for passing the exam, and basically told him he'd be something huge in the future. After a while, Milia shoved a card into his hands and told him, "This is your guild card." And inside it, his whole life was stamped like the main character's info. Milia couldn't even wrap her head around it. He actually defeated the instructor, and she just kept saying how ridiculously strong he was. He tried to argue his way out, but he just gave in to her words, and he muttered to himself that he deserved credit for it, only to realize that sounded downright rude to the instructor. Then the girl pushed a document into his hands and told him to read the guild rules if he had a minute. She'd break it all down for him because her explanation would make every rule click. She told me adventurers are split into 7 ranks, and the guild climbs higher only by grinding out quests and stacking proof of every win. Milius laid out 3 deadly, no-go moves. Do them and you'll face brutal punishment, so don't touch them at all. He nodded and agreed, and he also promised he'd earn a reward for finishing every quest. The first thing he wanted was to climb to B rank because if he got hurt, he'd be paid for it. And once he retired, he'd even get a pension too. So when she asked if he understood why he had to reach B rank, you could feel it click in his head. He said what he understood, then thanked her for listening, and Kusaka just sat there thinking, if I try to plan the future, taking B rank won't cost me anything. Right now, though, he was all in on climbing the ranks. Milia leaned in and asked why he didn't grab that quest to find and collect 50 Neo's herbs because she swore it was the move. The protagonist thought it was fast, then he pressed again, demanding info on the herbs, and she told him they're used in medicine all the time. The client is a healer, and they keep getting summoned for one reason: that herb only grows where monsters have already poisoned the land, so the risks are brutal. For just one herb, the reward hits 400 comms. The protagonist figured he could finally score 20,000 calories? Pretty sweet money until Amelia snapped that medicine demand is booming, but the risk is still real, then told him to listen to her. Ideally, this happens on your first quest, but if you're a total newbie, you've got to go with another adventurer who's got a high rating. And if you want, you can even haggle with other adventurers to team up because it's totally free. Kusaka challenged her, "You really think you can ask someone that easily?" And she just grinned, telling him to trust her negotiation skills because her success rate is a perfect 100 baht. The protagonist felt relieved that his adventure finally stayed smooth. Now he just had to thank Chrome and Sand the next time he got the chance to see them again. He got him into the guild and then handed him 80,000 comms, vowing that he'd become a top-tier adventurer for real. He figured that if a chance ever showed up, he'd buy everything only through his company. Then Melia snapped his attention, calling out that she was sorry for the delay. Kusaka spun toward her and a rush of heat flooded his cheeks as he stared. Sunset red hair, blazing crimson eyes like glittering jewels, and those dragon horns looming behind her. A gorgeous girl stood right in front of him, smiling bright as she told him she'd heard all about the bear killer, and she was thrilled to finally meet him. Then she leaned in and said, "You can call me Iris." Kusaka bowed to the girls, introduced himself, and thanked them for showing up because with everyone swamped, Gamati, the Manabanadrati, and Ahi were all hanging on every instruction. Iris was shocked by what Nakrius did because the protag realized he'd just chosen to act like that. Kerbler quotate slipping out on autopilot like always, and then laughter burst in. The girl told him, "Relax, you're not alone," and reminded him they were both adventurers, so he could talk just like before. Kusaka nodded and said he got it. Then he told them to correct him fast if he'd messed up anywhere. Melius bragged that he was incredibly talented, but back in the mountains he hadn't had a clue about the outside world, so when she said Iris clashed with everyone, she offered her company to him. Iris dropped her gaze and, with a hint of heartbreak in her voice, admitted she finally understood why she had chosen it. After a bit, the main character and the girl set off to handle the job, and she immediately asked, "So what do we do first?" He said, "We gather information. We gather." He told himself that when he played games, he first grabbed donut, clothes, then dug for information. Then he looked you in the eye and swore he knew nothing about the herb nails. He also said he wanted a map of the place and to uncover what monsters were lurking nearby, and the girl nodded along, agreeing with him. She also told him, "If you prep right, you'll get the results you deserve," calling him a rising star. Then he shot back, "You're giving me way too much credit." Iris told him that everything he cared about was right there in the little booklet Milia handed him. Then he nodded and said he'd check it out right now. The protagonist figured the first chunk was all about the guild, but the second part hit like a surprise blast packed with details, even spelling out what materials are hiding in the area around them. He blurted that it looked like a guidebook, and Iris fired back that Amelia wrote it she used to work at the Royal Capital HQ, but now she's been summoned to put the guild branch back on its feet. Amelia has to shake up the guild's whole management atmosphere, and she's already nailing it, so hard that it's only a matter of time before she earns a shot as an executor at the guild headquarters. He told himself that, yeah, other people probably think he's talented. And Iris leaned in asking if he wanted to know more. He just nodded, saying yes. Yast's the shop where you could snag adventure gear. Everything except armor and weapons. After a bit, they finally stumbled into the store they needed, and he immediately grilled the seller for a rope, a torch, another torch, a Hulk hole, water containers, and flint. He even told her he'd toss everything into one box with all the stuff inside, and Iris blurted out, "Do you really have enough space?" Kusaka grinned and said, "I've got an endless box." The moment those words hit, Iris was blown away. The protagonist finally clocked it. This normal box can barely fit anything, and the girl snapped back that basically nobody uses the skill anyway. She straight up told me there are things that do her job way better than she ever could. Like how she keeps her spear tucked inside this bag. Every top-tier adventurer carries the same kind of gear, but this guy's box is straight up unhinged, and he's not even done, because deep down he's thinking, I've got more cheats than this box. Now that he was fully ready, he couldn't stop wondering, could he really finish the quest? After a bit, they finally pushed into the Kalo forest. He whipped his eyes around, hunting for that nail grass, and then bam! His gaze nailed it on the spot. Kusaka spun to Iris and demanded to know how they were supposed to take it. She told him, when you pull it out, go slow, don't smash the roots because they matter, and don't yank it too hard either, or you'll bruise the stem and tear up the leaves. Then the main character realized it had to be dug out, and boom! His mind snapped with the idea that he could pull it free a totally different way. Iris watched the main character and demanded, "Are you okay?" But he never looked up. He just slapped a magic seal onto the plant. She shut one eye, and when she opened it again, Kusaka was already yanking the grass out, roots and all. She blurted his name right away and demanded to know what he'd just done. Then he grinned and said, "I just grabbed a box and tossed the grass, and trust me, now it'll be way easier to collect." Iris couldn't believe this was how her skill would be used. Then the main character stopped listening to her and locked onto a brand new herb. This grass wasn't like the last one at all. He stared at it, then fired off, "What is this stuff, and why are there spots on the leaves?" And the girl shot back, "This grass is Naulana. At first it looks like the Nawe's kind, but nope, these are two different species, and the red spots give them away." Iris blurted out, "That's why this quest is so brutal, because you can be so sure you found the herb nails, only to learn you've actually been chasing Neolana the whole time." To finish the quest, they're stuck in this forest until evening, so they'd better stay calm, and the main character immediately felt it was finally time to fire off his skill. He shot his eyes open and snapped into the craftsman's god eye, then stared straight ahead. There it was, the exact herb glowing with a shine that screamed, "Pick me!" With the craftsman god's eyes, you can track down anything you need, so this quest becomes ridiculously easy to finish. He finished the quest in just 1 hour and still hauled in all 50 nails herbs E4AZ. He then shipped every last one straight to his item box. The protagonist snapped that they had to head back to the city now, right now, and Ira couldn't believe it, saying she figured it would take longer, while he grinned and said it was all because his skills got them there. The girl asked if the quest was over, and right when she seemed ready to hear what he wanted to say, he blurted, "Can I ask you something personal?" He leaned in and asked her who the half-dragons really were, and she shot back that dragons once ruled the world as the mightiest creatures, then explained that half-dragons are their descendants. Their lives stretch way past ours, and their bodies hit like tanks. The main character blurted out how much he envies them. Then the girl froze mid-breath, staring at him like she'd just seen a ghost. She apologized, confessed it was the first time she'd ever heard anything like that, and when he asked if he'd truly said something unusual, she answered, "Yeah, people usually fear us for it." He scratched his head and blurted out that he was sorry for what he'd said, and the girl snapped around like, "Don't you sit here and overthink it." Then Iris said those words about envy made her so happy that she blushed hard, instantly looking flustered. After a while, they rolled back into the guild and Nilia blurted, "You really finished that collection quest this fast?" Kusaka just pointed it out. "Exactly 50 herbs, right here." Nilia nodded and said she'd check the count herself. After 5 minutes, she said the truth. This whole patch of grass was real, fresh roots and leaves intact, not a single thing damaged, and she demanded, "So, how did you pull that off?" The protagonist broke down exactly how his box skill worked, but Milia pretended not to notice how he pulled off the quest, so now it's on her to write the reports and log the completed quests. She told him, "For now, you'll only get 20,000 comms if your method gets approved. You might earn an extra reward on top of that." I admitted this was exactly what you'd expect from a rising star. Then he shrugged and said it was just a coincidence, thanked Maribus Baba, and that's how he cleared his very first quest. Right now, he showed up at the temporary place Kromsign had given him, and he was ready to settle into Shogotsude for good. Right ahead loomed a massive mansion, no matter how you slice it. This is absolutely not where an adventurer is meant to live. He stepped into Lello, and just like that, the main character was wearing a sharp suit. He grinned and said, "Now I can finally go in wearing this." Then it hit him, he was stunned. He couldn't stop wondering if this place was even meant for him, because it dwarfed his whole house back in Japan. He wanted dinner so bad, but the prices here were brutal. So he gave up and cracked open a guidebook, then popped open a gourmet guide. The gourmet guide pointed you to the Golden Bear restaurant and swore their grilled chicken was the one everybody couldn't get enough of. He devoured a glorious 7,500 calorie feast. Then they tried to hand him wine, but it only made things a pain. Still, he grinned and swore that tomorrow he'd go full throttle. The very next day, he charged straight into the Fados Mountains, where he grabbed a quest to cripple the lone wolves because that's exactly what they do. They hunt alone. Milia said the base payout is 20,000 combs plus 5,000 for every wolf he bags, and the protagonist couldn't help thinking, this is a pretty sweet gig. As expected, he hunted for a full hour and found nothing. Then boom, 3 materials dropped in his path. Naos grass, a lilium plant, and a wet mushroom. With creation skill in his hands, he can whip up a healing potion and even a detoxifying one. Then he just needs a container for the liquid, the one he'll pour into the water bags he was told to fill, so he nodded and agreed. After a while, he finally brewed the heal potion, one that slams your health back to full and leaves you buzzing with fresh energy, just like the elixir. He took a sip and his face lit up. "Mint," he breathed, and suddenly it jarred his memory of that sketchy company that sold sleeping pills. So, yeah, the choice was made. He was going to craft the next potion. Detoxifying potion. 1 gulp and every poison in his body gets wiped out instantly, like swallowing mouthwash that burns straight through danger. He even decided to take a sip, praying the rating wasn't bluffing. And after a beat, he felt ridiculously good, like he'd just tasted that rich, luxurious grape juice. Suddenly, a lone wolf slipped up behind him. He spun around fast, and the wolf started roaring like it had to warn the whole world. The wolf crept closer and closer, growling like a warning siren. And the main character finally thought, yes, I've been waiting for you, the lone wolf. A smug grin cracked across his face as he declared it was showtime, and Kusaka yanked a sword straight from his bag. Right then, a wolf came crashing toward him, and he snapped into action using his agility skill to dodge the strike just in time before he spun and carved the wolf down with his sword. Kusaka was sure his sword cut clean, but there was no time to be amazed. Now he had to grab the monster's corpse, and if he turned in the wolf's fur, he might score a bigger reward. The main character reckoned there were still 4 left, so he'd finish the quest. Then he looked at that wolf and realized it didn't seem all that tough. He spun around and saw a whole horde of wolves piling up behind him. Then he blurted, "Why are they moving like they're in a pack?" But before he could finish, every single one of them lunged to attack. The moment it started, the main character started hacking through them with his weapon. And as he hit level 9, he snagged a brand new skill 2 automatic collection. He didn't waste a second, he instantly hit the auto collection skill, letting him snatch up monster corpses automatically, which was a total lifesaver. With a single blow, Key sent several wolves crashing down, then his jaw dropped, because more wolves surged in from behind him and Key's nerves twisted into anger. His mind raced. So what was really happening here? Was he just some tasty snack to them, and how many more of them were lurking in the shadows? In his item box, 2,031 wolves were stacked like a loaded arsenal, plus 2 healing potions and 2 detox potions. And as he stared at it all, he couldn't stop wondering why lone wolves would ever go for an attack. This was definitely not normal when he got back. He'd report everything to the guild, but right then, deep in the forest, another growl snapped through the air. Straight ahead, a lone female wolf stared back. She craved solitude, but during the extra cycle, she'd pair up, then vanish from the father once pregnancy hit. The main character was hit with pure shock. He even believed the wolves were always the ones fleeing. And now there's no escaping it. He can't claim he isn't responsible for what's happening. Still, he refuses to be their prey, so he swings his weapon at the wolf. He hit level 16, and his health, mana, and physical stats shot up. Now he's already climbed several levels today. As his level climbs, his skills sharpen, so now he has to keep leveling up. After what felt like forever, he finally stumbled into a pond. Then he froze, wondering if he should rest for a moment. But on the reservoir's shore, he spotted 2 wrecked figures, a tired girl and a tired guy, just barely standing. The main character said it felt like he wasn't the only one here, and he demanded, "Is everything all right? Did something happen?" At first, they panicked. Then the guy pressed him, asking if he was truly a bear killer. So Kusaka shot back with his name and announced he was an E rank. He got told, "Get off this mountain fast." And right away, the main character shot back, "Wait, did a bear really attack us?" The guy shot back, "Man, that thing is a giant spider, massive, and it moves like lightning." And he was dead sure it was a black one. The girl swore the black spider was a deadly monster, and if it was really him, then he'd be lurking deep in the mountains. So why did he show up today? Kusaka clocked the collection quest right away, but then the universe cursed them with terrible luck, and out of nowhere, a black spider attacked. And trust me, that thing is brutal, not a beginner fight. The girl leaned in and said, they first crossed paths with a legendary rank adventurer, and then she dropped the bomb that she was half-dragon. I'm pretty sure her name was Iris. The boys pushed forward and warned us the black spider isn't just a monster. It's higher than rank, far scarier than the armored bear, and now they're in Iris's debt. The protagonist kept replaying Iris's words how dragons are way stronger than humans, but right then all that mattered was one terrifying question: was she still alive? Pusaka demanded they remember where the black spider was, then ordered them to explain everything. So one guy jutted his finger in that direction and snapped that they had to go there right away. The main character shot back with full conviction that he'd track Iris down, then the two of them would just go straight back together. He launched into a warning about how it was way too dangerous. Then the main character snapped back that he wasn't going to fight solo. The girl nodded like she finally got it, then told them to go hit the guild for help and begged everyone to look after Iris instead of her. The guy still tried to talk him out of it, but the girl shot back that she'd been hearing spirits' voices, and they had to let the main character go. Heck, he couldn't believe what she just said. He'd only ever clocked words like that from anime and games, not from the way they mean something real in this world. She told him spirits aren't just myths. They're invisible beings that can twist nature itself, and with her spiritual direction, sometimes spirits reach out and contact her directly. The guy said spiritual guidance saved them back then, but now he won't let Kusak go too far. He told him to stop overdoing it. The girl warned him to stay careful, then told him he'd been blessed by spirits and gods, while the main character couldn't stop thinking about Iris waiting for him. Kusaka bolted straight toward where the guy pointed, and mid-run he slammed on the armored bear skill while activating a hearing boost. You swore he was clinging to one hope that it wasn't too late, that she was still alive, and that he had no choice but to believe it. Kusaka thought he was calm, but it turns out he doesn't even get himself, because even now his heart keeps twitching. Right then, he caught a strange sound. He froze on the spot and spun around, hunting for where it came from, before deciding, alright, I'm going to check. Kusaka pushed through the thorny thickets until the trees gave way to a blasted wasteland, and right there, something massive was roaring like pure chaos. So he figured it had to be a black spider. Right when he reached the spot, he spotted Iris sprawled on the ground, still silent and unconscious. Kusaka thought, thank God I'm still alive then. Panic hit. Where the hell was Pawbuck, the spider that ditched its victim to set a trap? Maybe this was the trap. At that exact moment, a massive spider burst up from the ground, and the main character's eyes locked onto it, thinking, so that's the monster, the black spider. He studied that spider's lightning-fast agility, its weird resistance to magic, and the poison hiding in its fangs. Then he leaned on Iris's bait, the one he'd researched, so he'd know exactly what that monster would try. He didn't see it coming. This monster lunged at him out of nowhere, and he barely escaped at the very last second. A spider launched relentless strikes at him, non-stop, so he frantically dodged every hit, but every time he barely slipped away, it kept coming with brutal moves. Kusaka slashed at him again and again, but when he finally looked up, the guy had slipped away, only a nasty scratch to show for it, so Kusaka couldn't land the fatal blow. The protagonist flickered a glance over his shoulder at the girl, and Panic screamed that he had to get her out, so he pushed to finish off the monster before time ran out. Lost in his thoughts, he didn't see it coming. Then a spider screamed and lunged at him, and in that shock he couldn't dodge out of the attack. That punch sent him flying so hard he slammed into the ground and snapped a whole tree clean in half. Then he realized his armor's power is what kept him standing. Midair, he accidentally let his sword slip and fall, and Panic hit. He had to forge a replacement before anyone could even notice. Kusaka didn't get a second to react as the spider launched at him, blasting him with a crushing, web-pure, suffocating pressure. The main character realized too late he was trapped, and Panic hit hard because right then he couldn't use a single thing and couldn't break free. Kusaka figured if he drove his fangs into him, he'd be the one who dies, so he clenched his focus and hunted for a way to escape. Then bam, an idea hits him. If he stuffs the tree into a box, he can escape. Easy. A sudden burst of blinding light ripped the air, then the spider froze, totally clueless about where the main character had vanished to, along with the tree. Right then, Kusaka was suddenly miles from the monster, and while he was still airborne, he tore free and snapped the web off him. He remembered his power. Anything he touched could get stuffed into his box, so he yanked the tree in two, thread and all. Kusaka even managed to yank his sword back. Now he just had to crack the spider problem. And right then he spotted Iris's spear. He grabbed both weapons in his hands, thinking the girl would have to lend him her strength, and then he charged straight at the monster. Kusaka crashed into him again and again with his blade, then realized the spear would be even easier to swing, because the sword wasn't the only trick he had. He gripped the spear tighter, then charged the monster and drove it straight into its body. Right as the spider erupted in a piercing scream, blood gushed out from the wound. The main character smashed through with blow after blow, and every strike left deep, heavy blood. Then he launched off the spider's body and hit the ground hard. He'd just realized a few moments ago he had zero chance to beat him, like the world was refusing to let him unleash the real power of his abilities. Then the monster snapped on him and bolted, running for his life. The main character wouldn't let him pull that off. He bolted after him and drove Iris's spear straight into his head. Then he sprang up and slashed at him with his sword. The protagonist sliced his body clean in half, and the spider ripped apart right along with him. Then Kusaka rose, stared at the monster's remains, and let out a deep breath. The system flashed that he'd hit level 24 health, mana, and all his physical stats jumped up. Every requirement was satisfied, and then it handed him a brand new automap skill. He yanked open the map and grinned at the thrill of a whole other world. Then his smile faded fast because now he had to help that girl. He sprinted up to her and thanked the heavens she was still alive, barely breathing like her heartbeat was slipping away. She needed healing right now. Kusaka yanked out a potion and flooded it over her wounds, praying it would finally kick her back from the brink. After a while, the potion finally kicked in. She froze mid-stare, and without even blinking, the main character prayed with everything in her that it would all work. The girl's wounds started knitting themselves shut. Every scrape and red mark faded away until she finally snapped back into herself and opened her eyes. Iris spotted him and shouted his name, and the protagonist practically lit up as he answered. The girl snapped that he had to run. There was a black spider nearby. He brushed it off and told her there was nothing to worry about. Kusaka felt that something was seriously wrong and worried about everyone else, and yeah, she was a genuinely kind soul. Then he straight up asked her out loud how she was feeling. Iris confessed that the moment she chose to die, her legs just wouldn't listen at all. Then the protagonist figured it out. That was the black spider's poison doing its damage. He yanked a potion from his box, told her to drink it, then immediately started forcing it into her mouth. Right after that, her eyes shot open in a jolt. The main character shot her a question. How's she feeling? Can she talk yet? She beamed and said, "It was amazing." And then the real fear hit. Could the poison truly have slipped past? Iris finally thanked him for actually saving her because now she's drowning in debt. Then Kusaka leaned in and asked if she'd be free later. The girl told him she had a little time to spare. Then he jumped in and asked if they could grab lunch together sometime, only for her to wink and tease. "So, you're really asking me out on a date?" Iris shot up, insisting it was just a joke she hoped would lift her spirits, but it totally flopped. Then she blurted that they should head back to the city, and right when she said it, she staggered, swayed, and started to fall. The girl blurted that she felt sick again and rushed an apology to him. Then her face flared bright red. She snatched her up at once and hurled her onto his back. Then the two of them pushed through the forest side by side like they owned the path, while Iris bragged that he could wipe out a black spider and even take down an armored bear. And he pulled it all off by himself. She even asked if he wasn't scared. But Kusaka just stared and said he wasn't thinking about fear at all. He was too busy trying to protect her. He didn't think about anything. She said, "I get it," but her face burned with embarrassment, so he asked, "Are you okay?" And she insisted, "Everything's fine," then quickly added that she just wanted to thank him. Soon enough, they finally hit the guild building. Then he sprinted inside, still carrying Iris on his back, while the guys he'd met earlier came running up with big smiles. They grilled him about whether he'd taken down the black spider, and when he said yes, they admitted they were okay. What a relief. Melia beamed at him and praised him for crushing that quest. The latter leaned in and asked, "Dinner or a bath?" And he shot back, "Quest first, I'm not done yet." After a while, they finally shoved their way into the Adventure Guild's office. The reception room, Melia leaned in and said she wanted his full report on the quest's completion. But before that, she'd let him in on one of her secrets. She flashed her guild member ID, and the main character's eyes narrowed as he wondered if something was seriously off. Kusaka clocked that she was the guildmaster's assistant, so when the girl grinned, she said, "You're right, but the head's out on a business trip right now." The main character admitted she couldn't believe how high her rank was, and he snapped, "So, why are you still working as a registrar?" She shot back, "Because we're short on staff and I have to cover the shift." Kusaka couldn't believe it. He never thought she'd climb to a position that high, not even once, not in his wildest guesses. Melia smiled and said, "Yeah, it's fine now, let's cut the chatter and get to the point." She just couldn't wait to spill her newest news. She bowed hard and told him she couldn't thank him enough for taking down the black spider because if he hadn't stepped in, a whole lot of people might have been dead right now. The girl flashed him a warm smile and told him she was thanking him for the whole guild. She was stunned by her words. Melia told him they had to keep talking with no stiff, pointless formalities, then pushed him to spill every detail of his adventure. Then Kusaka shot back that he got it all, grinned like the night was about to explode. This was going to be a long story, and he started spilling everything that happened to him after he ditched the guild. He also told them about running into a pack of lone wolves, and Melia warned, "Don't stick with anyone, stay by yourselves." Then she said she'd report it straight to the guild headquarters. She gasped when she double-checked his claim. When she opened his system window, there it was. He'd wiped out 2,031 wolves by himself. Then the girl snapped her hand over her mouth and demanded, "Who are you?" insisting he couldn't possibly be a messenger of God. He scrambled to explain himself. The protagonist figured the talk went perfectly since those two also went and told the guild about the black spider. Melia leaned in and asked what he used against that black spider. But then she crushed his hopes. Right now, there's no cure for the poison. He told her he'd brewed a potion, then handed it straight to the guild so they could crank it out for mass production. Looks like tomorrow, he'll finally sit down with management to push for a higher rank. Milia swears he's already taken down the black spider and the armored bear, so now it's time they recognize what he's earned. And if Kusaka wipes out monsters that outrank him, he gets a reward, plus the black spider is going to hit around 5 million comms. The protagonist froze in shock and blurted, "Isn't that too much?" And she shot back that a black spider hunt is usually a whole team gig. Then the reward gets split evenly at the end. Right when they got close to the city, a bunch of adventurers stepped in front of them. And the moment they saw who it was, everyone shouted, "Thank God you're alive!" The main character couldn't stop panicking and blurted out, "What about Iris?" Because she'd thrown herself in the line of danger to save someone else's life. Amelia grinned at him and promised they'd reward her handsomely because that's how the guild always repays someone for doing the right thing. Right now, she's turning in her report that the quest is done. While the protagonist is about to go down, he runs into the instructor he once battled, and the man basically tells him, "We haven't seen each other in ages. Listen, San said I have heard a ton about you because you can wipe out the black spider all by yourself." And he kept going. That kind of talent shows up only once in a lifetime. While Kusaka just smirked, "Yeah, but you're definitely overestimating him." The man asked, "Are you free right now?" And the other guy grinned, saying, "Sure, just not yet. I'm heading to the tavern for dinner." Guy's son practically lit up and said, "That's perfect news." After a while, they finally burst into the tavern and the man yelled for everyone to meet today's star. The restaurant was packed, and the second his name was mentioned, everyone erupted into shouting, demanding him like he was late to the party. But nobody could agree what to call him, Bear Killer or Spider Killer. The main character's cheeks flared as he blushed and grinned sweetly. And in his head, he told himself this city already has him feeling like he belongs. At 11 p.m., the protagonist spun around and spotted Iris walking into the tavern. Then he asked her, point blank, if she'd already woken up. Every soul in the tavern snapped their heads toward her, and the protagonist couldn't shake the thought. Did people really fear half-dragons that badly? He started to wonder what he could possibly do. Kusaka sprinted up to the man he'd met earlier and barked at him to get to his feet. Then he blurted that Iris had shown up straight after that. He demanded whether she'd saved him from the black spider, and the guy confirmed it. The guy blurted out to Iris right away, and together with her, they bowed no huge thanks, just respect pouring out as soon as the moment was over. The girl's eyes went wide at what they said, and the main character jumped in too, thanking her for today. Then he shoved a glass of drink into her hands and turned to address everyone one by one. Kusaka said he wasn't the only hero stepping up today while Iris threw herself at the black spider alone, buying time so the two of them could break free. The main character grinned, lifted his glass, and toasted her courage with a drink, while the girl beside him froze in stunned silence. Everyone in the restaurant lifted their drinks to her and promised they'd drink, while Kusaka clenched his thoughts, praying someone would actually accept her because of it. After a while, the main character finally settled into this place despite a few tense little showdowns, and then boom, he earned his first promotion. He got jumped straight from F rank to D rank, and the girl practically burst with joy, bragging that it was the quickest promotion anyone had ever seen. To earn a C rank, he has to do more than slug monsters and grab materials. He must crush city quests too, jumping in to help the city directly, not just trading around. Today's mission is all about Kiknamati's assistant, and the guy just shrugs like, "I'm doing my job." Kusaka's mind sparks maybe an apron could help, but he's never actually used one before. The protagonist snatched a knife into his grip, and with that lone wolf apron strapped on, he suddenly looked like a real chef, all clean hands, laundry dead serious. With him were two more, Okami and San, who turned terrifying the second he snapped. And there was also an adventurous girl chasing the dream of becoming a daughter-in-law. Meanwhile, he realized he'd never once cooked for himself back in Japan. With those insane skills, he started chopping through every ingredient at lightning speed. And because of his pure dexterity and master chef mastery, he could cook absolutely anything. So he whipped up 2 lunch sandwiches, and the man practically praised his insane skill, saying he'd score an extra reward for the quest. The man said, "Good work deserves good money." And when the main character heard it, tears hit his eyes like the words had stabbed straight through him. The second quest he had to crush was helping build the city wall, and right then, it was still under heavy construction. With the population surging and the wall falling apart, they ripped it down and rebuilt it from scratch, and yeah, this was the 5th quest of the day that they personally ordered him to finish. The helmeted man gripped his hammer and declared, "Today too, you're getting my help right on time." He worked the night shift hauling trash, snatching the mess up with his box and dumping every last bit inside. Then he tore across the city to the eastern side. Kama Jane, Matachin, Liliman Sopiat, Cocket. And the moment he stepped in, Kama was teaching again. Roa was there too, and a brutal pile of bricks sat waiting right in front of him. He even used his skill to sling those bricks, and before the men headed back to work, they offered him a drink, but he waved it off and said he had a quest to finish. Then he finished every last quest for the day, rushed to the guild to turn in his report, and boom, the full reward landed straight on his account. Milia said her goodbye, and right by the exit, Iris was waiting for him. She praised his work, then leaned in and asked if he'd finished everything. She said yes right away, then turned the question back on him. She told him she'd handled everything too, and no matter what she suggested, they grabbed dinner together, if he was okay with it. He said he wasn't really feeling meat today, and she grinned like she had a secret. Turns out she knows the perfect spot, and she invites him there almost every single day. In the restaurant, the main character beamed and declared everything was wonderful, with not a single complaint while the girl lit up, said she was glad he liked it all, then leaned in and asked why he'd moved to the city. Kusaka shrugged and said it just turned out that way, then leaned in and asked why she'd come here, adding that if it was too painful to talk about, she could drop it and forget it. Iris tells us there's a massive underground city hiding under our own, and she's here to dig up the ruins of an ancient civilization. That ancient civilization finally collapsed, but it didn't vanish. It left eerie proof scattered across the continent, and new research has just uncovered a massive underground city near Annan. The main character told her, "I get what you're hunting for," and she lit up and admitted that chasing it was the whole reason she'd moved. Talk about a highly developed ancient civilization. This is basically a whole other world, and somewhere in those ruins, an ancient superweapon is just waiting to be found. Iris spilled that she had a few clues about this civilization, but no matter how hard she searched, she still couldn't pin down where it was. Kusaka just shrugged and said it was fascinating. The main character told her he had a map of the area, then offered to show it right there, so the girl nodded and agreed. Kusaka told the system to show him where this underground city was, but that was the wild part, if it really was that simple. Everyone would have already found it, and yet the map still pinpointed the city's exact location. The protagonist said the city was hiding in the Kello forest, but he didn't know if they could trust it, so he turned to the girl and demanded her take, and she snapped back that it was honestly shocking. They even found it in the first place. After a while, they finally decided to check it out, and the map led them straight through the forest to the right spot, but when they reached the marked place, it was nothing but a blasted wasteland and a dead end. The main character decided to smash that rock, slid on the black spider glove, and figured that was all he'd need. Iris strode up to the rock and wondered if it hid a secret passage. Then she told everyone to search the area and see what turned up. He tapped the rock and felt it. Something was here. Then he shoved the block hard, but no matter how much muscle he threw at it, it wouldn't budge. He cracked out a few more moves, and somehow he got the whole thing to budge. Turning it aside revealed a door behind it, and they all agreed it had to be the entrance to the underground city. Pusaka reached out and brushed it with his hand, and the moment his fingers touched it, warmth surged through, so the girl guessed maybe it was alive or magical, while Pusaka shrugged and figured it was just some rare material pulled straight from a fantasy game. "I already told you this is a rare piece of gear, and it's the absolute best in its class at blocking both anti-magic spells and weird physics-bending attacks." Just like they'd feared, this had to be the entrance. But there wasn't a single door handle, so now they had no clue how to get inside. He read the note on the door, and the status got updated. Boom! He was welcome to the underground city, told he had to do something, and right then, I realized someone was creeping up behind him. Turns out it's an orichalcum golem, an ancient humanoid weapon built to destroy. It wears armor forged from that same metal, and one of its eyes is mounted with a rapid-fire laser cannon. The protagonist snapped that he wanted nothing to do with him then. Right then, the golem confirmed the target and unleashed himself, starting to tear it apart. Iris snapped at Kusaka that she'd be right here, perfect bait, and told him to haul ass and get as far away from him as he could. This ES rank column is a straight-up threat. One rank above the Black Spider. She's tangled with him before, and the truth is, brutal. None of them stand a chance against him. So the main character shot back, "I'm not sure about this. Nobody'll know until we try." And only after that did they decide if they'd bolt or stay. The protagonist said he'd hate the taste in his own mouth if he abandoned someone just to survive then. Right on cue, the golem snapped into the attack. Kusaka couldn't stop thinking about it, so this is what his magic laser really feels like, and honestly, he doesn't even want to imagine what would have happened if he hadn't dodged it. The golem blasts a magic laser, so it's clearly running on magic power, and the protagonist blurts right away how they beat it last time, then turns to Iris. The girl said they were going straight for his eyes because this spot isn't covered by orichalcum metal. Then the main character snapped that if they could only close the distance, they might finally take him down, while Iris shot back that the laser would slice him to pieces before he ever got within range. Kusaka snapped that he'd be her shield blocking every hit, and then made it sound like he was counting on her to strike back and shut him down. Iris told him that if they pulled off the win, it would prove he had the power of 19A rank adventurers. Then the protagonist grinned and said, "That actually sounds awesome." Kusaka and Iris charged straight at their shared enemy, and the moment the golem clocked them, it blasted them with a laser, so Kusaka thrust his gloved hand out in front of him. The Black Spider glove doesn't just look dangerous. It drinks magic, so when his laser blasts out, it gets swallowed up like nothing. The protagonist threw himself over Iris just as the golem slammed in. But it couldn't reach them, so Kusaka snapped at the girl, demanding she start moving. Iris kept her eyes on him for a beat, then swooped out from behind the main character and drove her spear straight into the enemy's eye. He snapped his arm at her. But Kusaka stepped in and wouldn't let it happen. He didn't just swallow magic, he fired up the black spider thread skill and spun the magic he absorbed into a deadly thread. Right then, Iris drove her spear into the enemy's face again, shattering his control completely, and he crumpled to the ground. The enemy vanished. She swore he'd powered down, and right after that, they tore him apart then. Boom! The main character hit level 38. The golem fight was finally over, and the underground city's main rights were officially handed to him. Like a crown slammed into place, but Kusaka couldn't shake the feeling. Did he really just become the owner of the whole city? He couldn't stop wondering if they'd finally get the door open now, and the girl grabbed his hands, thanking him for keeping her safe because without him, she wouldn't be alive. He thanked her too because there's no way he could have pulled it off by himself. Then Iris shot back that she couldn't have done it without him either. The girl flashed a sweet smile and said they work like a dream, then hinted they might turn into a killer team. The door scanned their magical patterns and swung wide for him, and once the gate roared open, they decided no turning back to head for the underground city. Suddenly, footage of the main character blared in front of them, showing he could automatically collect items and toss them straight into boxes. Iris leaned in and said, "Maybe that's it. Maybe he's a transmitter." Then she added, "And yeah, there's even an old legend about one." A freaky thing rolled in from somewhere way beyond, somehow packed with insane skill, and Kusaka basically said, "Yeah, it checks out." He swore it was true, then begged me to keep it locked up as a secret, so Iris nodded, said she got it, but she still wanted the full details on where he'd been. Kusaka couldn't stop wondering if she'd actually believe him when he claimed he'd come to them from another world. So he straight up said, loud and clear, that this was the farthest place anyone could possibly imagine. Iris begged for forgiveness and told him to just move on, and he shrugged. "I'm good. It's just that I can't talk about it easily." Then the girl nodded back like, "Yeah, our feelings match." Kusaka begged forgiveness for every secret, and Iris didn't shut him down. She said she wasn't against it, then told him he could trust her. He urged her to look forward, like just maybe this endless tunnel was finally about to break into something beyond. The main character and Iris locked eyes and grinned. Then they both sprinted straight into the blazing light at the exact same time. The girl blurted, "So, we're really in an underground city?" And he nodded, smiling like it was no big deal then, right in front of them. A blazing blue sky stretched over an open field. They still didn't buy that this was some hidden underground city then. Out of nowhere, rustling crawled through the grass, and Kusaka instantly yanked his sword. Slime burst out of the grass, shouting that the main character is completely wrong because he isn't a bad monster, and honestly, he's not even a monster at all. It was a helper slime. Its whole job was to look after the monsters. And yeah, it looked like it belonged to the staff of this place. The protagonist and Iris agreed he didn't look like an enemy at all. Then Slime admitted they scared him, and he decided right there to step in and get to know them. Soon, a swarm of slimes popped up in front of them, claiming they were made solely for their master and that they'd been waiting for him for an eternity. The main character froze at her words, then Iris slid up to them and started poking them, and they blurted, "I'm ticklish." Kusaka grilled her about what she was doing, and she apologized, then covered her face with her hands while he just leaned in and asked if she really genuinely liked cute things. The slimes started grilling the protagonist, asking if he wanted to learn more about the underground city, and he eagerly said yes. They carved this place underground as a doomsday hideout just in case the world ever falls apart. And soon, we'll be building a whole city right here. Right then, the protagonist went all in on full assistant status check finished, and boom, his creation skill abilities got a major upgrade. He unlocked 2 fresh functions in the skill creation menu only in a subordinate city, and then he decided, right then and there, to build something big. He cradled a magic ball in his hands, snapped his arm to the side, and hurled it away then. Boom! A 2-story house materialized right where it landed, and everyone's jaw dropped. His first new power. He can suck up any extra magic and turn it into building materials. 5, straight out of thin air. Next, it lets you conjure whole structures out of building materials. So when you tweak the photosphere, it straight up builds you a house. The protagonist figured it sounded like a blast, just like those house building games then. Right then, the slimes lit up and faced him, buzzing with excitement. They grilled them on why they weren't the ones building the city, and you could tell the nerves were rattling their whole bodies. The slimes leaned in and asked Kusaka if he had the construction directive skill when he shook his head and said no, that was the end of it. Once you become a hero, demon king, or sage, you'll unlock the skill to build directives. But don't get fooled. The creation functions won't show up until you actually have the skill itself, and the full help makes it crystal clear he's a special case. Then the slimes grilled him, asking if he really had the power of creation because that kind of skill only the chosen can wield. They started yelling that their master was ridiculously amazing, and because of him, Their city was going to be incredible. This place would turn into something truly wonderful. Iris said she'd never heard of the creation skill before because once he used it, he'd turn every carpenter into his enemy, and Nakusaka snapped back that it wasn't just houses either. He crafts weapons, assaults, Z armor, and potions, then turns Mahalra from dishes to furniture. Wervel too, like he can build anything from nothing. And when the girl snaps back that she's wrong, he vows to make every single craftsman his enemy. Slime said the underground city still isn't finished, and that made them breathe easier because now they know he'll finally bring this massive city to life. He's convinced the underground city is going to save the main character later on, and when he says that, the kid nods then admits they're just going to have to wait a bit. The ancient ruins were a massive discovery, and Iris pushed him to report it to the guild. Kusaka wrestled with what to report and who to consult, so they cut the mission short and headed back to their city for the next step. I told her, take one of the slimes. And once we finally rolled up to the guild, they wanted to go straight to Amelia. Another girl shot back that she had to rush to an emergency meeting, then offered to relay the info for her or said she could handle it herself. Kusaka shrugged and said, no need for all that, listen. I've got something to report. Then the girl nodded, grinning, and replied, all right, go ahead, let's start. The main character told her they'd uncovered a hidden underground city from an ancient civilization, and the girl froze for a split second. Then she burst out screaming in pure shock. Iris said this underground city near Annan is crazy popular, and the wild part is the ruins are still working and alive. The girl told them to wait with bated breath, and in the reception area, she'd go straight to the head Kusaka, and Iris were absolutely stunned. The Royal Capital Professor is coming any minute. He'll speed through lunch in a heartbeat so he's ready the second he arrives. Iris gushed that the sandwich looked amazing, and Kusaka grinned and said it was a special Kinku-mate call dish, then dared her to take a bite, and she agreed right away. The main character swore he'd start with fried food, but right then the girl snatched the fork from his hands and shot back that she didn't think he'd need it. Kusaka told her, I cook like a pro. And Iris lit up. She said she loves cooking in her free time, and nothing beats having someone to share the meal with. She thought she was just into cute stuff, but the way she cooks? Seriously impressive today. He learned a whole lot about her, and right then they heard a voice. The room door swung open, and a total stranger stepped in to greet them. Kusaka's mind raced, convinced he'd find an old man standing there. But it turns out the one behind it all is a young guy named Larrick Dubert. He's the Duke's third son, and he digs up history for a living as an archaeologist. Yeah, he's a nobleman, but he doesn't act above anyone. He straight up demands they treat him like an equal. Formal meetings make his skin crawl, and then right on cue he blurts that they should hear about the underground city. Larry clenched his fists, his eyes lit up with fire, and he demanded straight through the room that they tell him every last thing they knew. After they finished every last detail, they headed straight into the underground city, and the archaeologist couldn't believe what she saw at the entrance. He reached out and started tapping the door with his hands, then blurted, is it already Calcum? And when he spoke again, he couldn't stop himself. There was a ton of it. Lyric raved about divine splendor like it was made for him to taste, then promised that with one door, people could grab a ton of stuff. Then the protagonist snapped around and told him to move because they had to get inside now, and the door itself confirmed the magical sample was legit. After a while, the city gate swung open, shuddering with a grand creak, and from the dark depths, a voice thundered out to Xabathon, greeting the master. Lyric's jaw dropped when they called Kusaku a master. Then Kusaku suddenly remembered he hadn't explained that crucial detail. The main character filled him in on the victory over the golem, and it absolutely wrecked him. His jaw dropped, fully and completely stunned. Lyric caught those views and shot back, asking if they were truly in an underground city, because to him, it didn't look like a dungeon at all. He said it was beyond anything we could imagine. Archaeology's history was about to be rewritten forever, and Lyric was fuming that he hadn't written down every word from his dissertation. Right then, the man spotted the slimes, and the moment they turned, they faced the protagonist and Iris and greeted them all over again. Then they spun around to Lyric and said, we've never met. Slime claimed he was just an assistant, while the man who the Ecos opened his mouth for could barely believe it. Like shock hit him mid-breath. He dropped into a squat right in front of him and demanded, are you ancient magical creatures? And the guy answered that he honestly knew all about them. Lyric started talking like he owned the past, claiming he knew ancient organizations inside out, saying they were myths until the truth hit they were real. Then the man spotted the house and, jabbing his finger at it, demanded to know if it was built by slime. With a grin, the slime shot back, that's not true, because the master built this whole house in the blink of an eye. Lyrica snapped the main character around, and he shot back that the guy running this place could build almost anything. The man explained, yeah, I get how it could happen, but this place is called the Underground City, and it's totally empty. Then he said the master has every right to build it up. The protagonist asked if an amateur could even run this place, then he nodded and said, that's exactly why I came back to file the report myself. Lyric couldn't hide his gratitude he'd finally found this place, and Most people only grab ruins and bulldoze in without even bothering to tell the guild. The man said Kusaka finally clocked how massive this was for history, and then he thanked him on the spot. Then the main character leaned in and asked Lyric to spill everything he knew about ancient civilizations. And Lyric flat out said there wasn't a single thing he didn't know. After a bit, they charged into the house. Then the man froze, shocked he had to pad across the street barefoot, while the main character shrugged like, yeah, this is nothing new for me. He'd swear this was the distant future, unless he was wrong because everyone calls him the transmitter. Lyric asked for permission to spill everything he knew, then said that around 4,000 to 5,000 years ago, a whole civilization once existed. With the lost magical tech back in their hands, nothing could stop them. Sky was the limit, and soon enough, they weren't just stuck on one world, they were working on other stars and even planets. They're completely lost without their magical lamps, showers, and ovens. Even the guild map and the story progression, because every single one of those treasures they've got came straight out of the ruins. And that's all it took history blasting off across continents with a mechanical flying bird while a tiny palm-sized box let him reach people from miles away. Kusaka stared at the idea of space travel airplanes, even telephones, then realized this ancient world was basically his old one, except magic had exploded into existence where science should have been. Lyra kept talking, and then she dropped the truth at some point. They were wiped out, and once that advanced magical tech vanished, their ancestors lost the greatness that made them legendary. The main character demanded to know why everything was destroyed. Was it truly a world war? And Lyark just shrugged, admitting he had no clue. Everyone figured it had to be some unknown monster behind all of it. Then Kusaka snapped and asked what was wrong with him right now, and he just couldn't shake the bad feeling. Iris fired back that this disaster was straight up written in her people's legends, so when the moment came, her people and all of humanity joined forces and stood together against it. It was a brutal, crushing war. Our people got wiped out, everything gone. And when the disaster morphed into raw rage, it just dropped off the map, falling asleep somewhere in this world. Even with all that magical tech, the whole civilization still crumbled, and the tragedy might finally strike again within this very century. Right then, a slime waddled up, shoved out a table loaded with food, and told them, "Grab whatever you want." The main character stabbed the food with his fork, took a bite, and lit up as he shouted, "It was delicious." Meanwhile, Iris nearby was digging in and loving every second of it. Lyric said he was jealous of his ancestors, like they got to eat this every single day. Then he leaned in and demanded to know where the slimes even got the ingredients and the utensils for their meals. Slime shot back that they, as assistants, have a killer power. An item box stitched right to their own body. Then the assistant yanked open his mouth and laid out exactly how he snagged every last item where it all came from. Piece by piece, and the whole crowd nearly lost it. The protagonist swore the ingredients they used were basically pulled straight from the mouth of mucus. Lyric told them they had to rush back to Katra to talk about the disaster, and he even brought a proposal before turning to Kusaka and asking if he wanted to build something. He shot his hand up and said, "First, I'm here for archaeological research. Second, I'm preparing for what's coming next. With everything that's been happening lately, something could hit Onan any minute. And if it does, this place will turn into the perfect evacuation spot." No big battle broke out, so he figured, why not chase some archaeology instead? And honestly, building a city in a game sounded way too fun to ignore. Kusaka's been here for half an hour and his stash of building materials just hit 8,000. Yeah, he could build houses one by one, but he's craving something bigger. He whipped up this massive sphere and Lyric was like, "What the heck is that?" because it straight up looked like a construction egg. The protagonist hurled the sphere into the open stretch, and right then, dozens of brand new houses erupted into existence all around the area. I told him he was pure magic like a god walking the earth, and he just shrugged it off, saying I was flattering him because it was all his skills doing the talking. The girl said she knows the skill, but she doesn't think anything out there hits harder than this one. Then she tried to call him a transmitter, and before she could finish, she snapped the topic and warned, "This place is hell." The slime surged toward him and begged to fill the empty spaces inside the houses, and Kusaka nodded without hesitation. The protagonist handed out their tasks, then mapped everything around the city of Anin housing, shops, and the needed land so the whole city could finally be completed. Out of nowhere, Kusaka's mind latched onto one question: what was the creation skill really capable of? And the more he stared at it, the more he felt there was hidden power in there, waiting to explode. Lyric practically burst with joy, shouting that Lenquote's discovery today was a colossal breakthrough for archaeology, and then he hurried to His Majesty to report everything about the two of them. At that exact moment, everything juddered with an unsettling tremor, and Iris, along with the man, went completely still from shock. After what felt like forever, it all went silent. Then everyone started firing questions. Was that shaking real? Like an actual earthquake? Then boom, short and super suspicious, right? Then the slime started shrieking, warning that something terrible just happened, and demanded he follow it. After a while, they finally reached the spot. Slime practically shouted that this was it. Right ahead stood a huge black stelae packed with a seal, and Kusaka immediately blurted, "What is this?" The slime blurted that it had grown through the earthquake, And when Iris spotted the seal's pattern, she asked the big question, did the golem have the same one? The protagonist nodded, confirming it. Lyric realized transfer magic was at work the moment he spotted it. Then the instant his fingers touched the place, his body vanished. Iris demanded his opinion, and Kusaka shot back that they couldn't leave him behind. Then both of them pressed their hands to the seal at the exact same moment. They blinked into a brand new, unknown place, and the main character snapped out a map. Only one path led forward. Then Lyric spotted them and lit up with relief. Suddenly, Kusaka's instincts screamed and he spun toward the man, yelling for him to get behind them because a monster could be lurking right there. Right then, a slime and a shard of glass snapped into existence in front of them. Hach Talichta. But before they could judge him, he snapped back, "You've got it all wrong. I'm not some bad monster." Slime nudged his glasses into place and grinned, saying he was thrilled to finally meet his owner, just a tiny, bespectacled slime, all ready to help like the little helper slugs. The protagonist asked what this place was, and he said, "This is the deepest part of the underground city." While the Black Dragon, one of the disasters they were tracking, raged ahead. Kusaka fired off a question, asking if any other disasters were out there, and the assistant shot back that there were tons more. Lyric gasped that this discovery was unreal. Then the slime leaned in and said, "Hold up, I'm about to drop something huge. This place is always held up by support, but if the right conditions hit, that lifeline gets cut, then..." Kusaka leaned in and demanded, "So the black demon gets resurrected," and Slime answered with a straight-up yes. He couldn't stop spiraling the moment he remembered it. The Black Dragon was no fairy tale. It wiped out an ancient civilization. Slime told everyone that up in the north of the Phaetos Mountains, there's a gigantic mountain where a black dragon is hunkered down, and with less than 10 days left, it's about to wake up. He told them, "I'll tell you about the Black Dragon." But first we had to move, so we followed him and changed locations. Slime told Kusaku that this magical tool could recreate any image. Then he grabbed the moment and demanded Kusaku touch it. The ball announced the lock was gone so the renewal could begin, and Oshikiri started stirring again. This message dates back a jaw-dropping 4,000 years, and they're already rebuilding one of the cities from back then. The dragon spewed a massive sphere from its mouth, and in one deadly blast, the whole city went up in flames, houses burning, people screaming. After a while, the whole city got obliterated by one brutal blast. Kusaka stood there, utterly stunned. Slime yelled that over 100 people got wiped out, and in the blink of an eye, thousands of lives vanished. Then revealed the truth. The Fitcha creature was a black dragon. This isn't just some random monster. Our main character has never seen anything like it before. Iris swore it felt like an earthquake or a flood. But now we're learning the truth. It's not one disaster, it's many. Lyric's hands were trembling with pure fear, and he snapped that it was time to head back to Onin because they had to get everyone out and into the underground city. Now, the main character nodded, and Slime fired back that they'd still got at least 3 days in the tank because they had to scramble to evacuate before it was too late. The slime with the glasses flicked some movement magic and shoved them straight to the entrance, then bolted off toward Anin. As they stepped into the guild, the room filled with pure worry, like everyone knew something was wrong then. Kusaka frowned and muttered that it was way too strange because something was definitely brewing. Millie greeted them and asked about the underground city. Then Lyric burst in, explaining it wasn't some random place, but a hidden home of an ancient civilization. The girl insisted it was a real historical find, and normally they'd be celebrating right now, but not this time. Kusaka cut in, demanding to know what the heck happened. Mulia snapped that stampede signs were already showing up in the north, near the Phaetos Mountains and Kale. The protagonist shoved the question at her again. Iris told me it's basically a whole stampede of monsters starting with thousands, then swelling into tens of thousands, all charging together. Around 10 a.m. today, a massive surge of magical energy hit the air so hard everyone noticed it immediately. The guild's numbers are terrifying. 50,000 monsters are set to swarm that nest in just 3 days, and yeah, it checks out because they're gearing up to hit Onin City. Milia's breath caught. She started panicking, yelling about a catastrophe because Onin's vanguard was already wiped out 3 months ago during the previous stampede. Onon's only real military muscle is a shaky mix of guild mercenaries and adventurers, and defending the city is going to be brutally hard. So she throws out one huge question. Do you really think an underground city could be the perfect shelter? They locked eyes. Then the main character grinned and said, "Don't worry, there won't be any problems." Milia blinked in disbelief as she found herself in a hidden underground city, and she couldn't stop herself from blurting, "Wait, we're really down here." Zaiton Barden, the guild's boss, leaned in and told the main character he was totally unhinged. Then he burst into laughter. He told Kusaka that every single resident of Anan City could squeeze into this place, and he begged him to let them take shelter here. So the protagonist smirked and said, "That was the plan from the start." And the leader bowed his head, thanking him like it sealed the deal. Milia promised they'd safely evacuate every last resident of Anan too. The protagonist said he had a bunch of questions he needed to hash out. Then his mind snapped to one thing: he had to report the black dragon. Right when he was about to strike up a conversation, the slimy guy with glasses snapped that this was already getting out of hand. The protagonist tried to cool him down, but the slime shot back, asking if that whole crush in the Phaetos Mountains up in the north really started the way everyone said wasn't that right. He told us that right before any huge crush, a ton of magical particles get born, and then they start rattling like something enormous is about to break. And somehow that black dragon lying there looked like it might wake up way sooner than anyone guessed. So he turned to Kusaka and demanded, "What do we do?" Every team member froze on the spot, staring in awe as the black dragon looped through the sky, blasting fireballs nonstop, each hit detonating into a wrecking ball explosion that shook the earth and the heavens together. Shocked out of her mind by what she just saw, she blurted that there was no way anyone could imagine how close they'd come to all that destruction. Her eyes went wide with terror as she realized a catastrophe would have hit them too if they'd been anywhere nearby. That man admits it all turned worse because the stampede hit. And in the chaos behind him, Kusaka-ku rushes over, gently comforting the girl, asking if she's all right. Slime snaps that the stampede hit way earlier than anyone predicted and then asks, "Do we really have enough time to make it to tomorrow?" After he finally put the pieces together, the boy realized something terrifying: both the black dragon and the army of monsters were about to hit Onin City at the exact same time. The man asks if he should head back to Onin to prep for the evacuation, and Kusaka-ku snaps that they'll be there soon. Then gets hooked on a slime and blurts that he wants to show him something, leaving the hero repeating the words in disbelief. Right in front of Kao's eyes, 3 towering polished stone doors burst into view, each carved with intricate patterns, and beside them a tiny slug strutted with pure confidence, ready to follow the hero anywhere. The bespectacled slime swore that an ancient legend says some 4,000 years ago, deep in a gloomy crypt, priceless treasures were sealed away for a single chosen master. Ku snapped his attention to his assistant and asked, with bated breath, which of the 3 doors would finally lead them to their cherished goal, while his eyes darted between those arched passages, hunting for a sign, and his mind scrambled to dredge up whatever he'd once known. Finally, as it all clicks, Slime blurts out, "Hero's left door demon ruler's middle sage, right?" Then he stuns himself by adding, "But the hero isn't any of them," and Slime jumps back in shock. Suddenly, a voice boomed. "Kusakao's status is verified. The hidden demand is met, and the doors swing wide open." After they made up their minds, the whole group slipped through the left door, and the bespectacled slime, still reeling in mild shock, stared at his friends and stammered, totally lost about what was happening. In that huge, eerie hall, the walls were dressed with one strange relic, an ancient magical sword. Its chipped blade barely flickered in the weak light, casting this haunted glow that screamed, "Something massive is hiding here," right behind that broken fragment of the great weapon. In front of them lay a legendary sword, the stuff of ancient myths, forged for the warriors who once defeated the Black Dragon, but after that battle exactly 4,000 years ago, its power had shattered and its integrity was gone. Slime warned that this weapon could rewrite the future and drag back the legendary days of glory and valor. Then Kao swallowed hard and objected because he insisted he was just an ordinary man. The young man made his choice. He was going for that legendary sword then. The moment his hand reached out, the blade's image vanished into thin air, and all that remained was a haunting, ghostly glow. With his palm stretched out, the young man felt the air itself shake, and a glowing portal tore open in the center of the room. Then a legendary sword slid out of the darkness, spinning slowly like it had a mind of its own. Once Kukonli snapped back into reality, the curious assistant blurted out how the master even managed to fix that broken weapon. Kukonli told him it was the rare creation skill, letting him rebuild that ancient relic into a brand new form. Then the young man told him this. The sword's secret didn't come from training. It hit by accident when he stashed a shard of the blade in his inventory, and little by little he uncovered his own crazy talent. The power to strengthen and repair anything. God's blessing. A supercharges the weapon's strength and edge, and it even lets it self-repair. Then you've got Dragon Slayer S boosting both the hero and the sword itself, and when you unleash God's slash and pour magic into the blade, it lands a brutal, crushing strike. He forged the ultimate sword to butcher dragons. Now pair that with his power, and he'll finally step up as the Black Dragon's real worthy opponent. The young hero leaned toward his tiny assistant and asked if they should check the last 2 doors, so the little slug didn't even think twice, nodded hard, and got ready to tag along. They spotted a massive robot, an enchanted railgun built to fire jaw-dropping, long-range shots that could scorch anything in their path, and it was exactly what they needed to take down the stampede. Ku lunged for the priceless find, but the slime snapped the moment he reached, basically warning him, "Trying to take it will get you wrecked." To pull it out, you've got to use the Demon Lord's massive storage, and you can't help but wonder, is it truly infinite? Because of Kawasaki's cursed origin, Ku shoved his way to infinity, then snapped, thought of a plan, and slammed down a magic seal. The hero snapped his fingers, and his loyal guardian golem answered, crushing all those long doubts, then rumbled into view like the final word itself, bowing with a loud, formal greeting straight in front of his master. Gullum and Ku locked hands, grinning like they'd just found their way to the perfect deal, then the hero caught it. This looked like the next level, advanced A+ processing. The stone protector laid a steady hand on his chest, then snapped his eyes to his master with respect with a deep, booming voice. He swore he'd be ready to help anytime the toughest moments demanded it. The Dalam spoke to the slug like they were old friends, urging it to work together, and even with its nerves screaming, the slug still agreed to cooperate. Ku said, bold as brass, that he'd come through for him the moment it mattered most. Then the stone guardian, still unshaken and dignified, rumbled back in a low, deep voice that he'd wait patiently for his master's command. After they wrapped up the talk, the young man declared, "All right, we're moving on straight to the next door." And the slime snapped back, claiming its job was to keep up with Komi, since she was the one who always fell behind the main action. They unearthed another relic, a battered, cracked shield, and those jagged shards screamed one thing: its owner had fought through a mountain of battles. Slug dug into the history and said, according to legend, this was the very shield the brave heroes used in that massive battle 4,000 years ago, where they marched straight at the Black Dragon himself. Slime said the Black Dragon must have destroyed it beyond repair, so even the sage couldn't fix it, and they decided to track down the owner and see if he could restore it. Slime weighed how his master could even bring this artifact back, and the answer hit fast. The young man hung his head and admitted he just didn't have the skill or knowledge to fix it. The young man snapped that the real trouble was the shield's own build packed with tons of separate parts, where every single link demanded its own special method and know-how, yet the boy's thoughts kept getting yanked away by the slime's ringing voice. To fix the product, they had to track down an insane treasure, the dragon god's ruby, a stone that shows up just once every 10,000 years and only grows in the brutal, hard-to-reach wilds of the legendary Dragonland. After weighing everything, Ku hung his head and admitted he couldn't afford to chase the distant land of dragons, too expensive, too dangerous, and not enough time to risk it. With that crushing golem on your side and an experienced Graham guiding the way, you'll bulldoze every problem and seize the upper hand on the enemy, no matter how messy the tasks get. The slug glided up to its owner, praising his hard work like it meant something, then flat out declared its loyalty and begged to keep working together. The assistant stared at the owner, then offered a wild idea: link the spirits to the owner's soul, forge a tight mind-to-mind bond, and let them team up through him to sharpen the kid's natural gifts. Cow's whole world jolted. He just stood there, silent as stone, for a few breathless seconds, trying to wrap his head around what it would mean to be tied to something like that. With a cheerful grin, the slugs talked it up. This was a special gift made to crank up the owner's luck, and when trouble hit, the spirit would be summoned to share its energy, fueling them to power through every obstacle. With a grin, Ku gently brushed his little assistant's smooth head and said, the gift was a super useful skill, one he'd be thrilled to have in the next campaigns and battles. Suddenly, this whole spiritual world thing grabbed the young man by the gut. He studied the eerie signs and symbols around him, then spiraled into deep, headfirst questions about the beings everyone calls spirits. These beings were born from human feelings: love, rage, hope, and most folks never even clock them still. Invisible spirits hover nearby, quietly nudging how people live and what they do. Back at home, Ko blurted out to Iris, "How's the evacuation going?" Iris smiled and said, "So far, everything's holding steady thanks to the guild. Nobody's panicking." The owner lit up when he heard it. Then he hurried to tell Iris what he'd pulled from the crypt and how those finds would crush the Black Dragon in the coming battle. Iris wrestled with the thought, then Kusakako demanded to know what happened. So Iris asked if she'd already told her the real reasons they were hunting ancient ruins from other civilizations. Long ago, a young girl tore herself away from her homeland, leaving the dragon-filled lands behind, chasing one burning dream to uncover the priceless legacy of the past: the shield of the dragon god. Ku froze in place, stared with wide eyes, stunned by what he'd just heard, trying to wrap his head around how huge everything was behind that one simple encounter with the girl. That fire was still mourning a battle with a dragon from 4,000 years ago, so she charged off to hunt the broken ruins. Kusaka tossed out a cocky line that screamed, "I've got this," and told her flat out that the shield coming back wouldn't change a thing for her, then swore the girl would soon reclaim the shield again. The girl spread her palms toward him and stared with bright, expectant eyes, and the second Ku saw it, his whole body tensed, his mind spun with indecision and a flash of confusion. The girl whipped around to Kus and fired off the big question. Did he really have the skill to wield the magic of creation and restore the shield to its perfect, ideal state? He shot back that it was impossible, at least for now, because the slime claimed he had to get his hands on the dragon god ruby. She slid her fingers into the huge travel bag and dug through it, searching every inch like she could feel the exact thing she needed. The girl handed the gem over to her companion, and when his eyes met it, she grinned, smooth, red, and shimmering with swirling shades of color. The stone was faintly warm, and just like the Iris people swore, If the transmitter's got a shield, you'd better deck it out with a ruby. Staring hard at the gift, Ku kept his voice steady and asked plain and calm if he could use the stone. Right out of the magical portal's depths, that legendary shield burst into the world like it was yanked by invisible magic strings, silver armor blazing with clean, perfect shine, etched with elegant patterns and stitched with gorgeous stone inlays. Her face flickered, pure shock slammed in. The boy caught it right away and blurted, worried, if something terrible had happened, then leaned in, studying her expression like it might crack into answers. Iris told him, even if that shield gets fully repaired, I still can't use it. I need the skill Maiden of the Dragon God Sanctuary. Then she waved it off and said it wasn't a problem at all. Then she, with a sly little smile, she clocked it. This skill was already in her bag. An ancient dragon legend swears that every few hundred years, a sanctuary maiden of the dragon god's skill is born like fate, crawling out of the sky. Whoever wields this skill has two missions. Track down the shield, then hand it to the Reborn. Every maiden before Iris tried, and they all failed. But Iris, she was the first to pull off both. Cole fought with everything he had, and the question hit him out of nowhere, just how likely was it that a safe route even existed? In that dungeon, there was just one door that was supposed to unlock, but then every door in the temple blasted open at once. Welcoming the heroes as panic erupted, and right in the chaos, Iris finally showed he had exactly what they needed. Looks like it's happening right now. This whole chain of events reeks of something fishy, like some mystery puppeteer was quietly pulling strings, lining up coincidences to steer the group exactly where he needed them. As evening fell, Ko rolled into a quiet town and picked the cozy, silent Moon Hotel, famous for how warm and comfortable it made you feel, because after all that travel, he needed to recharge his strength for the next leg of his journey. When he finally dragged himself back to the guild to spill everything that happened, Zeton snapped that he should rest up and get ready for tomorrow. That tense silence squirmed in Ku's chest, ratcheting up his anxiety and screaming that disaster was coming. Then a relentless inner voice demanded he brace for what was about to hit. Suddenly, a knock rattled the door. Ku swung it open, and right there stood the guild secretary, Milia, asking him for a moment. The girl shot an apology for showing up late, then leaned in and told Cole she had urgent information that had to reach him right now. Milia warned, if the Black Dragon shows up, it'll be just Iris and Cole fighting, everyone else stays back and watches. Cole nodded and said he'd heard the same prophecy from others too. Then dropped the bomb only he and Iris could bring down the Black Dragon. And he swore that while Iris and Q clashed in the fight, the other adventurers would stand guard and shield the townspeople. Then he headed straight for the crypt to get ready. The girl nodded like it clicked. Then, aware this was pure danger, she slipped a small object into Q's hand without a sound. Turns out it's a ring. If someone spots a dragon from far away, they've got to dump the vessel empty, the one that carries the spirit's blessing. Cole stared at the inscription, yanked the vessel empty, and then flipped out. What was that phrase even supposed to mean? The more he tried to solve it, the more questions exploded in his head and the mystery stayed locked tight. Cole leaned in and asked Milia if she could read the text. She flashed a confident nod and said, her special skill lets her decipher all kinds of languages and writing systems. She was told this is exactly how much perfume you need. Milia's grandfather shoved a ring into his hands and warned him. Right then, this thing would only be passed to the one who'd step up and battle the dragon. Cuckoo stared at the ring, baffled. Then bam! A connection snapped into place. Cuckoo Kwasaka met the special requirements, and suddenly the skill material improvement unlocked. The girl fired off a question, are you cursed? And the boy shrugged, saying he'd probably gained a brand new skill, then vowed he'd find out exactly what that power could do. Milia stood there, frozen solid eyes popped wide in shock because she'd always thought special talents were something you're born with and only a lucky few ever get. Milia figured out that Ku was the one true hero and that ring had to end up in his hands. She told him only he could unlock its power, and once Ku accepted, he swore he'd wield what he'd been given with dignity. The ring slid onto his finger like it was made for him. That boy had a crush on the ring, and the girl finally exhaled because now she could hand it to the right person, so she even joined the guild. Then the young man warned her, don't tell me you're leaving now. That girl's resolve didn't budge. She flat out vowed she wouldn't step a single inch until every duty they handed her was finished. Chusel decides to sit back and catch what comes next, betting that the kid can wipe out the monsters and the Black Dragon for good. The boy snapped that she'd totally overestimated him. Milia trusted him and told him to stop worrying. Then relief hit Kaside like a wave, washing his fears away. Suddenly, both of them yawned at the same time. She even laughed and said his yawn was contagious, and Ku shrugged, saying it was time to head home. Milia pushed to keep talking in the daytime, but right now they both needed to crash and recharge. She thanked the young man and told him she was counting on him, and the boy fired back the same loyalty. Next day, the younger man plopped on his bed and couldn't stop thinking, because that skill he got yesterday clearly sharpened his work on those same materials. If he forges 20 Fenrir skins, the recipe for a specific piece of equipment will suddenly unlock. He got his hands on the Fenrir cloak built to shrug off magical and physical attacks like nothing, and with this top-tier gear finally in his grip, All he had left to do was go all in tomorrow. Down in the underground city, people started crowding in and shouting greetings to the arriving guests. Suddenly, Ku burst onto the stage like a firework. He stepped up to the crowd, grinning and declaring himself Onen's go-getter adventurer plus the real master of the underground city. And then he realized too late that he'd started talking like some big shot without even meaning to. Ku's already got a place ready for everyone in town, and he tells you straight up to follow the guild's orders and head to the exact houses the residents were assigned. People cornered Ko like, "Yo, are you really a bear smasher?" And Ko didn't even hesitate. "Yeah, definitely." People kept shouting that he was strong and that his kindness was just as unstoppable. Iris giggled, and Kyle breathed a sigh of relief that he nailed the vibe, though. Yeah, it still felt a bit awkward. Milia suddenly burst up to him, closing the distance in a flash. She blurted out, panicked, that the scouting party had finally sent word monsters were already crawling out from the northern ridge of Mount Phatos. Ko is convinced their rampage is already in motion. Iris demanded to know how many people were already out, and Milia snapped back that around 70 were evacuated. Then the boys' stomach dropped, because they probably wouldn't reach them in time. The secretary blurts out that she hates putting more on their shoulders, but then she begs them to strike back and crush the monsters. The guys were all in, so they bolted out right away because there was zero time to waste. Iris and Ku stood face to face with Onan, right between the towering mountains. This was the battleground where monsters and humans would settle it for good. No hiding spots, no excuses, just sheer danger, so... The girl prayed it wouldn't rattle her. The young man leaned in and reassured her. Cow snapped his fingers and summoned a golem. Because if he was going to do anything, it was to turn everything into rubble. Iris said he was packed with surprises, and yeah, it all came down to his insane skill. The golem greeted its owner and immediately sensed a riot was about to explode. The owner fired a question at the golem, asking if he could handle it, and the golem shot back a confident yes. His eyes flared with excitement, and hot steam blasted out of his body. The robot even thanked its owner for all the weight he carried in its big plans. And right then, Ko agreed along with Iris. Staring off into the distance, yelled for him too. A whole swarm of monsters came charging in from miles away. The boys tensed up to strike while the golem stood frozen in place, waiting for its master's command. Coop snarled an order. Then the golem surged into the attack. The girl's eyes widened when she realized that golem was ridiculously strong. And the moment the attack landed, a massive explosion tore the air apart. If the golem wanted, it could wipe out a whole country without breaking a sweat. Cow's strength and mana surged, and even while the golem was slaughtering the monsters, the young man still soaked up all that experience. Then the golem shouted that the cooling was finished, and it started clearing out the rest. The guys jumped in too. "You take the left flank," they shouted, while Iris held the right side down. Iris went for a bet whoever crushes the fewest monsters earns the treat, and that young man has zero plans to fold. The boys scattered, and Ku grinned. This was his perfect chance to put Fenrir's cloak to the test. He burst forward with razor speed, and right as he noticed it, time seemed to crawl because a spider was right in front of him. Kyle slammed the spider in its abdomen with every ounce of strength he had. The young man chopped the next spider straight in two. He hit the ground and realized it all happened in just 2 seconds unreal speed, yet it still cost 6 mana points. With his recovery clocking in at just 1 every second, you'd better watch your step, Spider screamed. To stop the spider from slipping away, Ku kicked things off by unleashing Graham's God's Thunder. After he slashed that spider again, his level jumped. But the numbers were so absurd they didn't even feel real the more mana he poured into the God's Cut. The bigger the range and the heavier the power it unleashed. Poe decided to try the Goddess Plus Cut. Then out of nowhere, Graham snapped out of his focus, shoved his sword blade upward, and silenced Poe mid-moved. The Black Dragon is up, Dragon's S plus Smasher just got activated, and the real fight is starting right now. Iris launched the Dragon God Barrier EX and clashed with the wolves right then and there. She lunged forward and rammed the spear straight through the attacking wolf. She couldn't believe that somehow they just never ended. The girl was hemmed in by wolves then. Ku burst into a sprint and came charging in to save her. He even apologized for snatching her loot, then shot her a warning, "I'm coming for you." The fear and relief flickered across the girl's face. Then the golem snapped to life, called out to the owner, and promised it would handle the rest of the monsters so they could focus all their energy on the dragon fight. With that, it fired off a final wish, good luck. The boys thanked the robot and Iris beamed, saying they clicked so well while Ku smirked that it was because they were comrades in arms. Right then, the dragon was already closing in. And before all this, it had been hibernating up in the mountains. They decided to start their journey then. Bam! A massive black egg crashed into view right in front of them. The egg started cracking right along the seams and the boys froze mid-step. Who realized it was about to hatch then, bam! A flash ripped through the dark. A wrecked black dragon finally crawled into view, screaming like it was falling apart. Then everyone realized the only way to beat it was to unleash the dragon's Smasher Sword. This dragon isn't just trouble, it screams doom, promising to wipe out everything until the world is nothing but ashes. The dragon locked eyes with him, it stared like a spear, then it roared with a scream that ripped through the air. The young man flinched as a gut-punching scream ripped through the air. Even after every debuff wiped clean, he rushed up and asked the girl, "You okay?" Iris demanded everyone stop underestimating the dragon race. Kuek shouted it right after hearing the truth. Regular attacks won't scratch the dragon at all, and the only thing that can bring it down is this sword. He figures that if he hadn't stumbled onto Graham, he'd have bolted with his pride in the dirt, so he decided right then to test the sword. A massive black dragon loomed high in the sky, and the young man couldn't grab it no matter how hard he reached. Who snatched the sword and charged into the attack. He slammed his strike, and right then the dragon whirled around, staring at him in pure disbelief. Blood erupted from that jagged, stretched wound, and the dragon shrieked in pure, unbearable pain. The young man couldn't help grinning. He'd finally landed the hit. Even though it didn't kill him, that hit still landed like a truck and really did some damage. Ku snapped into an attack stance, and the moment he did, he realized he could actually hurt the dragon. From the dragon's mouth, a massive fireball of magic started to spill out, and the boy's face snapped from shock to full-on panic. He said he'd hand it over to Ares, then the girl nodded and agreed. She's going to repay him for saving her, and from here on out, she'll always stand between him and danger. Eris shoved up a tough shield, sealing the boy and herself inside its safety. A dragon burst into a screeching spiral above them, and the boys snapped to attention, staring straight up. The monster charged straight for the barrier, hell-bent on tearing it apart. The girl triggered the Dragon God Shield EX again, but this time the barrier still split wide open. The dragon went wide-eyed when the boys vanished, and the young man lunged in time to catch the girl before she hit the ground. Then Arise blurted out her thanks. The dragon suddenly realized it was trapped, roped up with a million tangled threads. He suddenly crumpled and started dropping to the ground, and dust clouds exploded around the boys. The dragon tore and thrashed, desperate to break free from the threads trapping it. The girl couldn't believe it. They had actually crushed the dragon, and it just didn't feel real. Kudu just had to finish him off. Too bad his mana was creeping back at 1 per second, and he only had 40 left. So the young man shoved every last drop of mana into his final strike. Right then, the dragon started remolding a deadly sphere of mana in midair, gearing up to smash the boys. Mana surged forward in roaring waves, racing to collide with the next stream. While Ku fought off swirling dust clouds, Ares burst in with a shield raised high and promised she'd protect him. The young man bowed his thanks to her, and they both prayed with shaking hearts that the dragon was finally dead and gone. They went on high alert, shaking like crazy because the dragon's terrifying eyes were suddenly staring out of the cloud of dust. The dragon burst its wings wide and roared at the top of its lungs. Even with bloodied wounds, the dragon hauled itself up and clawed its way into the sky. Right as he was already up in the sky, the boys gasped when the heavens suddenly went pitch black and Kusadili crumpled to his knees. Dizziness crashed over him and his stride started slipping away. It hit him when the Extinction Dragon activated its dark field. This move slurps the mana out of every creature within 2 kilometers. Kyle had no chance this dragon's skill dwarfed the hero's recovery, and sweat spilled down Iris's face as fear hit her hard. He realized the blessing of the god of speed won't save him if this fight drags out. Ku gets crushed by the disadvantage, so they have to beat that monster fast. He realized he had no choice left, so he snapped into an attack stance and dumped every last drop of mana straight into the Graham. He triggered the Gods/S, and the young man blasted the dragon with a monstrous stream of manitors. A massive spherical shield snapped into place around the dragon, sealing it in an instant. Ku blared that if this method failed, he'd be forced to throw in the towel. The mana stream launched from the boy, and he fought to smash the shield as it cracked and splintered. Sweat poured down the young man's face as strain crushed him. Then, only moments later, the shield finally shattered. Massive cracks ripped across the shield, and the dragon's confusion hit instantly. The mana flow blasted through the shield, but it still didn't have the power to bring the dragon down. The young man finally broke the barrier, only to find his mana completely drained dry. The dragon threw its head back and unleashed a brutal scream that shook the air. A massive burst of fire erupted from the dragon's mouth, scorching everything it touched. Iris threw herself into protecting Ku, who could barely stay upright from the sheer powerlessness crushing him. She kept blasting the massive stream of fire with everything she had. Then the girl's shields finally splintered and cracked. Finally, the shield exploded into shards and a scorching rain of fire poured down on her. Kuhl's body goes rigid with fear, and in that split second, he's convinced he's about to be ripped straight into the next world. While he was stuck in that brutal black company, death didn't scare him much, but the moment he got reborn into this new world, life suddenly clicked, and he started living for real. He was a total outsider here, yet everyone greeted him with open arms, and that warmth mattered to him so much he couldn't bear to lose it. Who would dare say no to the next world? He isn't risking it. He wants to live. He promises he'll rip his way back home to everyone who's been waiting for him. Suddenly, the mark of Mata started pouring out of the ring. Then it hit him. If a dragon showed up out at a distance, he had to use that ring. Every condition checks out, boom. The spirit ring snaps to life for a temporary burst of power. Kawas mana kept climbing past the limit higher and higher. He knew this was his moment. He had to charge the dragon and bring him down for good. The boy poured a massive rush of mana into the dragon, while Iris crumpled nearby, trapped in helpless powerlessness. Flames and mana crashed together in a blinding burst, and the hero screamed as the dragon tore across the sky. The Mana Flow one and the Dragon 2 got blasted into ash, burned clean to the bone. The dragon slammed onto the earth and roared in agony. The monster lunged back in, and right then the hero snapped into defense and started swinging back. Ku hurled his attack at the dragon and smashed it to victory. The dragon crashed to the ground, and the boy just stood there, eyes locked on the chaos unfolding. Kurash gasped for air after the brutal fight, just as the dragon vanished into thin air. Back then, when the black dragon scorched the world into ashes, a song drifted in from far away. When ancient people built an underground city, the worshippers lifted to the surface for 3 straight days and nights, became one single spirit. He couldn't take on the black dragon back then, but years later, he finally returned, ready to thank the one who made him. Ko was the one who answered the 4,000-year-old spirit's call, and that earned them the best reward imaginable. Days after they toasted their win over the black dragon, the whole city went all out and threw a legendary feast. Thanks to Cow and Iris, everyone made it through unscathed, and people lifted their glasses high to them in pure gratitude. The crowd erupted, showering the young man with praise because he just proved he's no ordinary badass a bear crusher. So now they're really asking, should he be called a dragon crusher instead? They pulled him in for a drink because he'd been a hero all day. A girl barreled up to him and thanked him for his amazing work, then leaned in and insisted he raise a drink and toast to his health. Right as the celebration was winding down, Iris and Ku sat on a bench when a stranger suddenly rolled up, flashed them a grin, and said, "Hey, it was Chrome San, and he poured out thanks to the boy for saving their city." He was exactly what the man had expected, while Ku insisted he wasn't worthy of respect or praise, saying it was all just luck. When Kyle looked back, it hit him. Pure coincidence had landed perfectly at finding the underground city, stumbling on Graham's divine dragon shield, and then getting the spirit ring. This is terrifying, and it makes him wonder if he somehow missed something. Then, out of nowhere, a man shouts his name. He told me this: showing your best self and switching up your different sides are 2 totally different moves. And the people who can do that smoothly shine even brighter the moment someone praises them. Honestly, it's best to let fate run the show. Kusha realized he had to turn luck into his biggest weapon. Prompson snapped that this was exactly what he meant. The kid had pulled off incredible feats, proving just how strong he really was, and that was something anyone would be proud of. He told Cal to trust himself. Starting right now, he would sit tight and wait for word on his fresh wins, minute by minute. The boy stared at the Chrome Sans words, and suddenly it clicked. He could never have read this right if he'd stayed in Japan. Now he finally understood, and trusting himself a little more didn't feel risky anymore. The very next day, a stunning girl in elegant clothes waited by the fountain for him. Yep, it was Iris. She told him, right to his face, that today she was under his command. Then the young man nodded and agreed. In that dress, she looked like a whole different person to him. They bolted toward the restaurant, and Ku couldn't stop raving that the food was unreal, right? Like last time, Iris chimed in that this was exactly the spot they'd talked about ancient civilization before. Was it really her skill that saved everyone? Because if not, Onan would have been evacuated. Even with the panic and rampage raging through everything, the black dragon was on another level, absolutely terrifying. And honestly, that girl didn't want to see him again. Iris told him, "The black dragon isn't the only problem out there." And the young man nodded, agreeing. The boy said, "If another disaster hits, I'll face it with summoning trouble." The girl stared and asked, "So you really got a brand new skill?" He grinned and said, "Yeah, I did." After he crushed the black dragon, he boosted his skill by 19 and unlocked brand new powers, summoning disasters. By spending those Lana points, he summons a beast he controls with his own will. The girl warned that with one call, the chaos multiplies, so yeah, maybe he's the real trouble all along. Ku insisted he was just a regular guy, no matter how anyone sized him up, and Iris laughed, saying she truly believed he was a good person. On his way to the restaurant, the young man ran into Amelia, and he kept insisting she'd be back at the Royal Headquarters Guild any day now, because if she left, this place would suddenly go dead quiet. Ku promised them a reward waiting in the capital if they took down the Black Dragon. And the girl snapped in shock at how fast that rumor spread. Neither of them has a clue what life is about to throw at them. 5 years ago, Iris fled her country. Clueless that her life would spiral into something this wild, Cope remained silent. The truth hit hard. Her own country's people looked right through her. The young man's joking face vanished. He went dead serious and demanded to know why this happened. She blurted out that she had a twin sister named Ferris and that she also had the power of the Maiden of the Dragon God Shrine. Who said it was strange? Turns out that rare scale isn't something humans just stumble on once every few hundred years. Iris was the Maiden of the Dragon God Shrine, trained in spear mastery, while Pharisees was also a Maiden of the Dragon God Shrine, her gift honed in premonition. Her foresight crushed every coming danger. She saw each threat before it even showed up. At 6 years old, she was crowned a real divine maiden, and Iris's head drooped. She and Ferris trained inside the temple together, but she was only there to back things up in case they needed her. But then right as the girl hit 5 years old, monsters stormed the temple, and in the chaos, Ferris was killed. The Divine Maidens got one mission: hunt down the Divine Dragon Shield and hand the ruby back to its rightful owner. So the moment Iris hit 16, she took off with 3 guards in tow. 3 days later, the trip money vanished, and so did the guards. It slammed itself into her memory. The young man told her he understood. She downed a glass of wine because, thanks to Koiris, she finally finished her duty. Now she wasn't ashamed to stand there and face that girl, and she thanked the young man from the bottom of her heart. He gave a sly chuckle and leaned in, asking what she planned to do next. Would she really go back to her homeland? Iris grinned and said she'd delay that for as long as she possibly could. She asked Kao if he'd keep drifting, and he grinned and said he'd quit only after he'd seen every last amazing thing the world had to offer. The girl wanted to join him, so he asked, "Won't you get bored?" But Iris just grinned. Sure, it was going to be a blast. The young man insisted she'd changed, even though the girl swore nothing about her had. Until that moment, she truly believed nobody would ever lift her up, that she was alone in this world with 0 friends, and that's why she unleashed her powers just to stay alive. But now she's not alone thanks to Ku, who shot her a curious look and asked her a question. She kept insisting that after he smashed the Black Dragon, he rushed in to save her, so he didn't just rescue her, he lit up her whole heart. She can't believe she found him. Now she's bursting with joy, ready to stick with him everywhere from this day on. By the time the night swallowed the streets, they slipped out of the restaurant, and the girl leaned in to tell him to pretend this whole conversation never happened. She swore it was the alcohol, then the young man figured he'd drank way too much. And Iris demanded he confirm it, but he only smiled like he was getting away with something. Who dared ask her to relive that night's dinner? And she just nodded, totally down for it. They clasped hands tight and locked eyes like nothing else in the world mattered. They kept strolling together, fingers locked tight, step after step, like the world couldn't pull them apart. The girl shouted to Ko that the shore was packed with mushrooms, and she just knew he'd love staring at them. He nodded, thanked the girl for jumping in on the mission, and honestly, she helps him only because she wants to. The boy says they've been doing tons of things together lately, so when they head back to the guild, why not bring that same crew to the old group? Iris said they couldn't do it because of the huge rank gap, but she'd still be thrilled to team up with Kyle. She kept telling him, "No need to panic soon. The Adventurers Guild in the capital is going to send you an invitation, and once it arrives, you'll finally be able to take your exam and level up your rank. After that, they'll form a team together." The girl asked, and he nodded because Cool agreed fast. All because Iris wanted to hit the road with him. She told him she agreed too, because being around him was just plain fun, and then, out there among the trees, something suddenly caught her eye. They both stared at themselves and thought, "No, I'm the monster." But boom! Those weren't monsters at all, just harmless flying mushrooms that scatter the second they spot a person. Iris told him that if he ate this wild mushroom, he'd actually fly, like straight up fly. The thing was straight up bizarre, and Cal figured he could use those mushrooms to create something big. So he decided he'd better collect every last one. She kept going, threatening that if he really wanted to scoop them up, she'd lock down every escape route, yet there was no need because the youth triggered the Divine Speed X blessing. He shot through the trees like lightning, and the girl's eyes widened at how fast he moved. Kalkman laughed and said he'd grabbed 56 of them in just 2 seconds, then Iris couldn't see a single thing. They pushed on, grabbing every last piece of material they could find. When they finally rolled back into Annan, morning had already taken over the sky. A girl rushed up to him and shouted that she was his biggest fan, then begged to know his mission just so she could shake his hand, though she accidentally blurts, "Ko allowed it." She's obsessed with becoming an adventurer just like him, so she straight up asked, "Can I be your apprentice?" He got invited to grab a drink on the manager's tab, and the girl's mom swore that this was the first step toward her getting strong. He was still just as popular as ever, and it honestly started to worry him. Then boom, Milia spotted them, lit up, and thanked Arison and Kusan for their awesome work. They burst in right on time. Milia practically shouted that the Adventurers Guild had sent them 2 invitations. Ku stared at the letter about the award ceremony, and the secretary told them their whole trip would be set up by Scarlet's company, so they better swing by their office tomorrow when they're free. Scarlet is the company, and it's where Chrome San works then. Iris turns to Milia and asks, "Will you come to the awards ceremony?" And Milia grins, "Of course." She's drowning in work in this department, and she's convinced they'll only get to see each other at the awards ceremony. She just wants them to soak it all in. Every twist of the road is packed with gorgeous views, and Milia's certain they're going to have a blast. Iris and the crew locked eyes, and the young guy couldn't stand it anymore. He was dying to finally reach their destination. When that young man gets asked why he's out here, he admits it plain and simple. He just wants to try out the new gadgets he built before he crashes for the night. His first item, a ring forged from the very body of a black dragon. Fire Dragon Emperor ring exclusive gear, run by the effects executive Emperor EX, and it's an A+ upgrade you can't get anywhere else. EX has been unleashed as the Fire Emperor's next successor, and the Fire Emperor's power has now been stamped onto Kukasaka's ability list. Ko realized that somehow not everyone in this world could use magic. He needs a move that matches his power to a T. Fire Emperor is the top tier a mage can reach. He only taps into it when he's got the Fire Dragon Emperor ring on. Ku grinned and fired a blazing fire arrow straight from the ring. She crashed into the tree, and seconds later, the whole thing erupted into flames and fell to the ground. And that's exactly the kind of power he's going to need. He watched nothing burn but that one tree. Then he grinned and wondered if he could flip the script with an area attack, so he stared hard at the field. His aim is a 30-meter blast from here, and he's set to torch everything inside a 10-meter ring around the center. Then Ku thrusts his hand forward and fires off the fire arrow. A blazing ring of fire snapped into existence across the field. That boy's eyes lit up. This bell only burns what he truly needs, so he couldn't stop praising it as pure genius then. Out of nowhere, a sharp beep cut through the air. Turns out those rabbits were fighter rabbits monsters with bite, and a whole squad of them slammed into the boy who just picked them as perfect test targets. He unleashed his fire arrows and scorched the rabbits until they crumpled to the ground. The arrow slammed straight into their hearts, and Ku can crush rabbits without so much as cracking the material. He got hit with a notification level 92, and boom, his HP and MP shot up. His physical power surged too, but the amount was way too much. Like the game was over-buffing him. Now he couldn't wait. He tested the potion he brewed from flying and wet mushrooms, and boom, a full flight potion kicked in, granting him Wind Blessing S. He couldn't stop wondering what it would feel like to soar into the sky. Then the potion hit his tongue. Sweet and delicious as Reminisce sipped it like fine Japanese sake. He burst off the ground and committed to climbing higher into the sky. Up in the clouds, Ku couldn't help but think it was absolutely breathtaking. After that, he tried every trick for flying, grinning the whole way through the sky until the magic finally faded, and midnight had already passed when he slipped back to the pavilion. The boy whipped up a fresh recipe, then turned it into a brand new t-shirt that felt unbelievably good. He slipped into bed, settled in, closed his eyes, and drifted off into calm sleep. Iris says she's lost count of how many times they've come here, but the view still blows her away, and Kua nods like, yeah, same. The owner got swarmed with cheerful slugs, and the boys immediately realized this whole thing felt wildly awkward. They're about to bail on Onin City, and once they leave, they won't be able to head back to the underground city anytime soon. The slugs whisper that they're gonna feel lonely, and they're just waiting for their owner to show up that day, terrified he won't come. Slime tells his owners he'd love to join them on a grand adventure, but he can't break free from the underground city's walls. Then the ring buzzed. Kuh, if you rewrite the underground city's main system, you can take one slime with you, and it demanded straight up if he wanted to hit the rewrite button. He nodded in agreement and demanded it happen right now, and Slime practically burst with joy. The slime's body started burning up from the inside, and he couldn't even wrap his head around what was happening to him. The young man started to blurt out, "Right now, I'm rewriting the system." And once he finished, the slimes would finally break free and head outside. The slime suddenly clocked what was going on, and it knew this meant one thing. It finally got its chance to stick with its beloved owner. Joy and anticipation burst through him as he stared at the adventure ahead. He couldn't wait to travel right beside his master, acting as the escort. Ring demanded a name for the helper slime, and Iris hesitated, staring at him like, "You really want me to name it?" She threw out the names Ozes and Savannah, but Ku wasn't buying it still. The moment she brought up using the race name, it suddenly sounded perfect. Ku crouched down and gazed at his new buddy with pure affection, then offered him a name that fit just right. Sarara, the little slug, listened in complete silence and quietly echoed it back like he was testing how the name sounded in his mouth. The slug cheered, yelling that he was Sarara, thanked his master for that amazing name, and then his eyelids instantly got heavy until Sarara finally dozed off and fell asleep. He figured it had to be the system tweaking itself like a computer after an update that just needs a reboot. The slugs vowed they'd lull him with a gentle, tired rant until sleep finally claimed him, and they swore they were cooking up a pleasant surprise for their beloved owner. Pooh tiptoed over and asked his friends quietly if it was truly a gift. Then the moment they heard him, the little slug erupted into a shocked cry. Once the slug blurted out its thoughts loud as day, the young man heard it for sure, so did the nearby girl, who couldn't help but become an unwilling witness to this wild, curious conversation. The slug grilled the owner. "What on earth do you want to do on your journey?" He clutched a few things from the underground city, and the owner was about to inspect them, but when he realized it, he froze in pure shock. Right ahead of them sat a row of carts, and the little slime started talking fast, saying these were made by an ancient civilization, with every cart inside built completely different. The girl spotted a fully stocked kitchen, and the guy clocked 2 comfy, soft beds. Then he realized there was even a second floor in the other room. Iris told Slug that if they stitched all these rooms into one, they'd have a carriage fit for royalty, and Slug nodded right along with her. Sarada begs the owner to use creation on these carriages. He's sure they'll turn into something insanely cool, and Ku decides to dive right into the new recipe. He instantly clocked what needed doing, geared himself up, then made a huge call using the creation at once and slamming a powerful magical seal into action. A massive carriage rolled up in front of them, one of the biggest Kukusaka ever built, 2 stories tall. packed with a living room, dining room, kitchen, and even a bedroom. They stared at that majestic carriage in awe, marveling at how insanely huge it was. A jolt pinged from the ring after all that hard-earned experience. His skill creation got boosted to level 16, and the whole power of the skill unlocked more depth. Ku felt this upgrade was exactly what he needed. Until now, he could only sling creation power inside the spatial box. Now he can use creation outside it too, as long as he gets his hands on whatever he's shaping. The guy pushed for them to go inside, even though the girl could tell the only luxury here was the carriage itself. Then the first thing they spotted was the living room. That tiny slug kept bouncing on the sofa like it was pure magic, because to him it felt insanely soft, and Iris couldn't stop thinking it was incredible. Sarara then rolled the boys in for a full crew tour, pointing out every corner, the snug dining room, the stocked-up kitchen, and 2 huge bedrooms waiting upstairs on the 2nd floor. And in the bathroom, there's this gorgeous bathtub that just pulls you in, beautifully designed, fancy and comfy, turning the whole place into pure calm and cozy bliss. Ko was thrilled to finally call that fancy carriage their own, and Slug blurted, "It's a home on wheels." He leaned in and demanded to know how the owner planned to move that carriage, and Iris shot back that it was probably a beast of a thing, so they'd likely need 10 horses or even more. The moment the boys stepped out of the carriage, a stone golem crashed into view, bowed to its owner, and blared for an immediate command. The young man smiled back with confidence, then snapped his order. He told the massive stone golem to march straight to the entrance of the grand carriage waiting outside. The magic ring grilled Ku. Did he want to fuse the mighty Galem destroyer with a massive, majestic crew? After a beat, the kid nodded hard. Then the real chaos kicked in. Destroyer Golem's massive bulk started fusing into the crew's hull, swallowing it piece by piece until it emerged as a terrifying, awe-inspiring beast that felt beautiful and deadly in the same breath. And just like that, the majestic Destroyer Golem rose up supercharged when it fused with the majestic crew, and the Magic Core's original power got massively boosted. That majestic carriage thundered forward so fast the boys were going to smash their way to their destination way quicker than any ordinary carriage could. After swapping plans with Scarlet's crew, they ditched the rush, taking the coastal fort at a calm pace while they poked around every town along the way. 5 days remained before the departure, so Comet didn't waste a second and spent the time with everyone who'd helped him. He blitzed through cleaning the house and the living room, then restocked every supply of items and ingredients, 3 straight days of nonstop prep until Ku finally got a letter. Turns out it was from Relic. This letter claimed the first lord of these lands, Count Billion, was getting treatment in the northeastern city of Server. And the moment they heard that, they couldn't ignore his fear for the Count's condition, so they rushed to pay him a visit. The young man couldn't shake the thought. He was terrified that the ruler of these lands sat on his hands when the riot erupted and the Black Dragon crashed onto the scene. Relic caught wind of it and showed up to see for himself because he always took his job dead seriously, yet that young man was still panicking, convinced something terrible had happened to him. Relic fired off a letter to Coruscant telling him he'd be getting an award in the capital and that he's planning to show up for the ceremony too. Ku suspected the doctor was an insurance fraudster, and that tiny discovery lit a spark of hope in him. Maybe fate would let him cross paths with the guy soon and finally get the real answers he needed. The very next day, the boy sprinted to find a tourist guide and books for the trip. Then, bam, he spotted millions of people hiding among the shelves. The girl's steps were cut short by a sudden jolt. She caught a barely visible thing, stumbled, and lost her balance. And the next second, the stack of books in her arms crashed to the floor with a loud, messy thud. He snatched up the books in a rush, shot back to the girl, and asked if she was okay then. Shocked by the care, Amelia stared at him in silence and blurted his name in disbelief. The girl thanked Kyle warmly for bringing the book to her home, then wouldn't let up until he promised she could repay him and show her gratitude her own way. Because she'd looked out for him before, the young man figured he was just paying her back then. Amelia proved she wasn't just sweet, she was a total bookworm who actually devoured real novels. She'd hate herself for leaving him stuck with her debt. And then the young man asked straight up if she planned to show up at the upcoming award ceremony. Ku told him she'd settle the debt when they finally met in the capital, then promised to put him on to the best restaurants and local spots, leaving him completely at her mercy for the whole plan. Amelia finally got what he meant, clocked every detail, and started planning how she'd repay that young man because when the girl said he'd regret handing her time to prepare, she grinned and couldn't wait for their next meeting. The boy mulled it over, then decided the days about to hit the capital would be absolutely wild, so big and exciting they'd demand his full attention. On the day they set off, the whole hometown wrapped the kids in heartfelt goodbyes. And right in the middle of all that emotion, Amelia stepped forward, handing them an elegant bouquet of roses and promising them a joyful journey ahead. The golem demanded, "Are we ready to leave?" And the owner nodded like a champion. Then they marched out of Onan City, locked in, ready to slam headfirst into whatever new adventures and troubles waited ahead. On they went, and just like that, the travelers snagged Sarara too. He happily trotted right beside them, grinning so hard his face practically glowed from the gift Iris gave him. And now Ku could spot him instantly instead of mixing him up with some wild slime. Slime beamed at the majestic golem, wiggled his soft body in a cheerful wave, and leaned in with real curiosity, asking what name people usually gave a companion as weird as this. The golem kept blurting the same question, totally baffled, like, "Wait, what did you say?" Cuss snapped to attention because he never even named his stone buddy. And just like that, the crew started throwing around name ideas. Deste, Tom Tom, Dest. Then they picked the last one, and the friends finally introduced their new comrade with that exact name. The travelers finally nailed the perfect name for their mighty golem destroyer. Then Ready at last cheered and tore off straight toward the loud, glorious heart of the land, its magnificent capital. Today, the crew set their sights on Tao, a jaw-dropping town that's famous way beyond the region. For one thing, melt-in-your-mouth meat. Especially the legendary beef dishes made from the finest local cattle. In this spot called Meat Street, meat restaurants line up like a hungry parade while this boy just sat there wondering when he'd last read a book at a slow, easy pace. Once Ku finally became a full-fledged member of society, he threw himself into work every single day like he'd stumbled into a dream where peace was just waiting for him. Who just yanked him out of his sleep, his slug buddy telling him, "Wake up!" And when his eyes finally opened, he saw the whole crew already lined up at the towering gates of the ancient city of Toul, itching to barge in and start the next wild adventure. The moment the crew slipped through the gates into the Twin Cities, Suraru got hit with total shock. So many people came running to greet them, and the whole place was pure chaos, way too hectic for anything to feel calm. Out of nowhere, a monster crashes into the city. Then Ku gets yanked to a stop by a knight who demands, "Are you the Dragon Slayer?" And Ku nods right away. And Kuta. Right in front of the young adventurers, a strange man suddenly crumpled to the ground, gasping for help as he begged to save his city. And the moment they heard it, the heroes knew something brutal was coming their way. At the table, the hero locked eyes with a man who bowed and apologized for bothering him, then begged for help. Turns out that polite stranger was Popolo, the legendary head of the Adventurers Guild. The young hero leaned on the guildmaster and begged for every last detail about what was tearing up the town of Tu, and Popolo let out a heavy sigh before starting his account, laying bare the real truth of what was going on. A terrifying S-plus monster cursed with the name Trent the Devil has just erupted across the northwestern plains, and the locals and travelers are losing their minds with fear. Once it goes on a rampage, it can smash the city of Tu in under half a day, and with its razor-sharp regeneration, you can barely even slow it down. So for now, Popolo has begged a traveling priest to take it down. But it all hit way too fast, so the adventurers couldn't even get the city's people out, let alone form a militia to fight the monster. He'd heard about Kusama's insane achievements and begged him to unleash that power to smash the monster. Kusama said yes, but only if the boy cleared up one tiny detail first. The young man took down the Black Dragon no solo act because Iris had his back and Suru swore it. Iris shielded the master from those scorching flames using the Dragon God's shield. Even with everything on the line, the man still had the nerve to beg two young heroes to save the city, turning them into Tue's last lifeline, the only shot at stopping a full-blown catastrophe. Slug pressed the boys for answers. Why were they up on the carriage? Iris and Ku shot back that they wanted a better view, and the girl wasted no time thanking the boy for what he said in the adventure leader's office. He straight up admitted he'd tried to keep a friendship with Iris going, but she shot back, no hesitation, that she'd take up the protector role herself because that's her duty. On their journey, the young hero couldn't help staring at a colossal ancient tree. Then Ko's eyes lit up because he recognized it instantly as the legendary giant the guild's leader had warned them about. It turned out to be the monstrous Trent Devil, a giant thing that looked almost exactly like a normal tree, yet it was packed with horrifying powers that could ruin everything. The boy noticed giant chains on him, and Iris snapped that they were heavenly chains, an advanced, holy magic spell meant to lock down even a terrifying opponent. The girl insisted that only a handful of spellcasters could hold a monster like that in chains, and that whoever did it would need serious experience. Then the young man pointed out it was probably the same priest the guild leader Popolo mentioned. Suddenly, that tiny slug that had been clocking everything up close tugged the owner's attention, because the monster's massive metal chains started snapping and crumbling in a blink. The links that trapped the giant started shredding in seconds, crumbling into dust and ripping the captive monster loose slowly. It inched out of the wreckage, while the heroes clung to every single twitch with tense, breath-held focus. By the towering trunk of that eerie monster tree, a fragile girl steadied her breath and poured magic into the air, trying to pin down the furious beast as its massive roots thrashed and rattled, desperate to snap free. She started to run on empty magic, then crumpled to the ground while Kugayev shouted that they had to save the priest first. The golem got it instantly and surged forward even faster. The boy clocked the danger in an instant and launched forward like lightning, yanking the girl right out from under the monster tree's deadly roots before she could be crushed to death. Turns out that adult sorceress bit was a total lie. She's just a normal girl, and even with her age, she still pulled off miracles of courage when death itself came knocking. A massive branch from that monstrous tree slammed into the girl's protective magical shield with a brutal roar, shaking it so hard it trembled and started to crack like the shield was being pushed to the very edge of survival by a ruthless tree aggressor. She snapped on the legendary Dragon God Barrier X, right away flooding the team with a rock-solid energy dome that no blow could pierce, shielding them from the tree monster's brutal, world-smashing attacks. The tree kept hammering the strong magic shield, and while it raged, Ku shot Iris a heartfelt thank you. Then that slime ballooned bigger than before, practically bragging that it was going to guard the little girl's safety. Shock cracked across the young hero's face, and then snap! He shook it off and crouched beside his loyal slime, whispering for him to carry the girl carefully and lay her on a soft bed. Back in the thick of the battle, Ku fired off a question to his friend. How was Iris holding up? She said she felt way better than she did during the fight with the black dragon, but she admitted she still needed a breather. The young man barked an order to the Gollum servant, forcing it to back away from the tree monster, and as they retreated, the whole team widened the gap, finally putting a little breathing room between them and that deadly threat. With a spark of courage, the young warrior yanked his shining blade free and charged straight ahead, ready to gift the tree his attack. Then he threw every ounce of strength into the strike. The hero slammed the battle spell War Gods/S and unleashed a blade's worth of concentrated power, sending the strike straight at the giant tree's thick trunk like it meant to pierce clean through. With a perfectly timed strike, the hero sunk a brutal blow into the tree's right root, and a piercing scream ripped through the air so sharp it made the enemy's grip tighten and its whole body shudder, even from far away. That shredded root, like it was gone for good, suddenly sprang back to life right in front of our eyes because the monster could regenerate at lightning speed, and the young heroes nearly lost it from sheer shock. Iris clocked the shifting limbs and bolted over to warn her teammate. Those tree roots were inching in on them fast. Her voice came out sharp and clear, and Ku instantly got it. The young hero jammed the ring into action, then barked a decisive command. Keep every branch of that ominous tree away so the whole team stayed safe. With a hard stare, the young man poured his fire magic into one blazing fire arrow. Then it screamed through the air like a blazing burst of power, headed straight for the target. After he loosed that blazing arrow, the hero froze on the spot, eyes locked on it as it tore through the air, crashing ahead in a blazing beam. Blazing flame carving a burning path of smoke and light straight toward its target. The breathtaking flight blew her away, and she couldn't stop herself from sharing every stunning detail. Then she turned to the young man and blurted, "So, how long ago did you learn magic?" And he grinned, saying he'd mastered it only recently. She told him, "If you can master fire magic, life gets way easier." And he shot back, "Why fire and what exactly changes?" She told me there are two ways to take down Trent the Devil. One is a brutal, long grind, where you just keep hitting him until his regeneration finally runs out. So yeah, Ku could loop around and fire with God of War S, slicing from a distance, but it would drag on for ages. The kid snapped, asking about the second method. The second move is a quick hit with fire magic. If the hero fully scorches the Trent Devil's head, the tree won't even get a chance to regrow. Iris pushed for the second method. The boy nodded fast, and together they knew one thing. Drag the fight and trouble multiplies. End it sooner, and they stand a better chance. Ku couldn't stop wondering which part of the tree the head belonged to, so he forced himself to imagine the whole thing was just burning away. He stared at that huge tree and had to close the distance, so he yanked out a flight potion he'd brewed from the flying mushrooms they'd collected because this stuff would let him soar. Iris snapped, asking if he was really going to gulp it down and dive at the monster from above, and the young man nodded, admitting she was right, then swore he'd do it right now. She clutched the boy's hand hard, slammed the brakes on his rush, and stared straight into his eyes. Then vowed, in a steady, unshakable voice, that she'd walk into battle with him, taking every danger and hardship side by side. She should lock in on defense and go for a coup during the attack. Trust me, it's the best move for both of them. Then he grabbed on tight, gulped the potion, and the ring snapped to life, yanking them off the ground. Iris was hit by a wave of doubt and nerves, instantly feeling her friend's mood shift as they asked if she was scared. Yet she kept her chin up because she had a loyal comrade right beside her, backing her all the way to victory. The boy figured she trusted him a ton, and he had to match that trust. He barked at Desk to back up to a safe distance, and the golem shifted without question, then leaned in and basically wished him luck for the fight. To fire that arrow and actually hit, the young hero had to soar right up close to the giant tree because only at the right distance could the flames reach their mark. The tree jerked into motion, stumbling forward like it just clocked the enemy's plan, trying to break free or strike back then. The enemy panicked, felt threatened, and slipped into hiding. The living tree lunged into the fight, and Iris snapped up a shield, sealing herself and the young man inside while the huge monster's strike slammed and failed to get through. The monstrous tree's giant branches flailed wildly, smashing blow after blow into Iris's crystal-clear dome again and again, trying to break the protection around the two people. Iris snapped her gaze stern and demanded Kui hit the ring right now so he could pour out the full power of his magic and slam a decisive strike straight at the Trenta Devil's head, the moment that would decide the whole fight. Iris snapped up a glowing shield to guard them from every incoming strike, while Kao poured everything he had into one blazing fire arrow blast aimed straight for the target. The heroes dug in and refused to budge as that monstrous plant surged forward, smashing them with its giant roots and crushing branches so the whole team kept their eyes sharp, sprinted between shelters, and fired back with every countermeasure they could. Suddenly, the boys' eyes snapped to something wild. The giant wooden monster's towering head was blasted in thick smoke, and the whole thing started to wobble like it couldn't hold itself together as it leaned hard to one side. The damage screamed through every cracked, broken spot. The rescued priestess lay in a soft bed, sleeping like a stone after that brutal day of testing, while Iris stayed right by her side, still grinning that she'd made it through the nightmare enemy, and the pair's eyes locked on the jacket's emblem. Eyes blazing with excitement over her research, Iris broke down the symbolism's origin to everyone nearby. The emblem marked the followers of the god of war, and she swore she served that god. The crest's symbolism matched the exact curve of Q's sword like it was made for it. Right after that talk, Gollum watched closely and told its master that they'd finally reached the northern gate, where the next wave of trouble and encounters was waiting. The man thanked the boys for today and told them to rest. Then someone asked Ku if he was a dragon slayer. Ku nodded, and a whole crowd of soldiers suddenly appeared right in front of him. So, yeah, it was basically a Suicide Squad move, baiting themselves, praying Ku and Iris would need them, but somehow Ku and Iris still wiped the floor with them without a single bit of help. The man tells them they don't need to apologize then. Out of nowhere, he snaps his orders and has the soldiers haul cows straight to the Adventurers Guild. The kid was marched straight into the Adventurers Guild, face to face with guild leader Popolo, and he told him how he crushed the devil Trent. Then Popolo nodded like, "Good, I'm sending this straight to headquarters." Popolo speaks from the heart and swears that without Ku's intervention, the beautiful city of Tu would have been erased from existence. Then the guildmaster's face lights up with pure warmth and joy, and he blesses Ku, pouring out gratitude so intense it's almost impossible to put into words. The young man tossed aside the winner's laurels and made it clear every teammate mattered, and no one wins alone. He even reminded them how the priestess they saved wouldn't have made it if his friends hadn't teamed up and raced to rescue her in time. The elder nodded with pride at the hero's quiet modesty, picturing a true classic, and the sage even compared him to a young bull, powerful, noble, honest, and ready to toss aside his own comfort for the good of everyone. The guys wound up on Maya's Naya Street, and at Pucklecott's restaurant they tore into beefsteak with breadcrumbs and herbs, washed it down with homemade wine. Iris went, "This meat is so juicy and delicious," and the wine hit just as hard. Then, from the next table, you could hear people whispering like, "It's over," until Trent the Devil finally crashed the scene. The conversation kept rolling, and that young guy squirmed with awkward nerves because folks were talking about him, still not even in a bad way. So it somehow made him feel like he'd actually earned something. After that amazing dinner, they headed straight to the Moon Viewing Pavilion Hotel to crash for the night, because tomorrow they'd stroll the streets of Tu. The very next day, Soraro was still out cold, and Kao had a little breathing room before his meeting with Iris, so he grabbed the time and got to crafting with the devil, Trent they'd just crushed yesterday. Since he's still got no recipe in hand, he decides to turn the disassembled bits into alchemy instead. He yanked the Yggdrasil branch straight out of the magic portal, and the youth blurted, "Wait, aren't you talking about that giant tree from Scandinavian myth?" For now, he decided to use it as raw material, and then his mind raced to what he'd do next. Soru finally woke up. Sarara beamed and wished his master a bright good morning, then swore he'd hit the work right away, leaving Ku staring in surprise, totally hooked on what this slime helping gig was all about. As his tiny helper rolled around and stared at his own reflection in the mirror like it was art, Ku suddenly felt painfully awkward because the slug was basically bragging that he was perfectly round today too. After they traded greetings, the boys tore off toward Tao's southern side. Looks totally normal at first, but then you hit a huge, quiet pasture where cows just graze in silence. The round slug paraded all the animals for his master, and Ku fired back that the northern and southern areas were basically two different worlds because in the old tongue, two meant two-faced, and that made the name fit him perfectly. They tried shearing sheep while cracking open some farmer's cheese, and as that young man strode through the pasture, folks spotted him instantly Dragon Slayer. And before he could even catch his breath, the banquet kicked off. From the fortress wall, Iris called out that the farmers were beyond grateful to Kyle, then asked how the hero was feeling because he honestly hadn't expected such a warm welcome. The girl kept saying the farm had somehow crawled from a desert to this place over ages, and without that guy, it would have crumbled right back into a dead wasteland. So, yeah, she was genuinely thankful because he truly crushed it. He didn't just save the city, he also protected all the progress they'd built up. Then they raced back to the guild, but the priestess was already gone. She swung by the guild secretary, told him to hand Ku a letter, and made it crystal clear she was damn grateful to him for saving her. In that letter, she said she was a traveling priest, and once she heard the Trent Devil was on the loose in Tao, she stepped up and volunteered to hunt him down. Then added that they saved her when her magic was about to run dry. She'll definitely thank them soon because those guys were on a trip at the same time. And if they really managed to meet up soon after all that, it would be an insane coincidence. They swung by a specialty meat shop and grabbed a meat sandwich, only to realize there wasn't a single slice of bread in it. The boy stared in shock, and Iris couldn't believe he'd ever assumed it would have bread at all. Slug even ordered his own, and it was absolutely incredible. Tomorrow, they're headed to Surriere, land of legendary hot springs, the beating heart of Japan, who's already counting down. They decided to roll out at 6 a.m., then hit the bed early like champions. The very next day, their crew got swarmed off by a massive crowd, and they couldn't stop smiling when they realized all these people came just to thank them from the heart and show real respect. Iris and Sarara cuddled up side by side, already drifting into a deep, peaceful sleep. Meanwhile, the boys hovered nearby, utterly lost, staring around like, wait, where do we even go from here? The sun blazed overhead, the sky stretched out crystal clear, and a cool breeze danced through the leaves so the young man couldn't help it. He wanted to soak up that perfect weather, gulp fresh air deep in his lungs, and recharge like the start of something brand new. His eyes accidentally landed on a tiny girl standing nearby, and the young man snapped his head toward his faithful stone golem, ordering it to stop dead in its tracks, and the golem obeyed without a second thought. The girl spun toward Ko and blurted out that she wanted to thank him for everything he'd done for her. Then Cole locked eyes with her and demanded how long she'd been waiting. She could literally dream the future. Then one day it hit her like a lightning strike, a carriage gliding past, and right inside it, Ku. The vision burned so sharp and bright into her mind that it didn't just show her the right way. It nailed the exact time they had to meet. She chased her dream and couldn't stand ignoring them. And Kyle swore she was just being polite despite her blunt, straightforward ways, so she turned to the boy. The girl slammed to a stop in front of Ku and straight up asked if he had the skill. Transmigrator leaving him frozen, heart racing as his mind spun into chaos, and he couldn't squeeze out a single solid answer. In the dream, the girl got the message loud and clear about what the question really meant, but the young man just couldn't make sense of it. He stumbled over that impossible term, and every word he tried to explain only made it worse until his anxiety spiked. And still, no real answer showed up. She even mastered the temple maiden skill of the god of war. So if that transmigrator had the same power, she knew she had to tell him something crucial and hand him what he needed. The second he heard those words, Iris shot to his mind she had her own mission and the skills to match. And that's when he wondered if Lily was stuck in the same kind of fate. Lily kicked off by saying the god of war's priestess skill wakes up in a person once every few centuries. And once you wear it, she can command the power of items bearing the god of war's name. Iris said it was exactly like the dragon god's priestess, apparently. Even the slime already knew, and the ancient scholar swore that if you combine the dragon god priestess's skill with the war god priestess's skill, something absolutely unreal will ignite. Who kept pestering the question again and again. They just wanted one tiny clue, anything new, but the slug blinked, guilty as sin, and basically admitted it was out of answers, saying it had nothing else to add and nothing useful left to share. The priestess of the god of war had two missions burning on her hands. First, she had to hand a powerful magical bow to a transmigrator, a mysterious hero who'd crash-landed from another world. Sarada watched in shock as the girl calmly tucked away an enormous bow like it was nothing, because her clothes were magic. Then Sarada burst out, calling the girl magnificent, and the praise hit her so hard she flushed with instant embarrassment. He snapped his gaze to the bow and saw the emblem of the god of war, its sacred weapons that carry the guardian's power, the magic blade Graham, Yggdrasil's bow, and the nameless Holy Spirit. Lily handed them one of the three sacred weapons, the Bow of Eager Seal, a sealed-up beast built to wipe out disasters, and that wild name hooked the young man instantly, like, will the seal ever break, or is it going to stay locked forever? I told them to hold off and wait, because that bow only shows up in a ceremony once every 50 years. She's convinced it's too dangerous to carry something like that around. Lily was allowed to carry that kind of weapon for her mission, and she's thrilled she handed the bow to Kosen because that wraps up one mission, but there's still a second one waiting. The priestess's second mission was hunting for the magical blade Graham, and the girl couldn't help but wonder if the young man had any clue. Then he grinned and said, I already have it, and pulled out the blade right in front of her, blowing her mind. The priestess felt a wild surge of magic pouring out of the blade, and when she saw what it could do, she froze because she'd never, ever come across a power source this massive in her life, and she definitely didn't expect to see it. In her dream, she saw it all right up to the second the bow of Yggdrasil was handed over. She blurted, where'd you get it? And the young man said it came from the dungeon in the city of Aunin, then asked if he could keep it for himself. The girl told him that Graham wasn't just anyone, he was a sacred weapon too, and that protecting the blade was her personal responsibility. Then she leaned in and said she'd let him carry that precious sword with him. Iris leaned in and asked the girl if she truly had the gift of foresight. She nodded and said it had been guiding her since childhood. Then she thanked Iris and even compared the priestess to her own sister. That's when they realized the girl's sister, Facilia, wasn't just any helper. She had two killer gifts, the rare power called foresight and the honored title of priestess for the dragon god. Sorora leaned in and asked what the priestess planned to do next. She shot back that once both missions were done, her next job was to guard the, quote, transmigrator, and Lily immediately offered to ride along with them if they were okay with it. The boys didn't even hesitate. The heroes greet the new girl with open arms, pulling her into their friendly crew, and when she feels their trust and warmth hit her chest, she can only smile and thank them for welcoming her so beautifully. The clock hands slammed straight onto 12 o'clock, and the travelers dropped into their seats at the table. Then the chatter erupted, trading battle-hardened memories and fresh stories from the road. They still had a ton of energy left from yesterday, so everyone dove into cooking dinner right away. Beef stew, a cheese omelet, and banana yogurt on the menu, suggested by the assistant, and Ku even handed out aprons so everyone looked ready to cook. Srirara was a total pro in the kitchen. Everyone just expected it, while Iris could cook just as well, and Lily was apparently trying it for the very first time. Ku jumped in and suggested they all cook together. At first, the young man urged the girl to crack the egg, yet no matter how hard she tried, it just wouldn't break. Then Ku stepped in, grinning, and told her the whole thing wasn't hard at all. She only needed to calm down and move smoothly. The egg shattered into scattered bits, and he realized cooking skills meant nothing if she'd never done it once before, so he jumped in to help and told her to hit it with the right amount of force. Ku steadied the girl, and with his help, she nailed the task, earning approving nods all around, while Iris and Ku kept cooking dinner together, soaking up the cozy chance to hang out and whip up something delicious in that warm, friendly glow. As soon as dinner hit the table, everyone crowded in and shot out warm bon appetit wishes. And Iris couldn't help but notice, like always, Cow's food was absolutely top tier. She went on to say that when the boy helped out at a restaurant in a non-city, everyone loved it, so if he opens one, it'll blow up with success, and Lily totally agreed. She'd never tasted food this delicious in her life. The girl beamed as she gushed about how much she loved cooking, and when Ku offered her more, she politely turned it down with a shy little smile. He leaned in and told the girl to stop holding back. She was still growing and needed real nutrition. The next second, her mood flipped bright, and she begged for a second helping. After they finished a huge dinner, the heroes teamed up and started washing the dishes together. In those sacred lands, Lily put her missions first, so she didn't dare do something as small and stupid as that. Then she bowed, apologized, and admitted she'd been clueless about such mundane stuff. Ku told the girl she had nothing to apologize for, and that he truly admired her serious attitude. Then her face lit up with joy, even as she still sounded unsure when she asked, "Are you sure?" She kept insisting her parents died in the epidemic. She can't even remember it, because she was way too young until the God of War's perfect power got her swept right into the God of War cult, and now she's relieved she finally repaid their kindness. Iris and Kus promised her a bunch of sweet, happy moments, and because she was still so young, they told her to soak up life while she could, and man were they right, because Sorara burst out demanding she play with him. The whole crew got tossed around as the quake hit, and every passenger panicked. The stone golem slammed to a stop fast, right when the earthquake struck, so no bigger trouble could break out. Cole finally snagged Sorara, and before anyone could even ask if she was okay or if anything was intact, they'd already stopped dead in the middle of the plane. Thank God, because no one got hurt. That girl couldn't stop worrying. Zarda Bridge had been standing for years and was getting worn to the bone, and if it failed, they'd be forced to detour and lose a couple days. They were supposed to hang back in Surya for 4 days and 3 nights, kick back and soak in the hot springs. Yeah, that plan didn't last, because the moment they tried to avoid disaster, life hit them harder and turned it into reality. That stone column practically screamed to its owner, "The Zarda Bridge is in critical shape," because the massive structure had been obliterated. Everyone stared at the collapsed bridge, panicking like it was the start of some disaster, until the girl said, "We can't keep going like this." The hero warned the girl that the river's flow was too wild to risk crossing, and the girl immediately asked if they could just use a flying potion instead. He said he'd considered it, but he had no clue what the others were thinking. Then someone cut him off and hit him with a way better idea. The creature told the hero he could build the bridge himself and asked what he thought, and the guy just said, "Yeah, it's worth a shot." Now that he was stronger, a simple touch might be enough, but he had no clue whether the recipe would even show up. The hero slammed his palms on the bridge, grinning like trouble, and a glowing magic circle erupted beneath him as he unleashed the power of creation. He said they forged a brand new Zard bridge out of what was left of the old one, and unleashed 800 branches of the Devil's End. "This bridge won't ever crumble. It's a safe haven that beats time itself." The blonde girl admitted she'd heard about the reincarnated one, but she never imagined he could pull off something like that. Then the other girl shot back that he's always been exactly like this. Same wild style as usual. The creature whipped around and told the hero he was basically a god. Then the hero smirked back, saying it was all skill and nothing was wrong with that at all. So the bridge got fixed, and nobody had to detour. Then they rolled into Surrey that very evening. One night in Surrey's guard, a soldier cornered the hero after he restored the bridge and told him, "I'll report this to Mayor, then you'll be rewarded." The protagonist said, "It matters more than I ever guessed." And the guard fired back that this bridge was one of the main hubs of movement, so if it fell, everything would fall with it. Ku snapped back that Mird was in treatment right now, and the knight demanded, "How do you even know?" To which Ku replied, "I got a letter about it." The hero claimed it came from some aristocrat who knew him. Then he was told the count is in town right now, being handled here, and that he better keep it all locked down as a secret. Ku nodded like he got it. And the boy thanked him for working with him, then apologized for dragging this out while he was exhausted, saying he'd be glad to have them back anytime. The knight insisted they'd be stuck there for 4 days and 3 nights, so they had to hit the hot springs, and he also warned me that tomorrow the city was throwing a festival to celebrate its 300th anniversary. The protagonist muttered that everything felt packed and chaotic, and the creature snapped back that the air was thick with smoke. The girl then leaned in and said, "This looked like the start of a huge day." And the guy told her the festival wasn't just a celebration. It was an ancient tradition with its own deep history. He told me this place used to be home to an ancient civilization, and a city was carved out on the ruins about 300 years ago. Then the creature chimed in, saying another city stood here 4,000 years back, and even now there's a buried mechanism under the ground that still powers the hot springs. The protagonist said, "Yeah, I get how hot springs work." And the slime fired back, "That's genius, now protect it with your life." The guy barked that it was time to chow, and Hotep couldn't stop wondering what the special even was. Turns out it was his white pot. The hero declared that the dish was insanely rich, and the girl laughed that she only took 1 spoon and it was already bursting with flavor. The blonde shut her eyes, a wave of pleasure hit, and she breathed that it felt warm, then the slime moaned right along, agreeing. The girl told them every shop cooked the dish their own way, and they joked that maybe tomorrow they'd hit other places to try it differently. Then the heroes devoured 6 huge portions and hurried back to the hotel. The boy sprawled in the steamy hot springs with the slime, eyes shut tight, and a huge grin tugged at him like he'd finally hit the perfect relief just like he'd expected. The hero figured the others felt the same way, and he vowed they'd tear into tomorrow's festival too, living every second to the fullest. The next day, they hit the street, and the girl's eyes lit up so much Hotep everywhere. The guy pointed at the menu packed with different dishes and leaned in, asking Lily if she wanted to try anything. The girl blurted out an apology, admitting she was totally thrown off, and the hero snapped, "What's wrong?" Then she froze for a second before finally starting to explain. Lily blurted that she'd had a prophetic dream, but it was all broken scraps, and then everyone pressed her. "So what did you see?" The girl blurted that they were playing the trumpet out in public, and the guy froze like, "That's weird," while Lily nodded right along, saying she agreed. She said that. And just like that, the scene flipped. Now they were strolling by a fountain, clutching a glowing stick, and the hero's eyes widened. It was a branch of Yggdrasil, but he had no recipes for it yet and no idea how to use it. Lily snapped that everything had shifted again. Every hero was packing up and riding out from Surrey, charging northwest. The guy pushed for answers again because those 4 portents take you off to a whole different direction straight into a land of nothing but mountains and forests. So he couldn't understand why anyone would risk going there. The girl admitted she had no clue either, and that this was the first time in her life her dream had shattered so hard. The hero leaned in and asked the girl if her dreams usually came through crystal clear, and she snapped back that they always had every single one until the slime cut in mid-conversation, claiming it already knew. The creature told him an ancient scholar once warned that even your sharp foresight has a hard limit, and with people who wield terrifying power, the future flips so fast that the outcome becomes impossible to predict. The girl shot back that Cal was straight up out of his mind. She didn't even get a moment to react before he was already blasting fire and taking off into the sky. The protagonist leaned in and asked blithely if prophetic dreams always come true because those fragments she'd seen felt like they were about to slam into reality. The blonde nodded right away. The girl asked if that meant the guy would finally play the trumpet, and the slime chirped that it was awesome, while Ko couldn't even remember if he'd ever played one before, and he had no clue if he'd be any good. One of the heroes pushed for a comeback to the present so we can hit the festival, live in the moment, and kick things off by stuffing ourselves with new dishes. They burst into praise for all kinds of food beef soup that, far from Tuesday special, a killer dessert, fruit hotep, and they even raised their glasses to red wine. The brunette raved that the meat broth was delicious, while Lily swore her dessert was sweet and lovely. Then the slime whooped that she felt amazing, right up until she suddenly got violently ill. The girl spun toward her and asked if she was all right, and the creature snapped that it could smell salmon. The guy clenched his jaw and said he had no choice, so they fed him a detox potion. The slime chirped that everything was finally fine, and the hero even clocked her healthy metabolism. Then one of the knights shouted that the hero should jump into a lottery. Ku burst out that he'd seen this before way back in ancient civilizations. They called this game numbers. And the second you pulled off even a single full line, straight or diagonal, you won. Finish one line first and you win a luxury cruise from Fort Port to the royal capital. Beat everyone else for the top prize while second place grabs a shiny musical trumpet. The main character and the girl snapped their heads up in shock, and she promised they'd see if that dream could really come true while Lily burst out that it sounded insanely interesting. The clown took the mic, scanned the crowd, and shouted, "Are you having fun at the festival?" Then he grinned and warned them the morning's big ancient lottery was about to kick off. He spotted someone waving at him and shot back, "Is that the guard from before?" And the girl told him it was probably exactly that. The clown shouted that he was still spinning the drum, then bellowed the first number 29, and Lily instantly fumed because she didn't have a number like that. The protagonist's ticket paper got scorched to ashes, and he just grinned. "I made the whole thing myself." The guard burst out laughing, asking if anyone expected a surprise since they'd watched his focus skill in action. Then he slipped that paper right into everyone's card. The clown laughed and said, "During the game, the numbers can swap places or even get rewritten, so don't give up yet, keep playing and ride it all the way to the very end." In the second half of the bingo game, everyone usually shatters into two groups: the people living for the wild, game-changing possibilities and the ones who get bored fast and start giving up. For the hero, that split sounds like pure fun. Next number up, 61, and it's Lily's. Then the guy keeps rattling off numbers, one after another, while the clown leans in and asks, "Tell me, are almost all the fields filled?" After that, he demands, "If someone's down to just one number left, say, knocked out." The main character shot back, "Yeah, I did." And the guard pressed, "So you'll win that stolen prize pipe?" And he just smirked, "Who knows?" Then the girls in the crowd yelled, "She's got the same too." Kel spun toward this hero and blurted that it had been ages since they last saw each other. Then he shot back, "So, you're sightseeing." And she smiled like, "Nope, she was an adventurer too." The slime caught the vibe like, "Wait, we've met." And the clown grinned and warned that the final battle was about to hit. Then the board flashed 6, followed by 1,826. But none of the heroes ever landed on bingo right after. The guard blared, "Next number, 87." And the guy practically hit it, he was that close. He could have smashed bingo if it was 88, but he figured destiny would force him to be the second winner anyway. Then the number on the hero's ticket suddenly shifted and he blurted, "I've got everything." But didn't that mean first place would be his? Kel spun around and said she had everything too, and that shock hit Ko like a punch. The heroes took their spots on the stage, and when the clown saw not one but two winners, his face lit up with shock. Then he blurted out that he'd congratulate both of them right there. The guard basically told them, "There's just one prize for first and second, so you two pick what you want." The girl froze for a second, but the boy grinned and instantly clocked the whole scheme. The hero demanded the prize pipe for second place, and the girl blinked in shock, then asked, "Are you sure?" He grinned and said, "First, we've got to reach the kingdom's capital, and once we're there, you can have the prize." The clown grinned and said that the first prize was going to Kel, so she blurted, "Is that really true?" And the girl practically exploded with joy, shocked she could even be living this moment. Kel kept thanking the boy over and over. Then the guard snapped out that the next prize was going to second place, so Kelly grabbed the hero's hand, told him to hold it steady, and started the countdown. One girl blurted out that if they'd just tossed in a couple more prizes, she totally would have snatched the win. Then another jumped in, saying she was right there too, one step from winning. Kel asked if she'd stirred up trouble he never asked for, and the moment she said it, she felt like she'd shoved something onto him that he didn't want. Now she couldn't even stand the awkward heat of his presence. The hero shot back, "Everything's fine." And like he'd already said, they were setting out for the kingdom's capital first. The guy admitted he didn't really know how to play the trumpet, so every eye snapped to the hero, and then Ku struck the first notes and started playing. The slime blurts that this piece is called Susanna's Dream, then some ancient musician adds, with absolute certainty, that the music is brutally hard to play. The girl started raving that the melody was breathtaking, and that this hero could literally do anything. Kelsa promised her grandmother they'd have lunch, so she tore herself away from everyone, waved goodbye, and told them, "See you later." An old man surged up to the hero, saying his name was Randolph Mayard and that he ruled the Mayard lands. Then he bowed and declared it an honor, just to meet the Dragon Slayer. The old man cleared his throat and told the boy he'd heard of the hero's legend, how he crushed the Black Dragon, smashed the Devil Ent, and even rebuilt the Zard Bridge, then coughed hard, and the boy immediately asked, "You okay?" The Count said, "I apologized," and then went on. About 4 months ago, a massive flood hit the north. So I've been getting treated at Surya Hot Springs to get my health back, but I'm still not fully healed yet. He said the hero will always be a true friend to this land, and if trouble hits later, they should come straight to him. His family pays for help, and he'll stand by them with all his heart. The old man's coughing turned violent, and then his eyes rolled back as he blacked out, so the protagonist snapped, "Hey, are you okay?" A dark aura started crawling out of the man's shadow and closing in on the guy, but He threw up a hard defense before it could reach him. The hero got a notification blasting, "A super high-level curse has been detected." And then the abnormal condition nullifier slammed it shut, blocking the whole thing. Lily blurted that this curse smelled like a monster job, and Iris fired back, asking if it could spread to anyone nearby and whether Ku was really okay, only for the guy to reassure them, "Everything's fine." The knight barreled up to the man and demanded he snap back to his senses, but the others yelled that getting too close was a death wish, and the hero had no clue what was happening to the Count, or if anyone even had the real answers. The curse's name is the Curse of the Black Death, deadly, contagious, and it doesn't just stop at one person, it can wreck the whole surrounding area, so you'd better use the Yggdrasil branch to pull off the suppression. The girl let out a sudden, heavy sigh and told him this branch was exactly the same one that showed up in her dream. The guy said the black fog around the man had finally lifted, and Lilia snapped, "So the curse is gone." The hero answered, "Not for good, it's only temporary, but right now it shouldn't spread." Someone in the room snapped that this sight was unbearable. The Count looked wrecked, and the boy couldn't stop thinking about how they'd fled the square with a guard at their side, then pushed straight toward the Shadow Queen's pavilion. The knight pressed the hero to spill what was happening to the Count, and he froze because he knew this was the moment to finally explain. Cow started to tell them the Count had been hit by the Black Death curse, and it would only kick in the moment he stepped into a spot packed with crowds. And he added that the curse isn't just any curse, it's a special power pulled straight from an elder lich. Back in that wild great flood up in the north, about 4 months ago, the night itself seemed to whisper that it all went down. Count Maillard snapped the skeleton monster back and drove it off, but no matter what he did, he couldn't finish it off. Right before he vanished, the skeleton jabbed a bony finger at the Count and snapped out words in a language no human could ever understand. The guard said that's when the curse of the Black Death was unleashed on the Count, and if only he'd realized everything sooner, that tragedy could have been stopped. Lily closed in on him, flashed that she had mastered light magic at the highest level, and asked straight up if she could try to break the curse. The guy shot back, "All right, then, let me try," and the girl promised, "I'll do everything I can," before diving straight into the spell and starting to read it. The Count's face twisted in disgust, and Lily shot back that none of this could be true. She couldn't wrap her mind around how the cleansing light could fail. They grilled her about what kind of magic it was, and she snapped back that it's the deadliest light spell around, so strong they swear it can wipe away any curse, except, apparently, a few nasty exceptions. He spotted that the analysis was done, and the full breakdown of the Curse of the Black Death had finally rolled in. The hero started talking it out loud, and Lily shot him a question. "Did you learn anything?" He nodded and said they had to rip out the root of the problem, then crush the Elder Lich who cast the curse. The girl shot a question about where that Elder Lich was, and the guard just shook his head. No one had heard a peep since the Great Flood, and Ku immediately knew this was a really bad sign. The main character said, "You should totally try automap." And then I got hit with a tip to use the map skill. The guy stared at the map, then announced that the Elder Lich was right around Mount Triss. The knight blurted, "I finally know where that skeleton is." And then the old man flicked his hand toward the main character. The Count said that the Great Flood from 4 months ago smashed his family's nightly order so hard it nearly crumbled. And now the Adventurers Guild has been put in charge of keeping the territory safe because rebuilding it will take years. He slumped and realized his body was still barely alive, but if he died right here, the territory would erupt in chaos and the whole situation would spiral out of control. The Count admitted it was a crazy request, but could Ku actually help him crush the Elder Lich? The guard dropped to his knees, bowed his head, and swore he'd join the request too, while the branch's power would fade with time, letting the curse crawl even farther. The protagonist nodded like he finally got it, agreed to the council's request, and told himself he couldn't afford to brush this problem off. Iris spun toward the boy and demanded whether this mess matched Lily's prediction. Then Ku rattled off everything that had happened, lining it up and nodding in full agreement. The girl blurted out, "I'm amazing!" And the other girl thanked her, then quickly shrugged and said it wasn't her magic, she just had the skills to pull it off. Iris told Lily she sounds just like the hero, and she swore Ku used to talk the same way too. Only she hadn't caught it lately then. The guy admitted he'd changed his mind right after that. The protagonist said some people are born with the very same skills, but how hard they swing those gifts is different for everyone. And for Lily, those skills are part of her whole existence, including how perfectly she can use them. The heroes spilled out of the carriage, marched straight through the forest, and bam, found themselves staring at the mountain, standing right before a massive stone wall. He stared at the map and declared the destination was buried inside the rock, so Iris grinned and said, "It smelled like pure nostalgia," and the hero nodded in total agreement. Ko yanked the door open, and the girl snapped, "How did you know?" He told her they'd run into something like it in Annan, and she just nodded like the answer clicked instantly. The boy said this felt nothing like the one back in Annan. And right on cue, Lily gasped, shouting that this emblem was a, quote, calamity emblem. She explained that the cult of disaster wasn't just some spooky myth, it was a pagan religion from ancient days, and from the name alone you could tell its followers treated disasters like living gods. Back then, 4,000 years ago, the ancient people geared up for disaster in every way they could. But the cult of disaster kept crashing their plans every single time. The boy couldn't shake the feeling that the old man's taste was straight up disgusting, like he'd always lived in a place like this, and maybe, back in the day, the old guy had followed some disaster call to the same kind of chaos. The protagonist figured it didn't matter who they were up against. Their mission stayed the same, and when he told Slough to crack that lock, they all slipped inside together. After a while, the heroes stumbled on yet another door this time. The guy squinted at the inscription and read, Underground Worship Center Number 3. And the slime couldn't stop admiring Kui. The protagonist demanded what this place was, and the creature smirked. This was one of the biggest churches of the cult of disaster. Slala swore they planted sketchy shrines all over the world, then watched believers flock to the center of worship to chant praises for the disaster itself. They even built a treacherous labyrinth on the road to the center of worship, packed with traps meant to smash anyone who breaks the rules or slips away mid-ritual. The guy demanded to know what rituals they actually performed, but the girl shot back that she didn't even want to think about it. Then the hero said, the automap would keep them from getting lost except for one catch. Ku warned them it would take a while to beat this labyrinth, and the girls didn't even argue. The hero swore that once the eager seal branch's power faded, the Black Death curse would snap into action and they couldn't waste even a single second. Iris pitched using the root finder function, and the guy lit up then said, yeah, great idea, I just need to fix one thing first. A giant wooden hammer suddenly sat on the hero's shoulder, and the girls immediately shot him questions like, so what are you about to do with that? Who told the girls to just watch? This thing has a crazy specific bonus, so it basically didn't do him much until now. The protagonist said the stairs to the second floor are right in the heart of the labyrinth, and the girl snapped, don't tell him or he'll grab a hammer and go to work. The boy slammed his fist into the wall and Iris caught Ku absolutely loving the chaos while Slime shrugged and said, this was just how he thought, in his own twisted way. The heroes finally burst onto the stairs and they shave off a huge chunk of time to stay one step ahead. The very first room on the second floor had a ceiling ready to crash, and the moment you stepped on certain tiles, the trap snapped to life. He figured just dodging the tiles was enough, and with a flight potion in their hands, they raced straight for the next room. Next up is the magic laser room, an extra long, skinny hallway packed with 10 oricleum cannons on each side. For a total of 20, with wild eyes, the protagonists stared down the wreckage once every gun was obliterated. They tore into the next room. The comrades ended up in the final room on the second floor, and one of them immediately felt it. The air hung heavy, and the whole place was downright creepy. The slime warned that the whole room was trapped under a heavy, high-level curse and said that if you poured magical power into the crystal ball at the center, the curses would stop at least for a little while. He said that if anyone wanted the crystal ball to keep shining, one person would have to step up and pour in magical power by sacrificing themselves. All three stared him down, and the main character snapped a furious frown, then said, the trap was terrible. Lily kicked things off by swearing she'd be the victim. And Iris answered with the exact same promise, then the protagonist just smirked. Kato told them to wait right there, and the girl called after the boy, but he waved it off, don't worry. Lily instantly remembered this was the same boy who'd repelled the curse of the Black Death in Syria. He nodded and said, curses can't touch me, I'm already a reincarnate. Rebirth smashes every kind of ranked disease in its path. So if you've got something like this to handle, he's the best possible guy for the job. The hero swore it worked. Then the slime grinned and said it had drained so much magic power that the ball crumpled completely, and Lily snapped, so how much did you take? He thought they'd cleared the second floor, then the map flipped everything, screaming that it should be the third, and trouble hit them hard. He said the map looked like a dungeon in disguise, then grilled the slime any traps. And she shrugged. Probably not. But her gut was screaming that something was off. The hero promised he'd go first while everyone else stayed back, and the girl begged him to be careful then. Out of nowhere, skeletons surged in, and he fought them off like a blur. He grinned and burst out that he finally pulled it off. Then the missing skeletons started crawling back into view. He felt the immortals had finally arrived, and it was the worst kind of trouble everyone had. Barely any time, and Ku had zero clue what he was supposed to do next. Lily snatched the staff, slammed the skeletons into a magic circle, and started blasting a spell at them. The girl bragged that her skill, Holy Lightning, is the absolute top-tier purification move in light magic. She said it could wipe out monsters or undead with healing powers over and over, until there was nothing left to regenerate. He figured light magic just melts the undead like that's the usual fantasy rule in games, anime, and in their world too. The hero told Iris, you and me will rush to the front and hold them off. Lily will blast the monsters with her magic. Then he asked if anyone had a problem. Iris shook her head, and Lily fired back that she'd do her absolute best. Slime asked what she should do, and Ku shot back that she had to stay in the rear. Watch the battlefield and tell him the moment she spots something. So she nodded and said her glasses would make her a super careful lookout. The undead data is finally cracked, and the forced purification process powered by Jaegersil branches is now ready to use. The boy wondered if he could purge the undead just by pressing a branch of Yggdrasil to his own body, And he didn't expect the answer to hit so hard because it was only in its raw, unfinished stage. Skeletons stood in a row and the hero shouted that we should go for it. Then he barked, "The iris rules, the right side was hers." The guy hit the forced cleansing command and the skeleton's silhouette started to fade into nothing. Ku snapped his head toward Iris and she practically dared him finish it, just as the girl threw up a shield to stop the skeleton. Slime cheered the heroes on for moving like one perfect team, and Lily shot back that this branch was insanely strong, then promised she'd sing as fast as she could too. Right after that, the girl started buzzing with excited chatter. Next, the heroes cut straight through the map's shortest route to the stairs, mowing down skeleton soldiers the whole way. The guy swore that if they cut through this corridor, they'd reach the last room, and sure enough, no traps jumped out at them. Iris shot back that her skin was tingling, like something was about to happen. Lily snapped that she could feel a huge wave of evil energy building up, and Slime warned that tons of undead might be waiting ahead while the hero grinned and said, anything could happen because he refused to believe those monsters hadn't set up something nasty. Ku had a master plan, shouting for everyone to huddle up in a tight circle and listen close. Then he promised a surprise front attack, ordered the girls to count 1 to 5, and move with him. I couldn't help asking, so that's a frontal attack, right? Iris demanded to know if he'd really pull out godly super speed, because if he used it to strike, it'd be a total shock move, and he nodded, confirming she was right, then surged into the attack. They fought off the monsters, and the guy hauled Lily up with praise. The girl shouted that they cleared the 3rd floor, and the slime grinned back, saying they were almost there, and they'd better push even harder. The ancient lich lurks in the labyrinth's darkest depths right on the 4th floor. The elder lich is undead that just won't stay down, regenerating like it's unstoppable, so if purifying light can't even stop it, there's a real chance holy lightning won't either. The guy starts mulling forced purification with the Yggdrasil branch, but he's stuck wondering if it'll even work against the elder lich. Every undead type gets its own forced purification setup. Already prepped and ready to force an elder lich, they need roughly 60 seconds to get the process running. And the hero scoffed at that because they'd be stuck in the middle of a raging battle the whole time. The system claimed he could skip most of the prep by using a skill on the elder lich or frying him with holy lightning, but the boy snapped that dragging the fight longer wasn't worth it, urging his comrades to remember it and build a real strategy. The hero spotted the elder lich materialize, and in that instant he swore it felt like a game was about to roll a cutscene right then. Lilia slammed her skill into action. He swore the only way to win was a surprise attack, but that first strike still wasn't going to cut it. The older lich started chanting, snapped his hands forward, and dark ribbons of magic blasted out straight for the heroes. The system snapped to life and told the hero the analysis was done, cutting the forced purification process down to a lightning-fast 24 seconds. Then the guy shot back that he needed one more jump. That boy couldn't stop wondering about the undead the disaster spat out, and a whole storm of questions hit him so hard he could barely breathe. Then the required time got slashed down to just 10 seconds. Iris snapped that this didn't look good at all. Then Lily swore she could feel an evil aura so thick it made her skin crawl, and the protagonist demanded, "So, what's going on?" Only 3 seconds remain before the analysis finishes, and he has to pull it off before disaster strikes. He whirled toward the girl, and she instantly got what he meant. The guys kicked off the whole process, awakening that branch to build a forced purification against the undead elder lich. A system notification blared that the moment the elder lich fell, the Black Death Curse snapped, and the protagonist's level shot up to 99, and he couldn't stop grinning. The girls finally burst into relief because it was over at last, and when the hero said it was all thanks to their teamwork, they pumped their fists, cheering like a united crew. He said the Count's curse was finally broken, and Iris shot back that she was so relieved Surya hadn't turned into a ghost town. The elder lich turned this underground room into a full-on citadel, then she got hit with a question, "What's wrong?" She told him the road was packed with traps, and she couldn't wrap her head around how he slipped out and came back alive. The guy just shrugged and said it had to be space-time magic or something, in that same league. The protagonist couldn't shake the nagging feeling about how those skills were being interpreted, so he snapped and asked what the elder lich was up to. Kyle couldn't stop thinking about that dark priest who worships the glutton dragon and runs a gluttony ritual, so he snapped, asking if they'd just interrupted him, and the boy hurried to tell the system to analyze the magic circle. Iris couldn't stop staring. It was beautiful, warm, and alive, and Lily turned to the protagonist like, "So, what are you doing?" Ku shot back that he was studying the magic circle because that elder lich was right there, working some kind of ritual. Slime blurted out that she wouldn't leave the master working by himself and that she could absolutely pull her weight too. The creature bragged that he slipped into the altar system and rewrote the ownership rights himself. The boy couldn't help thinking, of course this magical creature had been born long ago from an ancient civilization, and then it hit him the analysis was finally done. Or asked the protagonist if he was okay. Ku snapped that he was fine, then spilled that he'd finally learned more about the rituals happening there. The Calamity cultists kicked things off by chanting the Immortal Soldier ritual, and boom, skeletal soldiers rose from the shadows. Then they threw themselves into the immortal king ritual, calling forth the terrifying Elder Lich. Skeleton soldiers stood guard over the temple, while the Elder Lich prepared to unleash the third ritual, the ritual of gluttony. So yeah, the Elder Lich kept crawling up from the depths once every few hundred years, snatching sacrificial souls with the Black Death curse, and he'd been prepping the ritual for a staggering 4,000 years. The guy said that basically the old Lich named in the records is the very same one they just wiped out. Then the girl snapped, "So he finally avenged everyone so far," and the heroes answered, "Yeah, but the real problem is this ritual." He went on to say the ritual looked built to summon something terrifying, the Great Calamity. The girls pushed the question again, and Lily finally snapped, "I heard about a disaster that tops everyone we've ever known. Is this it, the big one?" He confirmed it, saying the endless gluttony dragon summoned by the gluttony ritual is stronger than the new dragon. The girls were shaken to the core and they grilled him again, demanding to know if this new disaster really was stronger than the black dragon. Iris warned that if a monster like that ever crawled onto the surface, it would spell disaster, so Lily hurriedly asked whether they managed to shut down the ritual, and the hero admitted he was dying to find out too. The city's original people were marked to die, their souls shoved as offerings to a ravenous dragon, but somehow they fought back and stopped it. Suddenly, the ground started to shudder under them, an earthquake, just like yesterday when Lily suddenly slumped, feeling sick and wrong. A glowing magic circle flared up beside him, and a sword ripped out of thin air. Then the girl gasped, because even the dragon's shield showed up too. The system blared that the glutton dragon's resurrection was detected, and the guy snapped, "A monster's coming right for us." Lily blurted out that a terrifying presence had invaded her, like something was crushing her soul from the inside. He asked if she was okay, and she flashed a relieved yes, then offered to help them climb back up to the surface. He agreed, and Slala closed in, saying he'd taken control of the object and replaced its owner with himself. Iris realized it happened in the blink of an eye, and she figured the Elder Lich had been using the exact same trick to slip in and out. Lily snapped her hand up, grabbed everyone's focus, and pointed to the side, only for the guy to gasp when he spotted a flying sphere. He planted himself in front of the girls, blocking their path, and snapped that he was sure they'd stopped the gluttony ritual. The heroes suddenly caught a sharp, song-like shriek in the air, and when they looked, the creature was a dragon. The slime grilled him about it, and he snapped back that he honestly had no idea if he could even be called a dragon. The protagonists swore their efforts won't be wasted, but the real question is whether they can beat him or not. He realized doing nothing would probably doom the whole region, so he had to throw everything he had at it. The girl spun toward him and blurted that the city was in real trouble. Then the guy thrust his arm forward, and with a loud shout, a robot-like man materialized out of nowhere. The hero demanded they all pile aboard and chase the monster at full speed, so he asked. The robot said, "Got it." Then Slala snapped, "What about me?" He stared down that slime, downed the potion in one gulp, and swore he'd move without hesitation and stop the dragon. He said he had to catch his attention. Then he came swinging with that huge sword. For a moment, the dragon just froze in place, and the guy couldn't shake the feeling that holding back would be easier than he'd ever imagined. Those dragon tentacles were choking his grip, and only about 80 of his magic still burned in him, so he decided to spend that remaining 20 to fire up the skill. The guy clocked that the dragon's fluid was deadly dangerous, and he knew stepping close would get him killed. The dragon was already battered and bleeding, and the protagonist decided to end it from afar. Ku figured he had to slam this down fast. No lingering fight, no dragging it out. He was about to slam half of his last magic power into a brand new magic skill. He was stunned, his attack sliced straight through the dragon, and he couldn't even process what was happening, convinced his strike was useless. His magic power was down to just 10, so he couldn't afford to throw it away anymore. Horror hit him as he looked up, then panic set in. He realized his body wouldn't move at all, but he had no clue why. He tumbled head over heels to the ground, clonked his head, and snapped his gaze aside in shock. He didn't know what hit him. He felt like he was drowning in a filthy swamp, and his magic power was totally drained. He snapped that it wasn't fair his strike slid right through the dragon, but every time the dragon attacked, it slammed into the hero like a death sentence, and he just couldn't wrap his head around it. I finally cracked the insatiable dragon's one-of-a-kind power, and the whole system just fired off a new hypothesis. The glutton dragon tore up the space around him, warping reality on the fly, turning invisible, slipping right through enemy attacks like they never existed. The hero knew this was hopeless because if that dragon could wield power like that, he stood no chance at all. He thought the dragon's power had a ceiling, and that saved him. Then he spat out a curse as the monster kept barreling toward the city. The boy swore he'd protect the city, but his power finally crapped out. Every last drop of magic was gone, and he couldn't win anymore, so he had to fall back right now, even if that meant leaving the city behind. He hadn't even tapped every last trick he still had. Loads of items and skills he hadn't used yet, and the guy refused to quit. Just like when the hero battled the black dragon, his level shot past the cap and kept climbing higher and higher. His weapon erupted in a bright glow. Yggdrasil's seal is finally broken, and now the use rate is allowed at a full 20 cloutites. The heroes leaned in, staring at the strange weapon with wide, baffled eyes, and demanded, "Can we use that to bring down the dragon?" The system snapped at him that to wield the Drowsil bow, he'd need to pump real magic power into it. He figured teaming up with Lily was his only move, and then they asked him straight up, "You okay?" Ku shot back with a vague, "I'm fine," then pushed him to sprint after the dragon as fast as he possibly could. I told the hero, "Dude, you're glowing." And he shot back, "Yeah, so much has happened." Then the slime chimed in, "You look shiny and straight up awesome." Ku snapped toward Lily and she shot back, "Yeah, I know the rule. I've seen it show up in predictions for as long as I can remember." He said it would make everything easier, then urged her to share her magical power, and the girl thanked him from the bottom of her heart for everything. Tears burned in her eyes, but she still smiled. Then she swore she'd give her life for him. He shot back that he only needed magical power, not her life. And the girl froze, staring in shock, totally stuck for words. She burst into apologies, swore it was all a misunderstanding, and begged him to just let it go. He told her they'd hash out the details later and grabbed her hand to draw the bow with him. Then she nodded and said, this exact part was just like her dream. She thanked him, and he told her they had to do it. She nodded, grabbed on, and together they hauled the boat forward. The dreaded arrow killer has been called in, and the great disaster is about to get hit with a forced execution. The boy snapped his head toward Iris, and she told him, "You can get it for me, then we'll form a shield to block the dragon's attacks." The calamity killer arrow sliced through it and completely wiped out the dragon space manipulation effect. The tides have turned for the heroes now. They just press the assault harder and harder, while their magic swells stronger by the minute. He unleashed the skill to summon disasters, calling back defeated monsters and taking full control of their chaos. He shot his hand skyward and screamed the spell loud enough to wrestle control of that dragon. Iris demanded to know if her eyes were playing tricks on her, because a black dragon was right in front of her. Then the protagonist grinned and said he'd summoned it with magic. The day is finally here. He's going to stand shoulder to shoulder and punch straight at the dragon of disaster he's fought before. The hero flared even brighter, shouting words of courage as he drove the black dragon to clash with that gluttonous monster. The girl warned him, "Seeing it again will always be terrifying." And the guy shot back, "Any glutton who faces a dragon like that gets turned into ashes." Then the system started ticking off the hero's wins reborn, packing more magical power than ever, and finally wiping out the black dragon completely. Lily swore the magic sword isn't just a weapon, it has a mind of its own, and it's begging the protagonist to wield it. The boy shoved the sword against his face and started chanting a spell, blasting the disaster away with pure, scorching heat. Bruises scarred his face from the battle, but he still grinned and declared that, in the end, the win was all his. The system blared that he'd hit level 108. And since he crossed past 100, it slammed a brand new skill into his hands. His level just blasted into triple digits, and with the force he can unleash, his magic power shoots up temporarily but brutally. If he learns to wield it right, the hero unlocks a whole new arsenal of strategies, and before he even finishes thinking, he blurts out, "So, can I summon the glutton dragon now?" The plan to seize control of that unstoppable glutton dragon crashed hard. Turns out everyone assumed its main body had already busted out of the cage, so the skill just couldn't reach it. He grilled him about the limits because getting full support to stick is almost unheard of. Then, boom, he lost access to the space manipulation function. This skill lets him fold space in tight bursts, go invisible, and pin enemies down. Simple but crazy, effective, and totally useful. After the glutton dragon fell, the main character proudly said he'd wiped it out then when they asked how he felt after taking down the second one. He admitted he was totally wrecked and just wanted to go home and crash. Iris fired off the question, "What were those sparks?" He shook his head and admitted he didn't know. Then Lilia leaned in, said she had a guess, and asked if he'd mind listening. "People say the god of war is tied to golden lit souls. Maybe those shining lights are the very spirits of victims sacrificed to the dragon glutton." Slala shot back, "Yeah, I feel the same." After the hero crushed the Elder Lich and shattered that ritual, the souls of the sacrificed people finally broke free, and as thanks for his help, they handed their power to him. The Count threw his arms wide in pure joy, relieved his comrades were all okay, and called out, "Everyone, sit down." The old man said that without them, the city's people would have been doomed, and he thanked them with every ounce of his heart. The hero shrugged and said, "I only did what I had to," then asked for permission to spill every single detail. He told me about the Elder Lich in that dungeon, how it managed to halt the ritual, but the glutton dragon still clawed its way back, rising again anyway. And yeah, after they crushed the resurrected glutton dragon, he can only imagine how things could have gone wrong, so he counts himself insanely lucky. The Count said that without them, too many would have been killed, and he'll never forget the loyalty they showed, and if he needs help again someday, he wants everyone to speak up without hesitation and lean on his family. The very next day, the Count bumped their reward up, and they hauled themselves back to the guild to report everything and keep handling the rest. The guy finally breathed out and said it was all over. Solving the whole mess was way harder than fighting that dragon. Lily slumped, drained to the bone, and Slala shot back, "You all right?" Kel showed up to meet them, flashed a warm smile, and said she was only heading to their hotel, So the hero immediately asked who she wanted to see, and Kella grinned. I'm here to meet you because you protected the city. The girl got asked if she baked the cake herself, and she grinned and said, my parents run a pastry shop, me and my aunt made it. Then swore it's insanely tasty and the slime can't wait to dive in. Kel also heard he'd just crushed another dragon, and he couldn't help but ask, was he losing his mind? Or was this guy just way too strong? Iris snapped that this was pure madness and that, at this pace, he'd end up killing the third dragon too. The girl shot back that she was with her, saying he could wipe out not just 3, but even 4, 5, or 6 dragons without breaking a sweat. And the guy, yeah, he did not like that one bit. Cal told her to stop with the jokes, and she snapped back that once she'd handed over the cake, her job was finished. Then she marched home. Slala admitted he was starving, and the hero pushed for a quick trip back to the hotel while Iris jumped in, insisting today should be treated like a holiday. The heroes devoured that cake, and each one shut their eyes like it was pure bliss while the girls swooned and showered the dessert with praise. Iris couldn't believe their luck. Lily shot back that it was only because of the main character that they wouldn't have been totally doomed. Ko snapped back that there was no way he could have done it alone and that this outcome only became real because the girls had his back. Iris said it made her happy to help, and Lily waved it off, no thanks needed, while she flashed back to the time she swore she'd give her life. The protagonist shot her a question. What did she mean by that? The girl blushed hard, then still forced the answer out. He asked her, was it hard to talk about? She shook her head and said, nope, I just don't get it either. I barely understand any of it myself. Slala said, then we should tell them. And ancient scholars swear that when you talk to someone, all the tangled thoughts in your head suddenly click into place. They begged her to open up about her doubts, saying it could finally fix what's wrong with her, and she nodded. Maybe he really was right. Lily snapped that, like she'd already laid it out. The war god's religion has strict tradition. His priestess lives by 2 missions. Ku said there were 2 missions: hand the Yggdrasil Yil bow to the reincarnated one, and then track down the magic sword. Graham and the remote girl nodded, ready to go. She told me there's a 3rd mission nobody talks about in those old traditions, and she only learned the truth as a kid through a glimpse of foresight. Once the bow's seal snaps, she's forced to trade her life away to forge an arrow that will unleash a deadly disaster. The boy finally got it, but it wasn't life he needed. It was magical power, Iris snapped, asking if her prediction was wrong, and Lily just shrugged, saying she didn't know. Maybe the future shifts because of one twist, or maybe it's just going to burn all over again in the next battle she feels. The second one is way more likely. Slime started panicking and blurted out, am I going to die? Ku snapped back, saying he objected. Then she thanked him, but even so, she stood proud as a priestess of the god of war, ready to give her life. In the Fujiya showdown against a devilish int, the hero snapped in time, pulled her out of danger, and swore that if it ever came down to it, she'd sacrifice herself to repay that debt. He told her that if the nightmare she predicted ever came true, he'd hunt for a way to stop her sacrifice all the way to the end, and then he asked, are you okay with that? She didn't fight back, but nothing was going to shake her resolve to finish her mission. Though deep down she still wanted to stay alive and hit the road to see new places with everyone. She blurted out, did I turn selfish in your eyes? And they shot back, no way. Then Iris laughed softly and said she was all for it because wanting what you want is totally normal. Slala promised he'd jump in too if she hit any problems, telling her to just come to him. And the girl's eyes softened. She could feel the grit in her comrades. Lily dozed off on this couch while the slime hissed that they'd need more time because he wanted to eat even more. And Iris snapped that the girl was just like Felice, fueled by the urge to take on all of ours. And yeah, she had the gift of foresight because when she looked back, she swore she already knew the day she'd die. So she wrapped up everything, even leaving behind a suicide note. When Felice died, regret crushed her because if she'd been there, she could have saved her. So all she could do afterward was replay that guilt in her head again and again. She figured she couldn't afford to make the same mistake again, so the girl shot back that she was weighing Lily against Felice. Then he shrugged and said it wasn't bad or weird to take what happened before and turn it into fuel for what comes next. They stood shoulder to shoulder, arms linked, grinning like they'd just won the world then. Iris stepped up, thanked the hero, and admitted his words soothed her, even if just a little. Ko demanded to know what Iris was, and she honestly had no clue what he meant. Then he leaned in and asked if she had the same secret mission as the priestess of the god, the kind where you have to surrender your life. She said it was interesting, and for once she wasn't faking it, she truly knew nothing about it. He said he was hoping that was true because he couldn't bear the thought of losing his precious friend, especially after begging her not to vanish out of nowhere. She flashed a smile and told him she couldn't believe she even got to hear something like that from him. She felt genuinely lucky. Lily cuddled Slala in her arms and asked if the fort port was really next. Then the hero nodded and said once they docked there, their next stop was the royal capital. A huge crowd showed up just to see them off. And yeah, it turns out the Count's already planning to hit the royal capital later and take part in the awards ceremony. They picked the shortest way, cutting out the post town like it was a waste of time. Slala was thrilled because he'd finally get a proper ship ride. Then the protagonist leaned in and asked if he'd ever sailed before, and Slala admitted it was his very first time. Slala grinned and bragged about that the boat was going to rock over and over and over, while Iris cracked up laughing. He flopped onto his bed, stared at the ceiling, couldn't sleep, and finally decided to put his brand new skills to the test. That glove, wrecked in the fight, got totally put back to normal because once it's tucked into the inventory, everything resets to its original state, and he finally understood why any weapon or armor forged with that skill gets automatically restored the moment it's stored. Now the main character slipped out of the room and decided to test a crazy idea: space warping. To pull off short-range warping with space manipulation, he has to lock in a destination right inside his field of vision. He ended up on the field, spun around, and said the battlefield's reach was way bigger than he ever imagined. The robot asked if he was clocking out, and the protagonist said he was just stepping out for a little walk. Des nodded like he had it all figured out and told him to have a pleasant stroll. On their journey, the robot moonlights as the night watchman and the driver of the Grand Saloon, and he wants to somehow reward him for all that effort. Then the system pings him with a new notification. Shortcuts were unlocked for 3 space manipulation abilities, and now he can use each one just by recalling their names. The main character flashed a grin thinking, "Man, that's perfect," because in fights, even one tiny split second can decide whether you live or die. Ku decided to try the intangibility skill, then scanned the area for monsters right as the hero heard a strange sound blasting out of the forest ahead. That black spider glove sent the monster practically vibrating with excitement. But for the main character, it barely mattered, just pointless noise. By bending space, he slips into a weird in-between state, partly here, partly not, and that's how the hero becomes untouchable. Ku's technique only lasts around 6 seconds, so he decided to push it with a spatial limit. Then something ruined his focus. He just said his plans were about to flip, and suddenly he's got to handle the monster fast, so the next thing you know, that guy yanks his massive sword out in one brutal move. The hero dropped beside the girl and ran his analysis. She wasn't hurt. But somehow he couldn't shake the feeling she didn't belong in this world. He snapped, "Are you okay?" Because if a scorpion had hit her, she'd need help right away. The girl jolted her eyes open and demanded, "Who are you?" Kyle flashed a grin and said he was just a regular adventurer passing through, then quickly asked again if she was okay. The stranger said she was okay, then begged him, "Don't worry about me, run. It's too dangerous for you to stay here." He fired off, "What's going on?" And the stranger snapped back that a white scorpion was stalking that forest, and even if he was A-ranked, it didn't matter, because he still wouldn't stand a chance. The hero told her not to worry, saying he'd already beaten him, so she froze in shock and asked if he was kidding. Cal shook his head and swore he had proof, then started pulling something out of the magic circle. The protagonist grabbed her attention and told her to look at what he was holding, a white scorpion claw, and the girl nodded in agreement right away. She blurted an apology for the awkward question and asked if he was that guy, right? He confirmed it and shot back, asking if they'd ever met before. The stranger shook his head, admitting they hadn't, but insisting she did know him, and then apologized again for the late introduction. Kurt Seed just met this girl and she introduced herself with confidence, Letitia D. Meteor, an A-rank adventurer. The girl asked, "Call me Letitia," then lit up about the hero's big achievement because he hadn't even been an adventurer for long. Ku grinned and said, "I pulled this off with my friend's help." Letitia burst into laughter and spilled the rumor, "Yeah, he's crazy modest, claims everything is delightful, and that white scorpion? It's an A-plus threat. They say you need at least 8 A-rank adventurers to beat it, but our hero still wiped it out solo." The guy tightened his brows, stuck on a single question. How did she escape that savage monster and stay unscathed? And why did she drop and faint right after? Tension crackled between them. He hated every second of what he was about to do, but he used his skill on her anyway, and it only proved he'd made a terrible mistake. They pick a subject that doesn't fit into any known concept, and then the whole analysis kicks off. Meanwhile, the guy can't stop wondering who she really is. Letitia stepped up to the protagonist and grilled him about that assessment skill. He froze in shock that she'd even clocked it. And she shot back that she could read people's opinions, insisting she didn't think he was trying to dig for women's secrets, even though they'd literally just met. She closed the distance and told him, straight to his face, that she never saw his actions as anything bad at all. Letitia cupped his cheek, and just like she knew he would, he stared back with zero fear shining in his eyes. She closed the distance until their skin nearly brushed, then begged him to let her introduce herself one more time. Letitia snapped her name back in place, announcing she was a summoned great dragon of calamity and the natural enemy of every living thing. He couldn't wrap his head around it. This girl was supposed to be the legendary great dragon of disaster, yet the more he stared, the more she looked like a regular human. And then he couldn't help wondering, was this really the same dragon that hit the city? The system told the hero the girl was human, but insisted something far darker lived inside her, the soul of the great disaster, the radiant and arrogant dragon. He finally clocked it. She was a walking disaster, and she just giggled, clapped a hand over her mouth, and teased him, asking if she'd spooked him. She promised, loud and clear, that she wanted no beef with them, and she backed it up again with every word she said. The protagonist demanded to know what she meant. Then she shot back that the disaster's mission is to wreck the world, and that whether she'll actually follow that path is the real question. She just turned 17 this year, and yep, she's in full-on rebellious mode now, and I'll be a little late. The guy frowned hard, wondering whether that girl was truly different from the Black Dragon or the Dragon of Gluttony. She said his dad seemed totally normal because she'd carefully hidden the truth. Her fainting had nothing to do with that white scorpion. Letitia begged to be allowed to apologize, and the hero snapped, "Why'd you lie?" But she just smiled and said, "It's all actually simple." If she suddenly told him she was a total disaster, he'd look at her like she was weird as hell. Yeah, that guy agreed. Ku blurted out why she chose to show her real face, and the girl shrugged like it sounded weird. Then admitted she felt like she'd met him in some far-off past. He told her they'd never met, and that this was their first time, yet the second he answered her question, something eerie stabbed through him like he'd talked to a girl before, and he couldn't even explain why. Like she said, huge monsters kept showing up around here again and again, so that case drove her straight into the forest. That white scorpion is a vicious beast, leave it unchecked and it'll tear into nearby cities and villages, so you have to shut it down fast. The protagonist agreed, but striking at it alone would be pure madness. She smirked and practically laughed it off. "I'm the real disaster, but I won't lose to some dumb white dragon." He noticed she'd collapsed, grabbed her attention, and asked what happened. She stammered that she wasn't really sure because right before she blacked out, it felt like some terrible force's pressure was building nearby from another disaster. She said the glutton dragon was badly hurt and she couldn't stop wondering what the heck happened to it then. Ku shrugged and said it might have come from its space manipulation powers. The girl blurted out how could anyone have a power that rare, and he just smirked and said, "I took it." She gasped at first, then suddenly got it. Letitia grabbed his left hand and swore she could feel a black dragon nearby, then asked if he could summon it, only for the hero to gasp that her hunch was right. He told them, "I know exactly what it feels like to be a disaster." Then he dropped the bomb. There were 3 natural enemies of disasters. 1 hero with razor-sharp dexterity, 1 sage blessed with wild magical talent, and 1 demon lord clutching the prize of disasters. The girl leaned in and asked, "Are you a demon lord?" The guy shook his head, and then the girl pressed the question again. Trapped in a brand new world with no choice of his own, the hero didn't get a single path, he got every cheat skill at once. The girl named 3 natural disaster enemies, and claimed the hero had every single one, then she shot back. "So how's that even possible?" Letitia just stared and said, "Ka really is an unusual creature, isn't it?" She snapped her hands together and lit up, saying she was totally captivated by him, and if he didn't mind, she wanted to join him on the road ahead. Because his proposal hit her out of nowhere, the girl told him, "If you suddenly feel uncomfortable, you can refuse." The hero didn't even flinch, no objections. For a heartbeat, she froze, then blurted, "So, you really don't mind at all?" Ku said it was already late, and his gut wouldn't let him leave the girl alone in the mountains. She thanked him, then told him she'd accept the condition. Letitia asked if he even realized she was a total disaster. Then he snapped back that she wasn't just chaos, she was a disaster with 0 plans to ever face him. The girl swore she'd only throw her fists at villains and monsters, and the guy grinned, saying that meant there'd be 0 trouble. She burst into laughter, and he leaned in, like, "What's so funny?" She said the main guy's got a huge heart, and honestly, that's awesome then. Ku's cheeks burned as she blurted, "You're overrating him." The system said it would back the girl riding alongside the protagonist, yet in his own head, he totally blanked on her. He'd craft a counter item so deadly it could match or outshine the eager seal bow, so the moment the boy heard that, pure joy lit up his face. Lily's magic can tap into a clean 20 of the bow's power, but if they ever force it to hit 100, it could cost Lily her life. If he can forge powerful gear through creation, he can dodge this whole mess, and the hero just can't stand the thought of seeing Lily's face like that. Letitia kicked off her tale with a wild secret. She was born in a freezing country far north, beyond the sea, then revealed she was the second princess. Sure, she'd been ordinary all along until she admitted she still carried every memory and the disaster powers locked deep in her mind. And 5 years ago, when the king suddenly fell ill, the whole court exploded into a brutal fight over who would inherit the throne. On her 12th birthday, she bit into poisoned cookies and spent 3 days and 3 nights teetering between life and death, and that nightmare is what snapped her back to who she really was. She unleashed her calamity's power to smash the poison and rip herself back from the edge of death, then dragged the second prince who poisoned him to trial and stripped him of his claim to the throne after that. She slipped out and left the country. He snapped that, since she was the second princess, how could someone with that kind of rank just slip out of her country so easily? She shot back that, under normal rules, it'd be impossible until you realize every disaster brings its own twisted power. And she had one of those in her pocket. He leaned in, asking what kind of ability it was and if it was even okay for her to answer questions like that. Letitia snapped back that her special power is dominance, basically brainwashing on demand because when she sprinkles dragon factors into anything she touches, she turns people and things into her puppets. The girl planted herself before the tree, pressed her palm to its trunk, and kicked off the spell that would make its leaves fall away. Falling leaves swirled down on the girl as the guy shot out his hand to help her up, and she immediately asked if he was scared to touch her since her skill could affect him, only for the main character to insist that if he truly feared it, she never would have told him about that power in the first place. The girl pressed the question again, and the guy nodded to confirm it because, in her own memory, the hero, the sage, and the demon lord were protected by the reincarnation skill, but domination should hit way harder, so they decided to try anyway. The system blared a warning that the arrogant dragon factor was detected, then shut it down by wiping out the abnormal rebirth state so the girl gasped. Because she finally realized her skill can't touch the hero. He blurted out that he'd tell her about his hobby, but even he couldn't figure out if he had one at university. Games were his favorite escape. Yet once he started working, he hasn't touched them since. Ku admitted he'd flipped through a bunch of books, but only because he was bored out of his mind. Then the girl burst into laughter and told him he didn't have to force an answer. She said her real hobbies were poetry and painting, and she offered to read him something. The boy had zero artistic sense, so he couldn't judge, but the girl's poem hit him like a time machine, yanking memories back to life, and she even said she'd taken the liberty to write a poem about him. He stretched after waking up, then blinked, and there was Letitia, right in front of him, grinning and wishing him good morning, already buzzing with pure joy like nothing could ruin her day. The hero asked if she'd slept well the night before, and she beamed, saying the room did wonders. She'd slept like a dream. She'd even woken up a bit earlier than him, so she just sat there, quietly stealing looks at his sleeping face. He said his face was nothing special, but Letitia shot back that she couldn't disagree because he was genuinely nice, and that was when the girl realized the famous dragon slayer could actually sleep so peacefully. He snapped his gaze aside and admitted at least now, after all that went down, he wasn't getting nightmares anymore. Lily burst into the room, greeted the protagonist and Slala, then the second they saw the girl, shock hit them hard and they froze mid-steps. The slime popped up and introduced itself as an assistant, then demanded the stranger's name. She told it, and swore she'd stick with the protagonist for his whole journey. Lily leaned in, introduced herself, and told her, "I saw you in my precognition last night, so I know exactly what you really are." Letitia blurted that she'd been wearing the uniform of a priestess of the god of war, and if she wasn't lying, she was exactly that. So Lily didn't even hesitate to confirm it. The girl leaned in and asked the main character if he knew who Letitia was, and he admitted he did. Then the disaster girl waved it off, saying there was nothing to fear since she'd already spilled the truth about her real nature. Slala said he wanted to dig into her secrets too, and Letitia gushed that the slime was adorable. Then she demanded Slala introduce himself with a poem. Once she was done, she scanned the boys like they were guilty, then Lily stared back, all confusion and questions. Slala's stomach dropped when he saw the stranger was a disaster. He warned them they were doomed, but the girl didn't give off bad vibes at all, and the guy agreed, baffled that anyone could even understand her poems. Letitia said she'd rather build than break things. Not long after Iris burst into the room, chirped, "Good morning" to everyone, and blinked in disbelief that they were up this early until her eyes landed on the girl, and she just froze. Iris snapped her head toward the girl, and Letitia blurted out that they hadn't seen each other in ages while the guy froze in shock, stunned that they already knew one another. The protagonist tried to fire off another question, but Lily's stomach growled loud enough to steal the moment, so she apologized for cutting in. Then who was the one who suggested breakfast? Letitia stared at her favorite dish, grinning like her heart just won. And when the guy told her there was more coming, she shot back that she wanted exactly that. She'd take him at his word. Ku leaned in and asked Iris if she knew that girl, and Iris told him that during her own mission to wipe out a terrifying monster, Letitia had been on the same team fighting right beside her. She said it had been a whole year, and the air around her felt wildly different from before. Iris looked shocked and grilled her for another answer, insisting she hadn't changed that much, but Letitia snapped back that it wasn't a little at all before this. Iris had been ice cold, pulled away from everyone, and shoved people out of her life. He figured it out at last. She'd fought through everything, and by the end, she'd fully leveled up and become better. Iris stared at the main character, dipped her head, and announced she was happy to hear it, because Letitia totally understood exactly how her friend felt. Calamity blurted out that she finally knew who had turned the girl, and Iris snapped, "Shut up." Iris asked if she and her fearless swagger were truly inseparable, and Letitia shot back, "Oh yeah, absolutely. She's a glorious disaster, a dazzling, cocky dragon, and the only thing in the whole world that can actually terrify her." The thought of gaining weight. The girl blurts out that she just heard something insane, but say. And the other one snaps back, "I never told you about it." Because she's a dragon of disaster, and she's about to pull every detail out of the main character. So the story wrapped up, and I had to ask if he truly decided to trust her. He immediately said yes, and she followed up like, Good, because I've got zero objections. I believe in you and every call you make. Letitia asked, are you sure you don't mind, because she could totally pull the wool over the main character's eyes yet? The girl shot back, no worries, he's perceptive. Only for the guy to admit, yeah, even I can misjudge things sometimes. Iris told him, if something like this goes down, you can count on me. I've got you, because we're friends. The guy agreed she was right, and the two of them traded sweet smiles. Then Letitia leaned in and started whispering to Lily that there had been 3 people in the conversation. But before she could even blink, he was dumped onto the sidelines, and Lily was told not to get discouraged. She told him that her role was pretty wild too. Then she slipped back and quietly watched the heroes unfold before her eyes. After running the numbers, they figured they'd hit Fort Port before noon. So, until then, they each grabbed the freedom to do exactly what they wanted. The main character threw himself into forging brand new items, and this time, he pulled off not 1, but 2. Sala claimed the black spider and the white scorpion shared the same bloodline, calling the hero razor sharp and insisting those 2 monsters were brothers from the very same seed. And he pointed out that Dragon Legends tells a story just like it. They've got the same ancient ancestor, and ever since forever, black spiders and white scorpions have been locked in a brutal feud, battling to decide who truly owns the skies. Just like humans fighting through history. He was like, you know, in Norse myth, Jallarhorn is the horn that screams the end of the world, except when he blows into it, nothing happens. No apocalypse, no doom. From another room, a girl burst in screaming that she'd finished her painting, and then she practically demanded everyone stare at her masterpiece. The main character bragged that she paints like a dream, and Letitia practically beamed as she said it was a huge honor to get a compliment like that. The heart of the drawing is the main character's face, sketched from the side, and she nailed that calm, unshaken look, so much confidence that Iris swore it's exactly the same as Koi's. Slava shot Letitia a question. Could she really master the painting skill? She grinned and said, yes, and it wasn't just talent either. She poured her disaster power into every stroke. He believed that unleashing disaster like that was a terrible idea. Yet once it's used without wrecking everything, it hits way better. The desk snapped the main character's attention and told him to look outside, so everyone shoved their heads out the window and gasped at the stunning sea stretching out before them. Slala blinked in awe at the shimmering sea, while Lily breathed in the salty breeze, and the guy who hadn't been to the ocean in ages felt light, like he'd finally come home. He stared out hard, seeing the sea stretch all the way to the horizon. No clouds, no ships, not a single thing blocking his view. They were supposed to be near the port, packed with ships, but when they arrived, there wasn't a single one. And the protagonist's gut instantly screamed that something was seriously wrong. Deaths announced a minor earthquake, and he decided to stop for a while to keep everyone safe. Letitia couldn't shake the feeling that earthquakes had started showing up more and more lately. And if her memory was right, they were hitting once every 3 days, straight up ominous. They said they'd finally reached the port and thanked him for his patience. And the protagonist fired back his thanks too, then wished him a well-earned rest. A young guy slid up to him and demanded, "Who are you?" The stranger snapped that something had gone down in the city, then pointed out they must be exhausted from their long trip before ordering them to stop at the Adventurers Guild first. The heroes stared at the half-destroyed city in frozen horror. Every single ship in the port was smashed to pieces. Iris insisted it didn't look like a monster strike at all, and the boy shot back that it was pirates. No doubt they'd done everything they could. The protagonist stared in shock, and the guy blurted that a morning attack had hit hard, so hard the port had been wiped out completely. A single pirate ship pulled it off, wielding an ancient, massive battleship like a weapon, and its bow-mounted cannons blasted the port to ruin. Then the pirates shot a messenger into the city, demanding cash, food, and any young women they could claim. Because if the people didn't hand it all over, or even one person managed to slip away, they'd come back swinging, burn the city to the ground, and kill everyone inside. The protagonist spits, "Pirates are pathetic scum. Because if that ancient weapon slips into the wrong hands, it's going to spell disaster for countless lives." Letitia snapped that this behavior is outright unforgivable. When the strong crush the weak to satisfy their own desires, evil like that can't go unpunished. The girl slammed her decision down like a hammer, saying they had to smash the pirates with the iron fist of justice, and the protagonist backed her without hesitation. You could spot the same grit in his other comrades' eyes. Every one of them swore, "We're gonna make mate. We're going together." As he strode through the city streets, people couldn't ignore him. Then they recognized him instantly as the Dragon Slayer. They were whispering to each other, saying he'd already crushed tons of monsters, and if they teamed up with him, they'd take down the pirates for good. Iris snapped her eyes toward the guild. Everything felt different the second the main character showed up. Ku shot back that he hadn't done a thing. Letitia clocked the boy's awkward vibes right away, and she grinned, saying even someone like him had a cute side. The girl shot the others a question, asking if they agreed with her, and they all answered the same thing. The main character is ridiculously shy, like way too often. Ku's stomach churned under his comrade's stares, and he couldn't shake the feeling that Slala was watching every single detail. That pirate envoy was posted up in the staff canteen. sipping on refreshments while waiting for an answer because he sure wasn't about to hold back on anything. That reckless move lit a fire of fury in the heroes' hearts, but there was no other choice because if they didn't go along, bigger trouble would have crashed down on them. The messenger warned that if anyone dares to get in his way, he'll hit the comm device and call the main group, and once they answer, an all-out assault will hit instantly. The protagonist realized he was in trouble. Then a voice cut through his panic, asking for help, so he snapped into action and used his hearing enhancement skill. Whoa, so a girl and a man were in that room, and she was begging for help, while the protagonist's fury just kept rising. He snapped to it. He couldn't ignore this, and he urged everyone to hold on just long enough for him to act. They crept up to the door and heard something thumping inside, and Letitia and the others decided, "All right, together, we're jumping in." The girl insisted that he never turns a deaf ear to cries for help, and the protagonist shot back that she looked just like the Legends hero. She could barely believe it. Because hearing words like that from a guy like him felt like a huge honor. And then they burst into the room. The tearful girl spotted the heroes and begged for help, but the pirate snapped at them not to get in his way. Then he froze when he realized Ko staring in shock at how they even knew him. The pirate snapped, introduced himself, and exploded because the hero forgot him. But the hero didn't even flinch. His only mission was saving the girl. He took a gamble on a brand new item, a glove that crushes everyone else's powers. The pirate crumpled to the ground and demanded if the girl was all right, and she only smiled and thanked him for saving her. Letitia claimed she shouldn't have to lift a finger, and she sounded genuinely let down. Then the protagonist promised he'd tap into her power later, and she finally nodded along. The girl's terrified her fighting spirit won't let her sleep a wink tonight, because a furious disaster is right around the corner, and that is not good. Meanwhile, at the Adventurers Guild, the heroes got mobbed with praise for fighting tooth and nail to protect a priceless employee. The man led the city's Adventurers Guild branch, introduced himself, and before anyone could breathe, the other guy snapped that it was his fault the pirate negotiations blew up. Then he swallowed the panic, apologized hard, and vowed he'd never give in to the pirate's demands, saying he valued his employees like his own children. The protagonist demanded to know what that man meant. Then he snapped back that the pirate ship was an ancient weapon, a thing of terrifying power, and even if the city's adventurers banded together and fought, the whole place would still end up burned to the ground. The Dragon Slayer might have thrown everything off because he'd heard the guards say the heroes would hit the city before noon, so he'd been stalling, acting like he was negotiating, all just to buy time, and the boy finally clocked it. The rescued girl swore that if the main crew stayed with them, they'd beat the pirates. She truly believed it. Jess even knew everything Kuzi had done, so they begged him to unleash his power and wipe out the pirates, saving the city for good. He said he got it, then demanded they lay it all out in painful detail, so they told him this much from what the messenger said. The pirates were tied to the mercenary guild from the very beginning. The protagonist replayed what happened in Anon when the mercenaries tried to plunder the city. Dust blasted them back, and for a second they almost became pirates. The man said pirates are usually the ones who got knocked off their path, and the escaped mercenaries wasted no time, they joined them too. He has no idea where that ancient weapon even came from, but there's no way it belongs in the hands of those careless mercenaries, so he demanded to know, are all the pirate forces finally known? Jess snapped an apology and admitted he'd been tied up putting out a fire, so he couldn't make it. Ko waved it off like it was no big deal and told them to just interrogate the unconscious guy. Letitia leaned in and said, "If we want answers from this guy, I've got a plan." Then she cracked her skill on him. The protagonist was blown away by the girl's skills. Then she smirked and told him she'd leave the rest to him, and he nodded, ready to take it from there. The guy jabbed the pirate with his hand, and a brutal current ripped through him. Sparks exploded everywhere. You jolted awake and blurted, "I don't get what's happening," while everyone crowding around him stared like they were waiting for an explanation. He swung his legs and smacked the flower pot. Then it crashed down and nailed him right on the spot. The protagonist asked if he was okay, and the pirate snapped at him to shut up, claiming he was a messenger, and that the damage he was causing to him wasn't going to slide. The pirate finally figured out who the main character was, then barked that he'd never forgotten how he'd been treated, while Ku just stood there, totally lost, not understanding a single word. The messenger snapped that if he hadn't hauled that old man to safety, they'd have dodged the whole mess because they'd abandoned the escort request, and just remember how that guy seethed with pure irritation. He guessed that the guy was one of those mercenaries. Even if the memory felt fuzzy, the pirate flashed a cruel grin and bragged that his leader was Dox, a former rank B mercenary, then leaned in and asked if he remembered him. Ku nodded, saying, maybe. Then the messenger exploded in a shout. If he found out the protagonist was in Fortport, he'd slam the negotiations shut, rush straight into attack, and wipe this city out, leaving only one place for him to end up drowning in regret. The boy swore this would never happen, then promised he'd smash those pirates to the ground, and ordered the messenger to spill every single thing he knew. The pirate's patience snapped as the protagonist started throwing threats his way, and while he swore he'd never follow orders, he still agreed on the spot. He promised he'd follow the main character's orders, spill everything himself, and then he swore an oath. He didn't get what was happening or why his body started moving on its own, because that guy who abuses his power to boss everyone around isn't really in control at all. He's just using domination to put himself in the hands of others. Iris blurted that she couldn't stop wondering where they learned to control those things. And the protagonist shot back that the ship's inner workings had to be totally different from anything modern. Slala gushed that those ancient ships are pure marvels armed with training devices to teach you to control them, plus an onboard artificial intelligence that helps you every step of the way. Letitia thought an ancient civilization would pull something like this, but the twist still didn't land the way she expected. The protagonist warned, anyone can control them if they land in the wrong hands, it's disaster. And that scene is the proof staring everyone in the face. Lily said a tool can be a blessing or a curse depending entirely on who grabs it. The next clue hit hard. A whole pirate crew was lying in wait on the western road ready to strike. The pirates looked perfectly ready, but nobody expected them to have troops waiting on land, so the main character assumed their plan was to hunt, rob, and terrorize whoever tried to run out of the city. Sala said they'd driven from Sertier to Fort Port, yet not a single pirate lurked anywhere. Ku shot back that they'd taken the direct way, the shorter east road that's safer. Ira told them that if Fort Port's people fled for Syria, they'd take the western road. The protagonist shot back that any sane person would pick the safer road, so that's exactly why the pirates boxed everyone in and only gave them the western route. The third clue hit hard. The pirates weren't small time at all, over 200 of them total, and roughly 120 of their crew were already crammed aboard the ship. Lily said that, basically, around 80 people are scattering on their own, and Letitia snapped back that neither the main crew nor what's left is the kind of number you can ignore. And the protagonist's gut tells him to crush the pirates right here, right now. The girl warned, if even one slips away, we'll set off a bigger mess. And she swore she'll catch every last one. The pirates thanked him for the info they needed, then dropped one final request and he started to refuse, right on the spot. The messenger didn't get what the hero wanted at all, then blurted out that he'd happily do every single instruction, no questions asked. The pirates told him to stop acting cute and start bossing him around like a dog, so he snapped and started barking, and Slaughter threw his voice right back at them, bragging that he could imitate even better. Ku was put on the spot and told to answer truthfully. Where was the magical communication device with the main group? It was tucked in the right pocket of the messenger's trousers. The main character grabbed the communicator and warned the pirate before using it, then told him to hold up. He agreed right as the electrocuting hit him again. With every crucial detail in hand, the heroes gritted their teeth and went straight for the strike back. With pirates flooding the docks in overwhelming numbers, the branch manager begged the Fort Port adventurers for backup. Meanwhile, they slipped into an open patch of land to gear up for a brutal fight with another crew. And the boy blurts out, asking if they're going to hit the other group first. The hero shuts him down with a hard no. Kuheld lifted the sacred Galak Khan in his hands, then stared at the same war mark stamped on it, the exact symbol of Lily, the god of war. This sacred symbol belongs to the supreme god, because the legends say the god of war brings the souls of fearless warriors into his castle in the divine world and gears them up for the war that's about to break. It's basically like Norse mythology. Odin, the supreme god, starts sweeping fallen warriors into Valhalla, lining them up for the day Ragnarok finally comes. Lily opened the prayer and blurted out that the hero wasn't just reincarnated, she believed he was the god of war's successor too. Letitia said it sounded awesome. Now the protagonist has to take action, like right now. Cool raised his trumpet and started playing, and the system chimed in. Since he was level 109, he could only launch up to 1,090 warriors. When the summoned warriors finally showed up, the protagonist stepped forward and demanded they join his fight, swearing it was all for the city's residents and their safety.